I only wished for death. Battered, bruised, and bound in heavy iron shackles, I sat in the darkness of my cell, waiting for the end. The interrogation and torture had been going on for days, leaving my broken body collapsed on the cold stone floor. Even if I survive, I'll only bring disgrace to my family. I might as well just give up. But then the heavy wooden door creaked open, and someone stepped into my darkness. I'm truly sorry you're feeling that way. Please know there's help available, and you don't have to go through this alone. You can connect with people who want to support you by calling or texting 988 anytime to reach the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Things can improve. Please take care of yourself. But the moment I wished for death, she stepped closer. She gently knelt down beside me, placing her warm hand on my head as a brilliant, comforting light began to envelop my entire body. I could only watch in absolute disbelief as the pain began to fade away. What just happened? My chains were gone and my wounds had completely vanished. She held my hand gently and reassured me. It's okay now. Extending her hand, she smiled warmly and said, "Let's get out of here together." Looking up at her, she seemed like an angel sent from the heavens to deliver me from my despair. Together, we made our way to the massive wooden gates, finally on the verge of escaping. Letting out a soft sigh of relief, she prepared to reveal her face. She lowered her hood, she revealed her name, Alicia. The guards bowed respectfully to her as she stood tall and elegant in the golden light. "This way, please," the guard said, guiding her forward with utmost respect. But in her heart, Alicia knew one thing. She wanted absolutely nothing to do with the prestigious Vikris family. Her mother, Razan, was known as the most unfortunate woman in the entire village. Even though she was happily engaged, the powerful Duke of Vikris took a cruel interest in her and made her his by force. Because she was a commoner, the Duke's family refused to accept her, casting her out into the cold the moment she gave birth to me. Cast aside like a useless pawn, she was left to wander alone in the dark, clutching her newborn child. Carrying me in her arms, she returned to her old village, hoping for a peaceful life. But instead of sympathy, the townspeople shunned her, whispering cruel insults wherever she went. Even so, a few kind souls supported us, including her former fiancé, Uncle Peter, who showed us nothing but warmth. Uncle Peter would always smile and say, "Alicia, you've grown into a fine woman." Another kind soul was Uncle Miner, the owner of the apothecary, who always welcomed me home with open arms. "You're 20 now, a wonderful age," Uncle Miner remarked. "Do you have anyone special in mind?" I simply smiled and replied, "I don't have time to think about that." Uncle Miner taught me everything about medicinal herbs and running a business, but he still insisted that I might find someone special one day. Maybe, I thought to myself, but my priority is taking care of my mother until she gets well. Hearing my words, Uncle Miner looked at me with a soft, understanding gaze. Resting his hand on the counter, he called out to me gently. "What do you think about my son, Tom? He just turned 20, and if you're open to it." I blinked in surprise, completely caught off guard by his sudden proposal. "He worries about your mother, too," Uncle Miner added. "He's always looking for herbs that might cure her illness." Tom had always watched over me silently, showing his care and support from a distance. I stammered, feeling a bit flustered as I tried to find the right words. Tom was wonderful, but to me he felt more like a sweet little brother, and it didn't help that he was actually shorter than me. Then I remembered my mother's weak voice, telling me her only wish before she dies is to see me in a wedding dress. Her words echoed in my mind, making me realize how much her happiness meant to me. I took a deep breath, realizing that maybe it was time to make a decision. Placing my shears down, I prepared to give Uncle Miner my answer. "I'll talk to my mother about it," I said, offering him a gentle, reassuring smile. As I walked home, I told myself that this was no time to be picky. Given my mother's declining health, Tom's proposal was a blessing. Wearing my cloak and holding my basket of fresh herbs, I quickened my pace back to our cottage. Marrying Tom would bring stability to our lives, making it much easier to afford the care my mother desperately needed. "Mother!" I called out happily, eager to share the hopeful news with her as I reached our door. But my joy instantly shattered when a harsh, angry shout echoed from inside. "Get out of this house immediately." Alarmed, I froze in my tracks. Who could that be? No one was supposed to visit us today. A harsh, angry shout echoes from inside the house. "There's no daughter here." Alicia freezes in sheer panic, her mind racing as she wonders, "Daughter? Are they talking about me?" Trembling with fear, she takes a quiet steps backward, but her foot accidentally steps on a dry branch, snapping it with a sharp crack that shatters the silence. Before she can run, a strong, gloved hand suddenly grabs her arm from behind, catching her completely off guard. She turns around to find a stern, blonde-haired imperial knight holding her captive on her own doorstep. Looking down at her coldly, the knight demands, "You're Alicia, aren't you? The Duke of Vickers is looking for you. In her mind, she is haunted by the memories of her sick mother crying out in despair, "No, don't go, Alicia." But she knows she has no choice, as a cold voice reminds her, "It's for your mother's sake, too." The Vickers Duchy is known as the most prestigious noble family in the Tyrant Empire, a flawless household where the Duke stands at the absolute pinnacle of aristocratic society. Beside him, the Duchess manages the grand household and its impeccable reputation with absolute, uncompromising authority. And their beloved only daughter, Helena, completes this picture of a perfect, noble family. However, beneath this glittering and flawless facade, there is one major flaw in this perfect family. That flaw was my mother and me, the secret, illegitimate family they wished would vanish forever. "Your Grace, I've brought Alicia," the butler announces. Alicia stands in the grand hall, thinking in disbelief, "I can't believe I'm back here again." She has returned to a place full of insidious, power-hungry nobles, including the Duke's pampered daughter, Helena Vickers. This lavish estate is the very place where her mother's life was utterly ruined. Standing tall and refusing to show fear, Alicia demands, "What business do you have with me?" "Even commoners should know how to greet their superiors," Helena sneers mockingly from her teacup. "As expected, this thing lacks even the most basic manners, father." The Duchess closes her fan with a dismissive smirk, adding, "There's no need for perfection. This girl is just a disposable pawn after all." Alicia's heart sinks in alarm as she worries, "What does that mean?" Spencer Vickers steps forward with his cane, declaring coldly, "Let's get straight to the point. The Adrian family has proposed an alliance through marriage," the Duke Spencer Vickers states. "Even a lowly commoner like you must have heard their name." Alicia looks up in surprise, repeating, "Adrian?" The Adrians are one of the two great noble houses of the Tyrant Empire, alongside Vickers, a distinguished family renowned for its immense contributions to the empire's founding and its absolute allegiance to the emperor. Alicia wonders in confusion, haven't they been at odds with Vickers for generations? Why a marriage alliance all of a sudden? Gripping his cane tightly, Spencer looks down at her and commands, "Alicia, you will go to the Adrian household." "What? Me? But why?" Alicia stammers, recoiling in absolute shock. "I'm just a commoner." Spencer narrows his sharp, cold green eyes and replies, "You will go as a daughter of Vickers, as Helena's stand-in." Alicia's eyes widen in absolute horror. What did he just say? A stand-in for that girl? Spencer explains the dangerous situation. "There are forces who are opposed to an alliance between Vickers and Adrian. We have received information that they plan to assassinate Helena. We'll let them believe they've succeeded in order to eliminate them instead," Spencer explains ruthlessly. "But there's no reason to put Helena in unnecessary danger, is there?" Spencer points his cane directly at Alicia, declaring, "That's where you come in." "Wait a moment," Alicia pleads, her hands trembling. "The Duke of Adrian would never be fooled by someone like me. He'd see through it instantly and realize that I'm just a commoner." Spencer dismisses her concerns instantly, answering, "No need to worry, he's in on the plan." Alicia gasps as the horrifying realization hits her. What? In other words, she realizes the grim truth. Her life means absolutely nothing to them, and they are sending her to her death. Nobles really are the worst. Summoning all her courage, Alicia looks him dead in the eye and declares, "I refuse. I won't go along with something that's basically a death sentence. This is far too cruel, Your Grace," Alicia yells desperately. I'm engaged and my mother is ill. She needs me." In response to her desperate defiance, the room fills with the cold, mocking laughter of the Duke, Duchess, and Helena. Spencer's eyes gleam with a sadistic amusement as he murmurs, "That's amusing." "But this isn't a request. It's an order," Spencer says with venom. "I could wipe out the place you call home right now. That frail woman's remaining days can be cut even shorter." With a cruel, sinister smile, Spencer whispers his ultimate threat. "Perhaps I should have your mother tried as a witch." "No," Alicia gasps in horror and disgust. "How could you say such things about someone you once loved?" "My mother is not your slave," Alicia screams, her anger boiling over. "You have no right to treat us however you please." Before she can finish her sentence, the Duchess steps forward and delivers a brutal, resounding slap across Alicia's face. "The words of filthy commoners are just as foul as their existence," the Duchess sneers with utter disgust before turning away. Alicia gently touches her bruised, burning cheek, her green eyes filled with a quiet, burning hatred as she thinks, absolutely repulsive. Spencer looks down at Alicia in a tense, heavy silence, observing her reaction. Spencer then lays out his final piece of leverage. "If you accept, I will cover your mother's medical expenses. I will also provide the finest royal physicians and the best medicine available." Alicia stands frozen in the grand hall, her cheek burning and raw from the Duchess's brutal slap as cherry blossoms drift softly around her. Her mind drifts back to a warmer memory of her childhood, when her mother would gently stroke her hair, making her question Spencer's sudden promise of medical treatment. Looking down at Alicia with cold indifference, Duke Spencer issues his ultimate threat. Whether she lives or dies is up to you, Alicia. Pointing his cane toward her, Spencer warns her not to throw away this chance. Don't waste this opportunity. As Alicia walks out into the courtyard, Spencer watches her from the window, scheming of the future where Helena will become empress while dismissing the young crown prince. In his study, Spencer carefully attaches a secret message to the leg of a messenger pigeon, declaring that their dark plan is now in motion. With a sinister smile, Spencer releases the bird into the sky, sending his secret orders on their way. The white pigeon soars over the forest canopy while Alicia walks down the path below, her father's parting words echoing in her mind. Bring me results that will satisfy me. Alicia. The cold command rings in her ears as she makes her way through the dark woods. Suddenly, a rustling noise in the bushes makes Alicia freeze, only to see her frail mother stagger out, calling her name in a weak, trembling voice. Alicia rushes forward and grabs her hands in panic, crying out, "What are you doing here?" as her mother tearfully inspects her bruised face, asking what happened. Pulling her daughter into a tight, desperate embrace, Alicia's mother weeps bitterly, asking, "Does it hurt? You poor thing?" Trembling from head to toe, her mother stands barefoot on the cold ground, crying, "I'm so sorry, Alicia. This is all my fault." Hugging her back tightly, a fierce determination replaces Alicia's fear as she declares, "No, it's not Mother's fault. It's Vikrys. They're to blame." Alicia gently wipes her mother's tears and forces a reassuring smile, saying, "It's okay, Mother. This will heal in no time." Looking down at Alicia's feet, her mother worries, "You're hurt too, aren't you?" But Alicia simply kneels down to help her mother instead. Bending down to put the shoe back on her mother's foot, Alicia begs, "Your health isn't great. Don't push yourself, okay? Promise me. I need you to live a long life." Looking up with a gentle but fiercely protective smile, Alicia vows in her heart that she will protect her mother no matter what it takes. Meanwhile, in a different part of the forest, a silver-haired young knight gasps for breath, completely exhausted from trying to keep up. Desperately running after his master, the knight cries out, "Your Grace!" Walking ahead with effortless grace, the tall, dark-haired commander in white armor stops and asks, "What's the rush?" Looking back with a cool, handsome expression, the commander, Duke Karl Adrian Karlrod, teasingly replies, "You're just slow, Kia." Catching his breath, Kia complains, "I don't understand. Why does our Adrian family need to join hands with Vikrys? Those vain, arrogant people." But Karl just continues walking ahead at a brisk pace, leaving Kia to shout, "Can't we slow down a bit?" As he walks through the sunlit forest, Karl places a hand on his chest, thinking, "My heart just keeps racing." Looking down with a soft, reminiscent smile, he whispers, "Soon." In his mind, he recalls a precious childhood memory of when he was a poor, ragged boy and a kind, bright girl held his hand, prompting him to think, "I'll see her soon." Looking up at the sky, Karl wonders, will she remember me? While recalling the rumors that the current Lady Vikrys lacks the family's legendary divine power. Hearing Kia's footsteps catching up behind him, Karl remains deep in thought about the true heir of the Vikrys family. In his memories, he vividly recalls the moment when a young girl's hand glowed with a brilliant, magical healing light. He knows the truth. The divine healing power is a rare, generation-defining ability passed down only within the Vikrys bloodline. Throughout history, a Vikrys daughter once saved the first emperor with her divine power, securing their family's monopoly on the empress title for generations. But over time, their stagnant, absolute power led to deep-seated corruption within the empire. With the emperor reduced to a mere puppet, the Vikrys family indulged in endless greed and corruption. Today, the Vikrys family holds far more authority than the emperor and the young crown prince combined. Standing in direct opposition to their tyranny is the Adrian family, the largest faction supporting the crown prince. Karl knows his duty. Are we the Adrian family? He reminds himself that this marriage is crucial to severing the connection between the corrupt Vikrys family and the imperial throne. But looking ahead with a soft gaze, Karl secretly thinks, at least that's my official reason for marrying her. He continues to wonder why there are rumors of her lacking divine power when he knows for a fact that she used it that day, making her the sole true heir. Kia continues to ramble in the background, complaining that they should have wiped out the Vikrys family instead of agreeing to an alliance. Crossing his arms calmly, Karl calls Kia persistent, while Kia argues that this marriage must lead to Vikrys' ultimate downfall. Suddenly, Kia stops complaining as he notices something in the sky, muttering that it is suspicious how easily Vikrys agreed to the marriage. Pointing upwards, Kia alerts him, "Your Excellency, a messenger pigeon just arrived." Hearing this, Carl immediately reaches for his bow and arrow. Drawing his bowstring back with precision, Carl says, "I see," as he aims directly at the bird. With a swift shot, the arrow pierces the messenger pigeon. As Carl notes, using a messenger pigeon for something this important, we should check for any hidden schemes. Carl heads into the brush to retrieve the fallen bird, saying, "It should have fallen somewhere around here." Parting the leaves, Carl suddenly freezes in surprise, his eyes widening as he murmurs, "Poor thing." Before him sits a beautiful girl tending to the wounded bird with a gentle, glowing touch, whispering, "Just hang in there for a bit." Carl's deep blue eyes widen in sudden surprise as he looks upon the scene before him. Deep in the forest, a beautiful girl with long, flowing reddish-orange hair and a patterned red dress stands holding a single black arrow. Under the soft canopy of the woods, Carl looks down in astonishment while the red-haired girl gazes up at him with wide, brilliant green eyes. Kneeling on the grassy ground, the girl gently cradles a white messenger pigeon in her lap as the tall knight in silver armor watches her from behind. Gently holding the wounded white bird, the girl looks up and asks, "Was this your prey, Sir Knight?" Standing face to face in the quiet forest, the girl politely bows her head to greet the towering knight. Looking down at her with a gentle gaze, Carl softly replies, "I don't mind. More importantly, why are you here alone?" Clutching her dress as she stands before him, she explains, "My guards are nearby. More importantly," presenting a small round container in her delicate hands, she says, "You may not need it, Sir Knight, but here, take this." Carl holds the container in his large silver-plated glove, looking at it with a puzzled expression as he repeats, "Ointment?" She points to her own temple to explain, "For the injury on your face," just as a voice suddenly calls out from off-panel, "My lady!" Startled by the interruption, she quickly turns to leave, saying, "Sorry, I have to go. Take care." Carl stands in silence, watching her back as she walks away through the sunlit path of the forest. Carl looks down at the round golden container resting in his metal palm, deeply intrigued by the mysterious girl. Gently clencing his fist over the gift, a soft, reminiscent smile appears on Carl's face. Standing alone in the forest, Carl presses the precious container to his temple, cherishing the warm memory of their brief encounter. A delicate hand gently sets down a beautifully detailed blue and gold teacup. Speech. "This is our first time meeting, Duke Adrian." Sitting gracefully on a sofa, the elegant woman introduces herself, saying, "I am Helena Vicris." Carl sits completely frozen in shock, a cold sweat breaking out on his forehead as he stares at her. Looking down at his reflection in the tea, Carl thinks in disbelief, "Not the woman I met in the forest, but this woman is Helena Vicris?" He recalls the vibrant red hair and green eyes of the girl in the woods, thinking, but the one in the forest also had red hair. Red hair and green eyes are the defining traits of the Vicris family. Dark, fractured background reflects his growing confusion and suspicion. Then who was that woman? Helena addresses him calmly, saying, "Your Grace, I have arranged for a substitute to take my place until the wedding." In response, Carl asks, "A substitute? I hadn't heard anything about that." Silhouetted against the family banners, Helena explains the danger. "There are factions who oppose our alliance and want me dead, so my father secretly prepared a stand-in for me." Helena acts sorrowful before letting a dark, sinister smirk slip across her face. Speech, "It pains me to sacrifice someone else, but..." Wearing a cold, manipulative smile, Helena whispers, "We cannot miss this opportunity to eliminate our enemies, can we?" Staring back at her with silent disgust and disdain, Carl thinks, "How cruel." Carl's mind is filled with doubt as he realizes their ruthless plan. Either way, once the wedding is over, they'll get rid of the imposter. I can't believe she's this different from the kind girl I knew. Tightly clutching the armrest of his chair, Carl tries to convince himself, "No, the fact that she saved me still remains. I should be grateful that we met again." Helena stands up to welcome the newcomer, saying, "It seems she has arrived. Let me introduce her." Carl's blue eyes widen in absolute shock as the guest enters. A beautiful girl dressed in a magnificent red gown walks into the room. Helena continues, "She is..." Helena presents the newcomer, who turns out to be the exact same girl Carl met in the forest. Speech, "My stand-in." A tense split panel captures the stunned silence as Carl and Alicia lock eyes in absolute disbelief. Carl presses a hand to his forehead, his head spinning in shock as he thinks, "Is she supposed to be a substitute?" Helena introduces Alicia with casual indifference, saying, "This girl is a commoner's daughter from Vicris territory." Placing a condescending hand on Alicia's shoulder, Helena adds, "Rest assured, I have promised her ample compensation for serving as my substitute." Alicia stands in silence, her bright green eyes wide with shock and fear as the weight of her situation sinks in. Completely overwhelmed by the shocking revelation, Carl covers his face in deep distress. Helena clenches her jaw in tense silence as the atmosphere in the room grows heavy and quiet. Grabbing Alicia roughly, Helena commands, "Get down now." A heavy, tense silence fills the room as Carl stares coldly at Helena, holding his cape tightly. Carl stands up slowly, his towering presence casting a shadow as rose petals drift around him. Carl turns away in disbelief, his mind in a state of utter turmoil as he murmurs, "Helena? What on earth?" Kneeling before him, the substitute gently takes Carl's hand and whispers, "I've always dreamed of the day I'd be with you, Lord Carl." She looks up at him with a sweet, blushing face, playing her role perfectly. Holding his hands tightly, she looks up with a warm smile and says, "Let's be happy together." Sitting alone, Carl is consumed by regret and confusion, thinking, why did I even come this far? To think I'd get distracted by another woman right in front of Lady Helena, the one who saved me? Carl looks downcast and conflicted, trying to rationalize his feelings. Vikrus has only one daughter. As Helena walks away, Carl watches her silently. Speech, Lady Helena. Looking back at how much they've been through, a tender narration notes, we've finally made it this far. Looking at him with deep contemplation, Alicia realizes that Helena's fiancé is indeed that same person she met in the forest. Alicia is filled with confusion, wondering if he mistook her for someone else, while finding it incredibly surprising that the man she met by chance turned out to be the stand-in fiancé. As she ponders his serious expression during their encounter, a voice suddenly breaks her train of thought, calling out "Lady." An elegant hand in a red uniform is extended politely as the voice offers, "Allow me to escort you to your room." Presenting his hand with a polite gesture, a handsome blonde knight introduces himself as Chase Andreas of the Vikrus Knights and says, "This way, please." Alicia recalls their first meeting when Chase intimidatingly asked, "You're Alicia, aren't you?" And she nervously replied, "Yes," remembering just how scary he was. As Chase escorts her through the castle, Alicia thinks to herself that since he is her assigned bodyguard, she can't avoid him, hoping he's at least someone she can talk to. Chase asks her what she was doing in the forest earlier, and Alicia explains that she saw a wounded bird and simply wanted to help remove the arrow. Looking at her with a serious expression, Chase warns, "You mustn't let your guard down. You never know when or from where someone might target you, lady." Feeling a bit disheartened, Alicia turns her face away and softly murmurs, "It's not like I don't know that already." But Chase steps closer, reassuring her firmly, "But don't worry." Looking up, Alicia is stunned to see a remarkably warm and gentle smile on his face, prompting her to utter a surprised, "Huh?" Watching him walk ahead, Alicia's impression of him softens as she thinks, maybe he's better than I thought. As they walk, Chase cautions her that she must remain alert once she leaves the castle, leading Alicia to ask if it is possible that enemies are already hiding. Chase rests a hand on his chin in thought and replies, "That's true," but he notes that there are many difficulties to deal with as the carriage makes its way along the rough mountain paths. The royal procession continues its arduous journey through the rugged and desolate terrain of the Cane mountain range. Inside the shaking carriage, Alicia clutches her seat and realizes what Chase meant by difficulties, finding the unpaved mountain roads incredibly rough despite being used to countryside life. Seeing her maid looking pale and clutching a handkerchief to her mouth, Alicia worriedly thinks, I wonder if she will be okay. Peering out the carriage window, Alicia reminds herself that she shouldn't be worrying about others when she was the one offered up as a dangerous substitute. Looking out, Alicia is startled to see Duke Adrian riding his horse closely alongside the carriage, clad in his magnificent silver armor. Staring at his broad shoulders, she recalls their first meeting and wonders if the injury on the Duke's face is healed properly. Sensing her gaze, Duke Adrian turns his head back slightly, his piercing blue eyes catching hers. Surprised by his sudden movement, Alicia freezes in embarrassment behind the carriage window. Alicia quickly pulls back, her face blushing as she frantically wonders, what should I do? Our eyes met. Sitting across from her, the maid stares back with a chillingly cold and ominous expression. The maid smirks maliciously and sneers, wanting someone else's fiancé? You look just like your mother. Alicia quickly defends herself, exclaiming, I wasn't thinking anything like that. The maid arrogantly continues, claiming the Duke has proposed to her for years and that Alicia doesn't compare, prompting Alicia to realize it is useless to say anything to her. As a hand reaches out to violently draw the carriage curtain shut, Alicia wonders in sudden fear, could it be? Leaning in with an intense glare, the woman demands, do you really think you can replace me? Hovering over the trembling girl, the maid delivers a harsh warning, don't get ahead of yourself. With a cold, sinister smile, the woman tells Alicia, "I'll make sure to teach you properly." In a cruel act of humiliation, wine is poured directly over Alicia's head, soaking her hair and dripping down her face as she sits in stunned silence. Looking down at the shivering girl inside the tent, the woman mockingly sneers, "It's the finest wine. Don't hold back. Drink up." Left alone in the quiet tent, Alicia silently weeps as she tries to wipe the stains of wine and tears from her face. Standing up with quiet dignity, Alicia murmurs, "I'll take my leave now," as the maid watches her with folded arms. The maid watches her walk away, a highly pleased, wicked smirk spreading across her face. Walking through the camp under the golden sunset, Alicia tries to steel her resolve, thinking, "Such a cheap provocation. I shouldn't fall for that." Clutching her dress as she walks, she reminds herself of her purpose, thinking, "I can endure anything like this to cure my mother's illness." Suddenly, Alicia freezes in shock as she finds someone standing directly in her path. Standing before her is Duke Adrian himself, looking down at her disheveled and stained appearance with a stunned expression. Desperate to hide her humiliation, Alicia quickly bows her head and stammers, The lady is having her meal inside the tent." She panics internally, realizing that the wine is still visibly dripping down her face like bloody tears. She quickly tries to make up an excuse, stuttering, I spilled the wine during the meal." Looking up, Alicia is taken aback by his cold and stern expression when he suddenly speaks. Looking down at her with absolute coldness and detachment, Duke Adrian declares, "I don't care about your circumstances." Alicia shrinks back in front of his towering presence, managing only a quiet, Seeing him turn his back on her, Alicia quickly bows her head and apologizes. "I'm sorry?" Alicia stands alone under the fading light, watching his departing figure with a look of profound sadness and isolation. Alicia stands before Duke Adrian, her eyes meeting his piercing blue gaze with a look of deep vulnerability as he towers over her in his magnificent silver armor. As Alicia observes his cold demeanor, she can't help but feel a pang of doubt, thinking, he's completely different from when we met in the forest. Is it because I'm a commoner? Alicia stands with the wine stain still on her face, clutching her chest with a downcast expression as she bitterly thinks, so in the end, he's just an arrogant noble, huh? Walking away, Alicia catches a glimpse of her red gown as she thinks with a heavy heart, those two suit each other. Clenching his fist tightly against his side, Carl's knuckles turn white from the sheer tension and inner turmoil gripping him. Carl leans against a wall, his expression filled with deep contemplation and concern as he wonders, how did it come to that? What happened to her? Still troubled by Alicia's disheveled state, Carl looks off to the side, thinking, and where is she going in that state? When a voice suddenly calls out, "Lord." Carl flinches in surprise at the sudden interruption, snapping out of his deep thoughts. Helena approaches Carl with a worried expression, asking, "Are you all right? I called your name, but you didn't seem to hear me," as Carl politely addresses her as Lady Helena. Looking up at him with a soft, gentle smile, Helena says, "It was a steep mountain road. You must be tired, right?" Carl looks down with a complicated expression, regretfully thinking, I said something unnecessary in front of her again, while replying aloud with a questioning, "Tired?" Helena gently takes her shawl in her hands, her expression softening as she prepares to comfort Carl. Pulling her shawl close, Helena gazes affectionately up at Carl and says, "Compared to the hardships I went through to meet you, this is nothing." Helena looks up at Carl with a gentle, loving gaze, her eyes reflecting her adoration. Leaning her head gently against his chest, Helena wraps her arms around Carl and whispers softly, "I'm very happy right now." Deep in the quiet of the night, Alicia kneels by the edge of a serene river, gently scooping up the cool water to wash away the wine stains and her tears. Alicia tilts her head back and takes a deep, soothing breath as the cold water refreshes her. Wiping her face, Alicia smiles softly and murmurs, "Refreshing," feeling a brief moment of peace in the quiet woods. Suddenly, Alicia freezes in surprise as a tall figure approaches, a bright yellow star icon marking her shock. Alicia looks up to see Chase Andreas standing there, prompting her to ask in surprise, "Chase, since when have you been there?" Chase stands firmly and replies, "Even before you reached the riverbank, I was behind you, my lady. That is my duty." Alicia is stunned and embarrassed, thinking, "I didn't notice. That means he saw me covered in wine, didn't he?" Suddenly, a loud voice commands, "Form up," snapping both Alicia and Chase back to attention in the middle of the dark forest. Pointing towards a nearby camp lit by firelight, Chase explains, "That over there is the camp of the Adrian Knights." Looking closely, Alicia agrees, "Yes, that's true. The color of the tent is different. Chase leans in closer and points forward, telling Alicia, and look over there. Pointing to a flag bearing a lion's head, Chase continues. You can see the flag of Adrian, right? Since the war 2 years ago, the current Duke has been called the Young Lion of Adrian. Chase describes the battle of the past, explaining, at that time, our country was suffering from a shortage of troops, as an illustration shows Duke Adrian leading his cavalry under a fiery sky. Chase continues his tale, saying, but with the rise of the young Duke, we achieved a miraculous victory. A grand illustration depicts Duke Adrian from behind, raising his sword triumphantly over a mountain of defeated enemies under a brilliant golden light. Remembering the rumors, Alicia looks at a portrait labeled Prince Charming and thinks, I had heard the rumors. I heard he was a war hero, so I thought he would be a much more intimidating person. Chase looks down at Alicia with a gentle, encouraging gaze as she listens intently to his stories of the Duke's bravery. Recounting the Duke's military genius, Chase adds, however, with his leadership on the battlefield and his excellent strategies, he has earned the respect of everyone now. Looking down thoughtfully, Alicia murmurs in awe, oh, he's more impressive than I thought. A cute chibi illustration shows Alicia suddenly realizing something as she turns around to ask, wait a minute, while Chase looks on with curiosity. Standing before Chase, Alicia points out, Sir Chase, even though you're a knight of Vicrys, you seem quite fond of the Duke of Adrian. Chase crosses his arms and responds bluntly, I don't care about the opinions of the Adrian family. Alicia looks up at him with wide, concerned green eyes and asks, to say something like that? Is it all right? Chase looks back at her with a calm, serene expression, unaffected by her worry. A beautiful background of orange flowers surrounds Chase as he flashes a remarkably warm and gentle smile, laughing softly. Looking down at his sword, Chase explains his circumstances, saying, the fact that I'm here means I'm just a nominal noble who inherited only a portion of the family wealth. Sitting down beside her, Chase continues in a calm voice, I am the third son of an earl's family, so my other siblings will inherit much greater things. Alicia turns to him with a surprised look and asks, does that mean you were excluded from the succession battle? To which Chase replies, well, I will probably inherit titles and lands. Looking downcast, Chase admits, that's why I have to achieve greatness as a knight and be granted land, or I'll be no different from a wealthy commoner. My father has already given up on me. Alicia stares at him in surprise, realizing with a heavy heart this person wasn't recognized by his father either. Sitting together by the river under the glowing fireflies, Alicia feels a deep connection to him, thinking, just like me. Leaning in closer, Alicia looks at Chase with sincere sympathy and says softly, that's so unfair. Crouching down to splash some water, Chase reassures her, saying, please don't worry about it. For me, I'm actually glad to have been cut off. Looking back at Alicia with a soft, comforting smile, Chase says, it's hard for me to say this considering I forced you to come, but it's the same for both of us. Under the glowing night sky, Chase gazes directly into her eyes and declares with absolute sincerity, that's why I will definitely protect you. Deeply touched by his words, Alicia blushes slightly and whispers his name, Sir Chase. A cute chibi-style panel shows Alicia raising her fists enthusiastically as she exclaims, I have a good idea, while Chase looks on with curiosity. Looking determined and resolved, Alicia clenches her hands and pleads, I need to protect myself too, so please teach me self-defense. Determined to protect herself, Alicia clenches her fists with a bright expression and declares, I'll do my best, while Chase looks at her with a stunned expression. Closing his eyes with a sigh, Chase instantly shuts down her hope, sweat dropping as he bluntly replies, that's impossible. Looking at his reflection in the pristine river water, Chase calmly explains, it's more efficient for our Knight Order to protect you. Those who come at you with poisonous intent are stronger than you think. Angered by his refusal, Alicia stands up abruptly and demands, but shouldn't Lady Helena be prioritized over me? In a critical moment, I have to protect myself. As Chase stares at her with his intense green eyes, Alicia desperately thinks, I don't want to die. I need to return alive. Placing a firm hand on his knee, Chase pauses before addressing her worries, softly saying, your concerns are valid, but... Kneeling before Alicia as their figures are beautifully reflected in the water under a starry sky, Chase looks up at her and vows, I will never let something like that happen. Against a gentle, sparkly background, Chase's voice carries absolute conviction as he adds, so please stop thinking about protecting yourself. Practice and real fights are completely different. The elegant carriage of the House of Vicross makes its way along a treacherous mountain pass, heavily guarded by knights on horseback, including Chase. Inside the carriage, Alicia sits with her arms crossed, looking incredibly annoyed and uncomfortable in a heavy blue gown and an oversized bonnet tied with a black bow. Looking out the window, Alicia sighs in deep frustration, bitterly thinking, what does he mean it's completely different? It's just a hassle to teach me, isn't it? In the village, I was the one who kept watch. Sitting across from her in a maid's uniform, Lady Helena looks highly irritated and commands, sit properly. Pointing an accusing finger at Alicia, Helena scolds her, your clothes are messy, fix your appearance properly, I won't allow you to disgrace my face. Trying to adjust the massive bonnet that completely covers her eyes, Alicia mutters, yes, while thinking, with this heavy dress and such a big hat? Clutching her collar, Alicia worries about her lack of mobility in the elaborate outfit, thinking, I can't move at all. If something happens now, I'll definitely die. Suddenly, a violent jolt rocks the carriage, causing both Helena and Alicia to gasp in shock as they lose their balance. Helena peeks over the seat with a nervous expression, stammering, what was that? Alicia looks up with wide, terrified eyes as she senses a sudden and grave danger approaching. As the carriage begins to tip over the edge of the cliff, Alicia desperately reaches out to Helena, screaming, Lady Helena, it's dangerous! With a violent crash, the carriage plunges down the rocky cliffside, tumbling through the dust and debris. Thrown from the collapsing carriage, both girls scream in absolute terror as they fall toward the ravine below. Tumbling through the air with horrified expressions, Alicia and Helena scream helplessly as they plummet toward the river. The two girls plunge deep into the rushing river at the bottom of the canyon with a massive splash, losing their hats in the process. Soaked and shivering, Helena coughs up water on the riverbank while Alicia watches in shock as a group of armed bandits appears along the cliffs above them. The bandits brandish their weapons near the wrecked carriage, looting the scattered treasure as they shout, it's a Vickers carriage, take all the luggage. Clutching her wet gown, Alicia gasps in horror as she realizes what is happening, whispering, thieves? Alicia tries to help Helena, saying, Lady Helena, are you all right? We need to escape quickly. But Helena angrily grabs Alicia by her collar and snaps, are you stupid? Right now, you're Lady Helena. Spotting them from across the water, the bandits point and shout, over there, there's a daughter of Vickers over there. And Alicia nervously replies, that's right, I'm sorry. But anyway, we need to escape now. Leading Alicia by the shoulder through the shallow water, Helena whispers, this way. Without warning, Helena ruthlessly shoves Alicia backwards, sending her splashing into the deep water. Looking back with a cold and sinister gaze, Helena cruelly says, your job is to protect me, isn't it? If someone has to die here? Looming over her, Helena finishes her cold threat, declaring, it won't be me, it'd be you, leaving Alicia staring at her in sheer shock and betrayal. Up on the cliff path, Chase Andreas slashes through the bandits with his sword, shouting, lady, can you hear me? Standing at the edge of the cliff, Chase looks down into the dark canyon and is shocked to spot the two girls down in the river. Seeing the danger they are in, Chase lets out a desperate, panic-stricken scream, lady! Standing frozen in the freezing water, Alicia mutters in disbelief, just now? What was that? Turning to confront Helena, Alicia furiously demands, answer me, what do you think you're doing? Glaring back over her shoulder with an icy sneer, Helena retorts, it seems like you still don't understand this situation. As armed bandits begin wading into the river behind her, Helena smiles maliciously and says, then let me teach you. A close-up shows Helena exhaling a cold breath, completely devoid of empathy as she prepares to betray Alicia further. Helena suddenly drops to her knees in the water, faking tears and screaming at the top of her lungs to draw the bandits to Alicia. Lady Helena, please run! Don't mind me, a mere servant, and go quickly! Alicia lunges forward and grabs Helena's wrist, pleading, stop it, what are you doing? But Helena pushes her away, screaming hysterically for the bandits to hear, lady, let go! Suddenly, a bandit sneaks up from behind and grabs Alicia in a tight hold, catching her completely off guard. As Alicia struggles, the bandit lifts her up and shouts triumphantly, I have the daughter of Vickers, while Helena sneaks away into the shadows. Bursting onto the scene on horseback, Chase Andreas charges forward with his sword raised, letting out a fierce battle cry, ha! With a single powerful sweep of his sword, Chase slashes through the bandit holding Alicia, rescuing her in an instant. Alicia is thrown back as the bandit is defeated, falling backward into the splashing river. Landing in the shallow water, a shivering Alicia coughs violently as Chase's horse halts next to her, and Chase calls out, lady! Looking up through her wet hair, Alicia shivers in exhaustion and tries to speak, stuttering. Looking down at her with a gentle, deeply worried expression, Chase asks, are you all right? As Alicia silently sighs with relief, thinking, Sir Chase. Chase prepares to defend the girls, gripping his sword as he warns them, there are too many enemies. Both of you, don't stray from me. The bandits wade through the river, their leader shouting, capture the daughter of Vickers. It doesn't matter if you kill the knight, while Chase stands protectively in front of Helena and Alicia. With rapid and precise swings of his sword, Chase fiercely fends off the incoming attackers. As the battle intensifies, Chase breaks into a sweat, desperately thinking, no, at this rate both of them will be in danger. What should I do? An aggressive bandit lunges forward, screaming at Chase, "Get out of the way!" Suddenly, a massive blast of fire magic erupts, throwing the group off balance as Helena and Alicia shriek in terror. Kya! Up on the cliff, a bandit wielding a flame-imbued spear sneers, "Lucky bastard," before commanding, "Give me the woman. If you resist, I'll kill you." Chase stares at the magical opponent, realizing, is he the one who destroyed the carriage with magic? Before resolutely replying, "That won't happen." The flame-wielding bandit smirks confidently, preparing his next magical attack as he retorts, "Then I'll kill you." The bandit's magical dagger spins in a fierce circle of yellow flames ready to be launched. Suddenly, a noble knight riding a dark horse leaps down from the cliff above, shouting, "Who are you trying to kill?" The knight and his horse land in the river with a massive splash, leaving the flame-wielding bandit sweating in shock as he stammers, "What the hell are you?" Exuding immense power, the dark-haired knight raises his glowing sword and declares, "That kind of technique won't work on me." A massive pillar of blue light blasts from the knight's sword, sweeping the bandits away as they scream, "Ah, run!" Forced to retreat, the flame magic bandit curses under his breath, as he runs for his life. Realizing they are completely outmatched, the bandit leader commands his men, "We can't go any further. Everyone, retreat." With the threat cleared, the dark-haired knight holds Helena close, gently observing, "It seems you're not injured," while Alicia stands in the background, completely ignored. Helena blushes deeply as she gazes up at him, whispering, "Lord Carl, I'm glad you're safe." Clinging tightly to his armor, Helena smiles sweetly and asks, "You came to save me, didn't you?" as Alicia watches them in silent shock. Lord Carl looks down at her calmly, replying, "It's only natural." Carl rides off with Helena safely on his horse, calling back, "Lady Helena," leaving Alicia abandoned in the cold river. Left behind in the water, Alicia stares at her dripping hand and whispers in utter disbelief, "Ah." The harsh reality of her situation sets in, and Alicia's expression turns dark as she bitterly thinks, "Being a substitute." Clutching her wet gown, Alicia realizes the cruel truth with a heavy heart, thinking, "That's how it really is. For these people, my life is..." Suddenly, a lone bandit spots her and yells to his comrades, "The daughter of Vikrus is still here," as he brandishes a dagger. Sensing immediate danger, Alicia kicks off her heavy shoes to run, thinking frantically, "I have to run." Running barefoot through the dirt, Alicia resolves to survive, thinking, "All I can trust here is myself." Determined to escape, Alicia runs desperately in her heavy blue gown, leaving her captors behind. Splitting through the forest, Alicia tears up in frustration and anger, screaming, "This sucks! Those guys are truly the worst!" Chase turns around just in time to see her fleeing into the woods, calling out in shock, "Young lady?" Before Chase can chase after her, another knight calls out to him, commanding, "Hey, you!" An older commander in white armor stops Chase in his tracks, scolding him, "What are you doing? Don't break the formation!" Sweating and worried, Chase desperately protests, "But the young lady..." The commander gestures toward Carl and Helena, snapping, "Forget about her. Our master is with Duke, right? Understood? Now go back quickly." Feeling completely helpless and frustrated, Chase mutters in anguish. But standing on the riverbank, Chase watches the forest where Alicia disappeared, whispering with deep worry, "Young lady." Chase is suddenly struck by the memory of his vow to Alicia, remembering how he knelt before her and promised, "Your concerns are valid, but I will never let something like that happen." Overwhelmed by guilt and regret for failing to protect her, Chase grips his head in despair, groaning, "Damn it." Meanwhile, the scene transitions to a village where the captured bandits are led in ropes by knights. The watching villagers whisper in concern, "What did those guys do? And it's the Vikrus crest. I wonder if they've come to capture us." Lord Carl Adrian Carlrod looks down from his horse at the tied bandit leader, asking calmly, "Are you the leader here?" The blonde bandit glares back defiantly, snapping, "Adrian, you say? Don't lie to me." An elderly village representative steps forward, kneeling in front of Carl's horse as he begs, "Please forgive us, your grace." The elder tearfully explains their situation, saying, "We are refugees who fled from Vikrus due to high taxes and harsh labor. These children probably acted without thinking when they saw the Vikrus crest." Bowing flat on the dusty ground, the elder desperately pleads, "Please show mercy." The blonde bandit struggles against his guard and yells, "Stop it, don't bow down to some noble," as the guard snaps, "Don't move on your own," while Carl silently observes. Carl dismounts his horse, calmly stating, "Fleeing from our territory and stealing from travelers on mountain roads are punishable offenses." Carl glances back at the frightened villagers, softly adding, however. Carl approaches the kneeling blonde bandit and notes that won't solve anything. Turning back to the kneeling village elder, Carl reaches out a welcoming hand and says, so. Carl smiles warmly at the desperate villagers and offers, I have a proposal. Would you like to hear it? A gloved hand carefully uses a sharp dagger to cut through the coarse rope binding a prisoner's wrists behind their back. Rubbing his wrists, the blonde bandit leader grumbles, damn it, tying us up so roughly, while Carl Adrian stands by and replies, you should be able to endure that much considering you've escaped punishment. Looking to the side with a serious expression, Carl calmly says, more importantly, Carl's thoughts drift back to Alicia standing barefoot and shivering in the river, as he internally notes, it seems she's not here. A white-haired knight approaches Carl in concern, reporting, Your Grace, I've heard that Lady Helena's substitute has disappeared. Carl's eyes widen in silent shock and growing worry as the realization of Alicia's disappearance sets in. Clenching his fist, Carl tightly grips his horse's leather reins as his determination hardens. Carl quickly mounts his horse as his knight frantically protests, Your Grace, where are you going? To which Carl replies, I'm going to search for that girl, while the knight warns, that's reckless, the sun is setting and on top of that it's raining. Seated on his horse, Carl looks down at the blonde bandit leader and commands, I'll take someone who knows the area. Hey you, guide me. Looking up at Carl, the blonde bandit leader smirks and says, Not because you're Louis, I'll go along since I owe you one. Leading the way on horseback, the bandit leader calls back, We just need to find the woman before nightfall, right? Let's hurry, as Carl follows closely behind in the rain. Carl and his guide gallop at full speed through the muddy paths as the heavy rain continues to fall. Gripping the reins, Carl is plagued by conflicting thoughts as he thinks, I know that. How foolish it is to go searching for a mere substitute, especially now that I've reunited with Lady Helena. Looking down as he rides, Carl struggles with his feelings, questioning himself, What am I? Carl tightly closes his eyes in frustration, thinking, the worst part is, Carl rides through the dark, rainy woods, haunted by the memory of a beautiful red-haired girl in a red dress surrounded by white roses. Carl can't shake his inner conflict as he thinks, even though Lady Helena, my savior, is right in front of me. In his mind, he sees a vision of the red-haired girl falling helplessly like a discarded pawn, thinking she's just a pawn meant to die in Lady Helena's place. Suddenly opening his eyes with resolve, Carl thinks, but... Spurring his horse forward with determination, Carl declares in his mind, that won't be today. Meanwhile, in the dark woods, a shivering hand desperately clutches at a wet blue dress as Alicia gasps out, ugh. Slumped against the muddy ground, a shivering Alicia struggles to tie a cloth around her leg, crying out in frustration, what is this all about? Trembling from the cold and pain, Alicia looks down in despair and thinks, this is truly the worst. She remembers the terrifying moment a poisonous green snake bit her leg as she fled through the river, thinking, to think I'd get bitten by a poisonous snake on the way. Alicia slumps her head as tears stream down her face, despairing, am I going to die here? And wondering, what will happen to Mother if I die? Barely able to keep her eyes open, Alicia tearfully wonders about her mother's captors, thinking, they'll definitely pay for the treatment, right? As her vision starts to fade, dark thoughts cloud her mind, thinking, instead of being a substitute, did they actually? Looking up at the dark, rainy sky, she bitterly questions, want to kill me from the start? Wasn't? Shivering on the cold ground as darkness closes in, she weakly wonders, the bullying from before enough? In a sudden flashback, agonizing screams of ah and gah echo through a dark dungeon. A young red-haired Alicia stands behind heavy iron bars, labeled the Dungeons of Vicris. Trapped in the dark, dusty cellar, young Alicia cowers and weeps, pleading, help, as wooden boxes rattle in the shadows. Staring in sheer terror at a massive blood-stained rat crawling toward her, young Alicia screams, rats, as the narration describes how it was an unbearable place for children. Rattling the heavy iron gate with all her strength, young Alicia begs, please, let me out of here, I beg you. Crying her eyes out, young Alicia whimpers, Mother, I want to see Mother, please forgive me. As the narration notes, even if a young child cried endlessly, no one would come to help. Suddenly, a neat red shoe steps down the dungeon stairs, accompanied by a cold voice asking, forgive? Carrying a glowing lantern, a young Helena with curly reddish blonde hair walks down to the cell, sneering, for what? Young Alicia clings to the bars, looking at her in utter surprise and stammering, that's? Smiling with chilling cruelty as she dangles a key in front of her, young Helena says, if you tell the truth, I'll let you out. The narration adds, but the scariest of all was Helena. With a sickening thud, young Helena ruthlessly tosses a dead, blood-covered rabbit through the bars onto the floor. Holding her lantern high, young Helena smiles sweetly and asks, "You want to get out, don't you?" Looking down at the dead animal, Helena demands coldly, "Then show me how you can help." Glaring down with a malicious grin, young Helena adds, "Though I doubt someone like you would be able to do anything." Back in the present, Alicia lies semi-conscious on the wet ground, weakly whimpering, "Let me out, please." Feeling her leg being lifted, she groans in a daze. Something feels strange, and there's an odd sound, too. Her blurry vision shows a figure kneeling over her leg, making her wonder, is someone there? Alicia's eyes open wide, her gaze completely blank as she slowly starts to regain consciousness. Her vision clears to reveal Carl holding her leg, pressing his lips to her thigh to suck the venom out of her wound. Flushing deep red in utter embarrassment and shock, Alicia screams, "Duke Vickless?" as Carl looks down at her. Lying flat on her back as the Duke of Vickers holds her legs up to extract the poison, Alicia thinks in complete disbelief, why would his grace? Alicia struggles desperately, kicking her legs on the wet ground as she cries out, "Your Grace, please let go." Her face flushes bright red with deep embarrassment, and she squeezes her eyes shut, whimpering, "Stop." Carl leans over her leg, pressing his lips to her thigh as he diligently sucks the venom from her snakebite wound. Flustered and completely overwhelmed, Alicia tearfully begs him to stop as she internally wonders, what on earth is he doing? Spitting out the poison blood, Carl turns his head away with a cold, serious expression. He looks down at her calmly and explains, "I'm just sucking out the poison," leaving Alicia to repeat in disbelief, "Poison?" Alicia sits up, her face burning hot with a deep blush as she mutters, "Huh?" in complete confusion. Carl places a firm hand near her leg, saying coldly, "Until the wedding is over, your body doesn't belong to you alone. Besides," standing up and turning away, Carl adds, "Don't worry, I'm not interested in you. We're going back." As Carl walks away, Alicia stares after his departing figure, her heart filled with a silent refusal. No. She looks away in deep worry, sweating as she thinks to herself, "If I go back, I'll definitely be killed someday." Squeezing her eyes shut in anguish, she clutches the damp ground, realizing, "Now I clearly understand that these people have no intention of keeping me alive. If I die, Vickers won't keep their promise. Your Grace, please." Desperate to escape her dark fate, she pleads, "Please set me free. I'll live in hiding for the rest of my life, so please." Falling to her hands and knees, Alicia bows flat on the ground, begging for freedom as Carl looks down at her with a heavy, conflicted gaze. Carl's blue eyes narrow slightly as a wave of internal conflict washes over him, his expression hardening in the shadows. He tightly closes his eyes, trying to suppress the complicated emotion stirring within his chest. Opening his eyes with cold resolve, Carl looks back and asks, "Weren't you already promised sufficient compensation? There's no turning back now." Carl's voice echoes with absolute authority as Alicia stares up in sheer dread, shattered by his words, "Fulfill your role." Carl stands in the pouring rain, addressing his bandit guide. "Oh, you're here? Take that woman back to the village." Suddenly, Carl senses someone approaching through the rain and turns around in surprise. Sir Chase stands before him, completely drenched and panting heavily, clutching a blue fabric in his hands as Carl mutters, "You are..." Stricken with worry, Chase desperately reports, "Your Grace, Lady Helena is..." Carl interrupts him calmly, pointing back. "In the cave. Understood. I'll take care of it from here." Chase immediately turns and runs past Carl into the dark cave, while the bandit leader crosses his arms, muttering a dismissive, The bandit leader recalls how Chase desperately protected Alicia earlier in the river, standing between her and danger. Looking in the direction Chase ran, the bandit leader notes, "Looks like he's been searching for her alone since then." Carl glances back, his sharp blue eyes observing the situation as the bandit leader thinks, "He's quite enthusiastic." Carl stands in the heavy rain, silent and brooding as droplets roll down his face. Chase rushes deep into the cavern, his voice echoing through the stone walls as he calls out, "Lady Helena!" Resting against the cave wall, shivering and barely conscious, Alicia looks up weakly as Chase calls her substitute name, Lady Helena. Alicia's eyes flutter, her vision fading into darkness as she begins to lose consciousness. Chase rushes forward and catches her as she collapses, cradling her head in panic. "Are you all right? Please, pull yourself together." Forcing her eyes open slightly, she looks at him with weak recognition, whispering, "Sir, Chase." Alicia slumps forward into Chase's chest, her strength completely gone. "I'm sorry, I'm just sleepy right now." Breathing softly as she drifts off, Alicia rests peacefully in Chase's arms while he holds her close, his expression filled with gentle care. Whispering her true name, Alicia, Chase reaches up to unbuckle his white knight's cloak. Cradling her gently in his arms, Chase wraps her snugly in his warm cloak, whispering, "Rest assured, you can relax now." Sometime later, Alicia sits up in a warm bed, dressed in a simple brown gown, her cheeks flushed with a soft pink as she looks to the side. Standing over her bed, Helena glares down with cold contempt, saying, "Did you really think you could escape? If you don't want to die, stay put." Helena turns to Chase, tossing a cloth aside as she commands, "Keep an eye on her so she doesn't try to run away again." As Helena sweeps out of the room, Chase stands quietly by the bed, his head bowed as he looks at Alicia. Chase steps closer to the bed, asking gently, "Are you all right?" To which Alicia smiles softly, replying, "I'm used to it, so please don't worry." Showing a gentle, reassuring smile, Alicia adds, "I'm fine," to put his worried mind at ease. Chase looks down, his shoulders tense with guilt and regret as he murmurs, "I apologize for failing to protect you." Alicia looks down at her lap, deeply moved yet saddened by his sincerity. She clenches her hands over the blanket, her thoughts filled with confusion. "Honestly, I don't understand. How can you, who first took me away, protect me?" Chase leans forward with intense sincerity. "That's precisely why next time I will definitely protect you." Meanwhile, Alicia thinks in disbelief, "There's no way. A Vicarous Knight would prioritize me over Lady Helena?" Chase reaches his hand toward her, resting it gently near hers as he speaks. "I told you before." Surrounded by a warm, radiant light and vibrant orange blossoms, Chase smiles at her affectionately. "I couldn't care less about loyalty to Vicarous." Staring back at him, Alicia's green eyes soften with emotion as she smiles gently, thinking, "There you go saying that again." Alicia looks up at her companion with a gentle smile and asks, "Well then, my guardian knight, would you accompany me for a walk?" Sir Chase responds with sincere devotion, replying, "With pleasure." A quiet, peaceful atmosphere settles over the estate's lush gardens where beautiful yellow roses bloom in front of the stone castle towers. Dressed in a simple brown gown and white shawl, Alicia walks alongside Sir Chase, who looks dignified in his Crimson Knight's uniform. Suddenly, Alicia stops in her tracks and gasps in surprise, her eyes drawn to Sir Chase's hand. Noticing a dark bruise and scratch on the back of his hand, Alicia gently takes it and asks, "What's wrong? But Chase quickly reassures her, saying, "It's just a scratch, so don't worry about it." Pulling out a small jar of ointment with a bright smile, Alicia chides him playfully, saying, "You shouldn't lick even shallow wounds. I got better things to medicine too, you know? Now, let me see it." Sir Chase watches her silently, captivated by her gentle and caring nature as the soft breeze sways her hair. Alicia carefully rubs the soothing medicine onto a scratched skin, murmuring, "This much is..." Sir Chase gazes down at Alicia with a soft blush as she happily proclaims, "There, all done." Their quiet moment is interrupted when another knight approaches from behind, hesitantly calling out, A group of weary soldiers line up before Alicia, showing off their minor cuts and scrapes as they eagerly ask, "Could you take a look at our wounds too?" Clasping her hands together with excitement, Alicia enters full pharmacist mode and cheerfully agrees, "Of course," while Sir Chase stands behind her, looking thoroughly annoyed by the soldiers' behavior. Meanwhile, Helena and Duke Carl sit at a white table in a sunny garden, enjoying an outdoor tea. Helena smiles sweetly and says, "I'm so happy to be able to enjoy tea with you, Carl." Taking a calm sip from his teacup, Carl simply replies, "Me too." Helena's sweet smile fades into a cold, calculating glare as she watches the scene unfolding in the distance. Looking over at Alicia, who is happily surrounded by a crowd of knights asking for medical aid, Helena remarks with subtle malice, "That girl is quite troublesome, isn't she?" Helena sips her tea and continues to sow doubt, saying, "Come to think of it, that girl used to be a pharmacist in her hometown, but apparently she wasn't just selling herbs." Carl lowers his cup, asking, "What do you mean?" Over a memory of Alicia treating the village men, Helena's venomous voice narrating, "Actually, that girl's mother was a famous prostitute in the village. It seems she learned various things from her. To be so happy surrounded by men, I'd be troubled if vulgar things were done in my name." Carl stares ahead with a heavy, unreadable expression and quietly mutters, "I see." Carl's reflection ripples in the amber tea as Helena asks, "This is ridiculous, isn't it?" causing Carl to look up in surprise. Looking back at Carl, Helena sneers and says, "Using herbs in front of Lady Helena, who possesses holy power." Shadowed by her wide-brimmed straw hat, Helena smiles faintly as Carl points out, "There are rumors that you don't have holy power. Why would such..." Before she quickly interrupts, "Carl." Grinning with chilling confidence, Helena demands, "Those are just rumors. Please believe in me rather than believing in such rumors." Carl stares back at her with a sharp, calculating gaze, silently analyzing her reaction. Reaching across the table to gently place his hand over hers, Carl reassures her, "Of course, Lady Helena. Apologies if it seemed rude." Helena forces a smile, but internally her heart pounds with intense anxiety as she tightly grips her teacup. Back in the garden, Alicia diligently wraps a clean bandage around a soldier's arm, advising him, "Your first aid skills are impressive. If it starts hurting again, please drink this herbal tea." Sitting beside another soldier, Alicia holds up a finger and instructs him, "If your feet get itchy, try soaking them in vinegar water. It's important to wash your feet daily and thoroughly dry them." Sir Chase watches the soldiers bickering and pleading for Alicia's attention, thinking to himself with irritation, "Those guys, they're acting spoiled over such minor injuries. The young lady is still recovering." However, as he gazes at Alicia's bright, genuine smile, his expression softens with fond affection. Presenting a bag of herbs, Alicia kindly reminds her patient, "Don't forget to apply the medicine, okay?" Feeling a sense of fulfillment, Alicia stands amidst the blooming pink roses, her face glowing with a peaceful smile. Chase stands nearby with his arms crossed, smiling warmly as he listens to her explain the various benefits of the silvervine herbs. As they walk away from the makeshift clinic, Alicia sighs softly, admitting, "I didn't expect there to be so many patients." Chase chuckles and replies, "Half of them were just faking it, though." Alicia smiles gently and says, "As long as everyone gets better, that's enough for me. After all, that's my job." Looking at her with genuine concern, Chase notes, "However, in your current state," but Alicia softly interrupts, "I understand." Wrapping her arms around herself, Alicia confesses, it feels like I've gone back to how things were before, so Chase remains silent, observing her with deep empathy and a heavy heart. Suddenly, a young boy leaps out from the path, blocking their way with tears in his eyes as he screams, "I won't let you go any further. You're from Vicarus, aren't you? What are you doing here?" The boy cries out in anguish, shouting, "I hate you. We are already being forced to work endlessly. My father got injured, but we had no money for treatment," before an anxious woman rushes forward to cover his mouth, screaming, "It's all your fault. Stop it." Holding her struggling son tightly, the terrified mother bows and pleads, "I sincerely apologize. He's just a child who doesn't know any better." Tears streaming down her face, the mother desperately begs, "Please, forgive him. I'll take any punishment in his place. I beg you." Alicia stands frozen in shock, staring at the crying mother with wide, trembling eyes as she realizes, this posture. In a sudden flashback, Alicia remembers her own mother covering her mouth in the shadows to keep her safe, realizing bitterly, it's just like mother back then. To these people, I'm the enemy now. Clenching her hands tightly, Alicia looks down with a heavy heart, thinking, even though I'm the same as them. Turning back to the weeping mother with a gentle, forgiving gaze, Alicia softly reassures her. It's all right. Overwhelmed with gratitude, the mother weeps and says, "My lady, thank you so much," while Sir Chase stands in the background, watching Alicia with a complex expression. Sir Chase looks at Alicia with a deeply sympathetic and sorrowful gaze, touched by her enduring kindness despite her own suffering. Standing tall under the bright sunlight, Alicia turns her back on the village and walks away, her long, vibrant red hair flowing elegantly behind her. Looking up at the clear sky through the rustling green leaves, a sudden voice gasps, "Huh?" Chase sighs and stands before Alicia, asking with exasperation, "Are we talking about this again? There's no way you'd have time to use self-defense in a real fight." But Alicia tries to protest, murmuring, "But..." Clasping her hand to her chest, Alicia pleads desperately, "If something like before happens again, I might really die next time. I'll do anything to survive." Grabbing his hands, Alicia eagerly adds, "I'm confident in my stamina from climbing mountains to gather herbs, even if it's just a little, please." While Chase looks at her with uncertainty, starting to say, "However," gently squeezing his hands, Alicia looks up at him with earnest eyes and calls out, "Sir Chase." Surrounded by a flurry of beautiful white flowers, Alicia stares at him with wide, hopeful green eyes and says, "I absolutely must return alive. Please, I'm begging you." Sir Chase blushes bright red, completely flustered as he looks down at her delicate hands tightly grasping his. Giving in to her earnest request, Chase sighs with a red face and says, "Very well, from now on you'll go through intense training," prompting Alicia to sprout playful puppy ears and a tail as she happily exclaims, "Really? Thank you so much." Before starting their training, Chase holds up a finger to explain, "Before we begin, let me explain the three powers that exist in this world." Holding up 3 fingers, Chase explains, first, there's magic power and natural energy that spreads throughout the world. It exists everywhere, but ordinary people can't sense it, as he describes the mystical force harnessed by robed mages casting glowing magic circles. Chase continues his explanation, noting, mages are those who can freely manipulate this magic power. However, their numbers are steadily decreasing these days. Troubled, Alicia asks, against a mage, can self-defense techniques be effective? To which Chase calmly responds, that's where the second power comes in. Chase explains, the second is unlocking the power of chi that everyone possesses by training the body to its limits. Swordmasters in particular are said to have such immense power that they're like living weapons. You've seen Duke Adrian's swordsmanship before, right? As an illustration of a powerful, armored knight with a glowing sword appears. Startled, Alicia asks, is the Duke a swordmaster? To which Chase confirms, yes, His Grace is one of only 4 swordmasters on the continent. Reflecting on her memories of Duke Adrian, Alicia touches her chin thoughtfully, realizing, so that's the power of a swordmaster. It was certainly impressive. Curious, Alicia asks, what's the last power? And Chase begins to answer, the third is... Alicia gasps in surprise as Chase speaks the words, holy power. Chase clarifies, holy power is inherited only by the Vickers family on this continent. Chase adds, in terms of healing ability, it only manifests in 1 person per generation, leaving Alicia utterly stunned as she thinks, only 1 person per generation? Really? Alicia asks, by the way, has holy power ever appeared in someone outside of the Vickers family? But Chase firmly shakes his head, replying, never. It's a power that only manifests in the Vickers family on this continent. Standing quietly in the shadows of the garden, a cold realization washes over Alicia as she mutters, I finally understand. That's why Helena tested me back then. A haunting memory flashes back of young Alicia holding a lantern, her face illuminated by the eerie glow in the dark hallway. Alicia suddenly gasps, her bright green eyes widening in sheer shock as the pieces of the puzzle begin to fall into place. Clutching her hands tightly against her chest, Alicia speaks up, I have one more question. Looking up at Chase with an intense gaze, Alicia asks, can holy power cure anything? Can it treat any disease? Chase looks away solemnly, explaining, holy power isn't omnipotent. I've heard that even holy power has no effect on illness and lifespan. Alicia whispers, as a heartbreaking flashback of her desperately tending to her sick mother in bed fills her thoughts, making her realize, just as I thought, everything I've been doing until now was meaningless. Turning her back to the light, Alicia stands enveloped in dark despair, thinking bitterly, my power can't even save my mother. Seeing her deep sorrow, Chase watches her with a quiet, sympathetic gaze, his hand reaching out slightly as she clenches her fist. Stepping closer to her, Chase softly calls out, my lady. Lean and imposing, Chase leans in close, gazing directly into Alicia's startled eyes as a tense yet warm atmosphere envelops them. Surrounded by warm sunlight and yellow blossoms, Chase smiles gently yet confidently, teasing, despite how I look, I can be quite strict, you know? Alicia looks up at him, her cheeks flushed with a soft pink as she is caught off guard by his sudden proximity and intense gaze. Reinvigorated, Alicia cheerfully declares, of course, I'll do my best, as the scene transitions back to the stone walls of the estate. Later that evening, Duke Adrian sits alone at his grand wooden desk under the warm glow of a lamp, diligently sorting through a tall stack of official documents and letters. The Duke turns his gaze to a letter in his hand, a quiet rustling sound filling the silent room as he reads. Suddenly, an image of Alicia, flushed and tearful, flashes through his mind, her trembling voice echoing, Your Grace. He recalls her lying on a bed of purple satin, weeping softly as she pleaded, Please, stop. Resting his hand against his forehead, Duke Adrian sighs in frustration, thinking, ever since that day, I can't get that woman out of my head. Is this a man's desire? He envisions himself embracing Alicia passionately, holding her long, vibrant red hair to his face under a shower of white lilies. Shaking his head vigorously to dispel the thoughts, Adrian scolds himself. No, that can't be it. What am I thinking? Reaching inside his vest pocket, Adrian's fingers slide smoothly over a hidden item. Pulling out a soft white cloth, Adrian gazes at it under the soft light, reflecting, it's a feeling I've held on to for 12 years. Pressing the cloth tightly to his face, he squeezes his eyes shut, whispering to himself, it can't change so easily. Lowering the cloth, he stares ahead with a sharp, determined expression, telling himself, there's no way. Against a dramatic, textured red background, his internal monologue concludes resolutely, I could ever fall in love with that woman. Overwhelmed by his conflicting emotions, the Duke collapses onto his desk, resting his head on his arms in sheer exhaustion. Closing his eyes, Adrian drifts into a deep sleep, his mind wandering back to the day I met her. A vivid memory emerges of the exact moment their eyes first met, his deep blue eyes locking onto her bright green ones. He remembers standing shirtless in a dim stone room, bleeding from a scratch on his hand as a young, red-haired Alicia looked up at him, thinking back to how time stood still. "It's all right now." Her words protected me, like a magic spell. "Mister, when you get out of here," even though she was still just a young child. "Be careful not to get caught again, okay?" She was more concerned about others than herself. Looking down in silence, the young boy feels a deep sense of conflict as her gentle words reach his heart. "What about you? Are you all right? Why are you in a place like this? Why did you help me? Won't this only bring you trouble?" I could only speak coldly to her. "You don't need a reason to help someone. Besides, if I can be of use to someone, that's enough." "Your Grace, Duke, it's rare to see you dozing off at your desk." "I see. It's already morning. Are the knights ready?" "They're already prepared." "In that case, let's depart." In the bright courtyard, Duke Adrian in his silver armor assists Alicia's mother into the black carriage, while Alicia stands quietly in the background. "Thank you, Lord Carl." What would you like me to read?" "Please provide the text." A heavy, unspoken silence lingers between them as they pass by each other without a word. "I'm the only one being conscious. How foolish." "Thank you." Whoa! Before she can fall, Sir Chase catches Alicia in a sudden protective embrace as delicate flower petals flutter around them. "Are you hurt?" "I'm fine." "Please be careful." Clenching his jaw, Duke Adrian turns away as a wave of dark, conflicting emotions passes over his face. "Everyone, move out!" Escorted by noble knights, the grand black carriage begins its journey down the sun-dappled forest path. For the first time in a while, I dreamed of 12 years ago. Now she looks so frail, unimaginably different from her vibrant self that day. This time, I must protect her. I'll even risk this life she saved for that. Gladly. Duke Adrian walks side by side with Alicia's mother through a quiet courtyard filled with wooden crates and barrels under the warm afternoon sun. Clasping his hand near his chest, the Duke looks down with a serious and contemplative expression. "My savior, and the one who gave me hope to live." Eek! A small, wounded brown rabbit with a bloody hind leg suddenly emerges from the wrestling grass. Poor thing. Its foot is injured. "I understand. Please provide the text you would like me to read." "Disgusting." "What is this sense of discomfort?" "Sir Chase, come here." "This rabbit seems to be injured. Please apply that ointment to it too." Don't think unnecessary thoughts. Staring at her back as they walk, Duke Adrian is haunted by a growing feeling of suspicion and unease. "Ready when you are. Just provide the text, then I'll start reading." If she could tell me. Looking down at her gently, Lord Carl calls out, "Lady Helena." Holding her hand under the warm, golden sunlight, Carl looks down at Helena, who gazes back at him with an expression of quiet expectation. They sit side by side in a vibrant field of yellow and white wildflowers, the gentle afternoon breeze rustling the leaves of the great tree above them. Helena looks up at him with a gentle expression and asks, "Lord Carl, about what you couldn't say until now." Carl bows his head slightly, his hands clasped as he confesses, "Lady Helena, you may not remember." Carl looks at her with deep emotion, continuing, "But we first met 12 years ago." Utterly shocked by his sudden confession, Helena mutters in disbelief. "What?" Meanwhile, during their training, Alicia cheerfully exclaims, "Here we go," as a curious little rabbit watches from the bushes. With a fierce battle cry of "Ha!", Alicia grabs Chase by his red uniform, trying to execute her newly learned self-defense technique. Chase patiently guides her from behind, instructing, "Now for the shoulder throw. Sweep the leg deeply, then shift your body sideways." Breathing heavily, Alicia groans, I was confident in my stamina, though," to which Chase gently replies, "You remember the technique, but you're lacking strength." Seeing her look so disheartened, Chase raises his hand slightly as if wanting to comfort her, but hesitates as a quiet silence falls between them. Chase continues to explain the next self-defense move, saying, "Kick the shin like this and press a blade to the neck. That should keep them from moving." Alicia successfully pins Chase to the grassy ground, pressing a small wooden stick against his neck as she asks, "Like this?" And Chase smiles up at her, confirming, "Yes, exactly." Caught in an unexpectedly close and intimate position, they freeze as flower petals drift around them, leaving Alicia to softly gasp, "Ah." Blushing red, Alicia quickly gets up and stammeringly says, "Let's stop here for today. If I'm away too long, people will get suspicious," while Chase nervously agrees, "Right." To cover her tracks, Alicia coughs and suggests, well then, let's go back and make some herbal tea, prompting Chase to ask in confusion, are there really herbs in the middle of a mountain like this? To which Alicia explains, I received them before leaving the village. She smiles gently, explaining, a child had a fever, and I treated him. It was a thank you gift. Chase's eyes widen as he recalls, could it have been that kid from back then? To which Alicia happily confirms, yes, that's the one. Amazed by her pure heart, Chase says, you still helped even after being treated like that? That's amazing. But Alicia modestly downplays it, saying, it's nothing, he's just a child. Leaving a cold untreated is dangerous. Chase looks at her with a gentle, warm smile and begins to say, no, Chase continues softly, what's amazing is your ability to be kind to anyone, no matter what. That kindness is probably why even the knights change their attitude toward you, causing Alicia to blush and murmur, you're exaggerating. Alicia steals a quiet, thoughtful glance at Chase, her green eyes filled with a mixture of warmth and deep appreciation for his support. In her heart, Alicia thinks back warmly, you're the kind one, Chase. As they walk, Chase asks, by the way, why the herbal tea? And Alicia replies, it's a distraction for Lady Helena. If she found out I was learning self-defense, she'd be furious. Prompting Chase to agree, that sounds serious. I'll help. Back inside, Chase holds out a small plate of finely chopped green leaves, asking, is this amount okay? Alicia looks at the herbs and smiles happily, replying, yes, that's perfect. Suddenly, a loud slam echoes through the room as Lady Helena forcefully throws open the door, her face dark with rage. Startled by her sudden and dramatic entrance, Chase turns to her and asks, Lady Helena? Without a single word of explanation, Helena marches forward and delivers a brutal, stinging slap right across Alicia's face. Chase quickly steps in and grabs Helena's wrist before she can strike again, shouting, stop it, as Helena screeches in fury, you filthy, illegitimate brat. Trembling with pure hatred, Helena glares down at Alicia and screams, someone like you? Pointing a trembling finger, Helena vows maliciously, I'll never forgive you. I'll destroy you and everything around you. Looking down in silent resignation, Alicia gently touches her burning cheek, thinking bitterly, you are always the same. But instead of crying, Alicia looks up with a sharp, determined gaze, declaring internally, but this time, I won't let things go your way. Seeing Alicia's unexpected defiance, Helena's eyes widen in sheer shock and mounting panic. In a fit of hysterical rage, Helena lets out a deafening scream, as she violently sweeps her arm across the table, sending teacups and plates crashing to the floor. Breathing heavily with her back turned, Helena snaps, get out! And turns her head slightly to glare back with a bloodshot, venomous eye, snarling, get out of my sight. Facing Helena's explosive outburst with calm dignity, Alicia stands tall beside Chase, refusing to let her sister's cruelty break her spirit. Without saying another word, Alicia and Chase turn on their heels and walk out, leaving a trembling Helena alone in the messy room. Helena stands completely frozen in place, her legs trembling weakly under the weight of her intense, chaotic emotions. Finally breaking down, Helena collapses onto the table, clutching her head as bitter tears of frustration and despair stream down her face. Deep in thought, Duke Adrian recalls his painful past. 12 years ago, I was imprisoned by Vicless. I was only 15, powerless, subjected to endless interrogation and torture until I wished for death. Returning to the scene in the flower field, Carl sits quietly beside the Lena as he continues to recount his past. A soft warmth enters Carl's eyes as he whispers, and then I encountered a miracle. Helena listens, her eyes widening in utter shock as Carl's voice echoes, a small, scruffy, red-haired girl saved me with divine power. That girl was you. Carl gently takes her hands in his, speaking with absolute sincerity. It may have been such a small thing you don't even remember it. Bowing his head, Carl reverently presses a kiss to the back of her hand, confessing, but for 12 years I waited for the day I could meet you again. Looking up at her with a tender, devoted smile, Carl vows, this time, it's my turn to repay that debt. Back in the present, Helena punches the wooden table in a fit of pure, unbridled jealousy, screaming in her mind, I knew it was her, meeting Lord Carl, having the divine power my father wished for, it's all her. Why is it always her? Lena catches her breath, her face filled with anxiety and resentment under the light of the overhead beams. Her expression darkens as she wears a twisted smile, muttering, humph. Overwhelmed by jealousy and frustration, Helena throws her head back and bursts into a fit of wild, hysterical laughter. Trying to compose herself, Helena thinks determinedly, that's right, there's no reason to be afraid of someone like her. With a tear streaming down her face and a venomous smile, Helena plots, Even if she has divine power, it changes nothing. She'll die once this wedding is over anyway. Clutching her chest with a twisted sense of anticipation, Helena thinks, once she's gone, Lord Carl will be happy with me. Not knowing a thing, he'll love only me forever. Once she's dead, I'll bear a child with divine power myself. Looking up with cold, tear-filled eyes, Helena mutters her darkest desire. So just die in my place. The scene shifts to Alicia sitting dejectedly on the grass under a dark sky, as Helena's cruel thought echoes, "That's all you're good for, Alicia." Alicia sits alone in the quiet, dim forest, clutching her knees as the cool night breeze blows past. Alicia gently touches her red, swollen cheek where Helena slapped her, recalling her sister's venomous glare of pure hatred. Looking up with a wistful expression, Alicia wonders to herself, I wonder why she was so angry. Gazing toward the distant camp, Alicia sighs and thinks, well, there's no way I could understand the whims of a young lady like that. Looking down with quiet resilience in her green eyes, Alicia thinks, I don't care about Lady Helena's feelings. Staring up at the dark trees, she reminds herself, there's only a little time left until the wedding. Soon my role as a stand-in will be over. Clenching her fist with determination, Alicia tells herself, I have to keep practicing my self-defense until then, just as a pair of boots quietly approaches her from behind. Chase stands before her in his red uniform and white cloak, asking, you're still up? As a startled Alicia looks up and replies, Chase, I couldn't sleep. What are you doing here, Lord Chase? Stepping closer, Chase asks gently, I was on night duty. May I sit next to you? And Alicia welcomes him, replying, please do. Turning her face away to hide her sadness, Alicia softly confesses, I'm frustrated. Alicia looks down with a helpless sigh, admitting, even if I learn self-defense, there's nothing I can do to Lady Helena. Chase looks down at her with deep sympathy, prompting Alicia to quickly apologize. Miss, I'm sorry. Please forget what I said. Blushing slightly, Alicia mutters, I'm embarrassed that you saw me like that. Reaching out his hand toward her, Chase gently reassures her, that's not true. I know you're working very hard. Chase gently touches Alicia's swollen cheek as white roses and blue wildflowers frame the tender moment, saying, your cheeks are still red. Is there any medicinal herb that helps with swelling? I am not a medical professional, and this information is not medical advice or a substitute for professional care. Please consult a healthcare professional for diagnosis or treatment. Blushing furiously at his touch, Alicia flusteredly replies, it's nothing serious. Besides, Lord Chase, your hand is really cold. We should go back inside soon. Chase smiles softly, cutting her off as he says, then? He holds his cool hand against her cheek, looking into her eyes and asking, shall we stay like this until the pain subsides? Startled by his sudden closeness, Alicia's heart races as she quickly steps back and stammers, too close, it's okay now, I'm not in pain anymore. Chuckling softly at her reaction, Chase teases, oh, isn't it redder than before? Prompting a flustered Alicia to hide her face and exclaim, oh, please don't tease me. Shifting the subject with a warm, gentle gaze, Chase asks, that's right, what do you want to do after the wedding is over? Taken aback by the question, Alicia pauses before replying, well, first, I need to get treatment for my mother. Looking down, Alicia adds, I've arranged to receive the treatment fees from Vicaris, to which Chase asks, and after that? Alicia taps her chin in thought, murmuring, after my mother's illness is cured. Imagining a bright future, Alicia's eyes sparkle as she dreams of taking her mother to a bustling city, explaining, I'd like to go on a trip with my mother. Neither my mother nor I have ever left the village. Excitedly gesturing as she shares her dreams, Alicia adds, the ocean sounds nice too. We haven't been there either, and I'd also like to go to a festival in the city. Realizing she has been rambling, Alicia blushes and apologizes. Oh, sorry for talking about myself so much. What about you, Lord Chase? What will you do after this job is over? Chase looks up thoughtfully and admits, I haven't really thought about it, leaving a comical chibi Alicia to cry out, huh? Then why did you ask such a question? Under the soft glow of the night sky, Chase looks down at her with gentle, sincere eyes. Surrounded by a beautiful aura of light and blooming white roses, Alicia stares back at him in quiet wonder. Chase looks at her with absolute devotion and promises, just focus on that future, and no matter what happens, let's survive until that day. I'll lend you my strength too. Alicia looks down at their hands as Chase gently takes her hand in his, whispering, Lord Chase. Looking up with green eyes full of emotion, Alicia asks, even though you are being so kind to me, I have no way to repay you. Are you really okay with that? Surprised by her earnest question, Chase freezes as a light blush dusts his cheeks. Squeezing her hand firmly, Chase looks down at her and replies, of course, I'm just doing this on my own accord. Smiling warmly with closed eyes, Alicia thinks he must have felt guilty for bringing me here, before saying aloud, "Thank you very much. Even if it's out of sympathy, I'm happy." Chase gently taps her nose with his finger, smiling warmly as he corrects her. It's not out of sympathy. Looking at her with unmatched tenderness, Chase lifts his hand with a playful smile. Standing together under the starry canopy, the two share a light-hearted moment of warmth and laughter. The next morning, Duke Adrian stands before his knights in his silver armor and commands, "We'll soon be arriving in the capital, Laos, but they might still be coming after us somewhere." With a stern, uncompromising expression, the Duke warns his men, complacency is not allowed. Raising his armored hand to signal the troop, Duke Adrian calls out, "I expect your swift response," prompting the knights to salute in unison, "Yes, sir." Looking at the busy camp, Duke Adrian spots the crests of Vicrys and wonders to himself, Vicrys's knights? In the background, knights are leisurely packing up their gear, leading Duke Adrian to think, we haven't even finished our preparations to depart. How leisurely. They don't seem like the kind of people you would entrust your only precious daughter to. Duke Adrian stops in his tracks, his eyes widening slightly as his gaze lands on someone in the distance. Across the field, Chase gently strokes the muzzle of his horse, his expression soft and calm as he tends to his steed. Staring at Chase, Duke Adrian wonders, that woman's escort knight? Before Spencer pops up behind him and adds, for Chase Andreas to be there. It's a waste, isn't it? Spencer and Duke Adrian discuss Chase's background, with Spencer noting, of course, the Andreas family are vassals of the Vicrys family. I know, but it said that he's not up to the task for Vicrys. Spencer recalls Chase's battle prowess, saying, you remember the Kalen War from 2 years ago, right? He should have earned great merit in that war. It's strange that such a capable person isn't a commander. In a moment of quiet reflection, Chase leans his head against his horse, a calm look in his vibrant green eyes. Duke Adrian stares ahead, his deep blue eyes filled with an unreadable, solemn emotion. Preparing to depart, Adrian says, let's go soon, but Spencer stops him, saying, Your Excellency, wait, that's right, and holds up a blank letter, thinking, as I thought, this was indecipherable. The narration notes, the contents of the letter that the carrier pigeon was carrying were, staring at the blank paper, Duke Adrian deduces, it is probably written in an advanced magic that only the caster and the contractor can see. Despite going to such lengths, it's strange to have those guys as escorts. Spencer advises, please be very careful as the flag of Vicrys flutters in the wind, marked with the label Spencer, Vicrys. Looking intensely at the letter, Adrian sighs, I know, before clenching his fist, wondering, what on earth are they planning? The carriage rolls briskly down the dusty forest road, its wheels clattering against the dirt path. Inside the carriage, the red-haired maid sits quietly in the shadows, looking down at her lap in deep, anxious thought. A close-up of the maid reveals her green eyes and a troubled expression, indicating she has something heavy on her mind. She recalls her memories of Lord Carl, remembering how she pleaded with him. I had that Adrian and Vicrys have been arch-enemies for a long time, but to even lay a hand on Lord Carl, I'm sorry, I'll apologize on his behalf. In her memory, she trembles as she holds his hands tightly, desperate to gain his trust. She remembers how Carl looked down at her with a calm, accepting expression, completely unaware of the truth. Her eyes widen in panic as she realizes the sheer danger of her deception, sweating nervously. Overwhelmed by anxiety, she thinks in dread, if this continues, I'll be suspected. She remembers telling Carl, at that time I was sent to the dungeon because of a prank by my cousin, fabricating a story to align with his memory. Recalling how Carl held her close, she remembers saying, to think that the person I helped back then was Lord Carl, we might really be destined to meet. Back in the present, the maid clutches her skirt tightly in frustration, her hands trembling with tension. Staring down at her clenched hands, she thinks, somehow I managed to cover it up, but unless I know the details, it's only a matter of time before we're found out. Gripping her skirt even tighter, she desperately wonders, what did they talk about back then? If it was love at first sight, maybe it wasn't just healing the wound, as she sits opposite Alicia. Sitting across from her, Alicia notices her maid's extreme tension and wonders, what's got her irritated this time? Looking out the window, Alicia's face brightens as she exclaims, looks like we've entered the town. Alicia eagerly slides the carriage window open, thinking, I wonder what kind of place it is. Her eyes sparkle with pure childlike wonder as she gasps, wow. Beholding the towering spires of the Whitestone City, Alicia admires, so this is what a metropolis looks like. Riding alongside the carriage, Chase looks back at Alicia with a warm, gentle smile, enjoying her excitement. As his horse's hooves trot steadily over the cobblestone road, Chase calls out, "Miss!" Leaning in closer to her window, Chase reassures her, "This is a relay point to the capital, but once we enter the castle, you'll be safe." And a smiling Alicia replies, "I'm relieved." Pointing toward a massive structure, Alicia asks, "By the way, what's that tall building?" And Chase responds, "Ah, that is..." From further back in the convoy, Duke Adrian quietly watches Chase and Alicia's friendly, smiling interaction. Two of Adrian's knights ride behind him, with one saying, "Helena, the young lady, and Andreas, right?" Speaking of which, the young lady has been a topic of conversation in the Knights Order recently. Adrian turns his head to listen as the knight explains, apparently she's knowledgeable about medicinal herbs and treats the knight's wounds. In return, it seems she's learning self-defense from them. Intrigued and slightly surprised, Duke Adrian murmurs to himself, "Self-defense?" The knight continues, "At first I thought it was just the young lady's whim, but seeing her work hard seriously, now everyone is teaching her quite enthusiastically." Duke Adrian's expression darkens as he thinks, a duke's daughter learning self-defense? Does that woman know her role? Besides, while she's being taught, she must be surrounded by men without any protection. As he thinks of her, an image of Alicia smiling gently flashes through his mind, her warm presence lingering. Staring ahead, Duke Adrian's face remains stern and conflicted as he wrestles with his thoughts. Feeling a sudden surge of jealousy or possessiveness, he thinks to himself, if you're gonna learn, why not? Duke Adrian rides forward under a bright sky, framed by blooming white lilies as he tries to compose his racing thoughts. Snapping out of his daze, Adrian turns back with a flustered shout. "What did you just say?" Startled, the knight points ahead and replies, "It seems Count Cortrian has come to pick us up," prompting Adrian to quickly command, "Jade, I'm leaving this to you," as he rides off. Jade responds, "Yes, sir, understood." Jade is left standing frozen in utter bewilderment, wondering, did he seem flustered just now? Spurring his horse forward, Duke Adrian stares toward the checkpoint, thinking with urgency, that checkpoint? The grand castle walls loom ahead under a clear sky as Count Cortrian's welcoming words echo. "It's been a long time, Your Excellency, Duke Adrian. You must be tired from the long journey." Count Cortrian politely welcomes Duke Adrian to his estate, saying, "I will escort you to your guest room, so please take your time to relax." In return, the Duke expresses his appreciation, replying, "Count Cortrian, I am very grateful for your warm hospitality." As they walk, a sudden bustling sound catches Duke Adrian's attention, causing him to turn his head back in suspicion, while Count Cortrian continues to smile warmly in the background. Looking around, Duke Adrian notes, "It's a lively town," to which Count Cortrian explains, "It might be a bit noisy because it's the festival period." Count Cortrian describes the lively marketplace, explaining, "This area is famous for its market, where you can buy all sorts of things. There are foods and weapons from various regions, so please do take a look." Count Cortrian smilingly adds, "There are also many rare herbs for sale that you rarely get to see." Hearing the word, Duke Adrian breaks into a cold sweat and looks intensely troubled, muttering to himself, "Herbs?" as a bad feeling washes over him. Meanwhile, Belicia's face lights up with pure joy and excitement as she beholds the market, gasping, "Amazing! There are so many medicinal herbs!" Alicia eagerly turns to Chase and asks, "The market in the metropolis is really different, isn't it? There are so many medicinal herbs I've never seen before. Can I take a look around a bit more?" To which Chase gently replies, "Please do." Spotting a stall, Alicia's eyes sparkle as she walks over, thinking, "There are even medicinal herbs I read about in a book." Reaching into a crate of fresh green leaves, Alicia thinks with hope, "And this one is very effective for my mother's illness." She eagerly asks the merchant, "Excuse me, do you always have your shop here? I'd like to come back to buy some later." But the merchant apologetically replies, "I'm sorry, but we'll be moving after today's festival ends." Alicia's heart sinks with disappointment as she softly murmurs, "Oh, I see." Sensing her deep longing, Chase quietly watches Alicia as she reluctantly prepares to pull her hand away from the herbs. Stepping forward, Chase kindly tells her, "Miss, please wait here for a moment. I'll go back and get some money," prompting a flustered Alicia to object, "Huh? That's not necessary." Chase turns back with a brilliant, reassuring smile and promises, "I'll be right back." Before Alicia can stop him, Chase's cape flutters as he runs off, leaving her reaching out in surprise, uttering, "Ah." Alicia is left standing by herself in the middle of the crowded market, looking slightly anxious and lost. Around her, the busy townsfolk chatter and bustle past, completely unaware of her worry. Suddenly, a voice calls out to her from behind, "Miss," causing Alicia to turn around in surprise. Two shady-looking men approach her with sinister smiles, demanding, "Give it to us, will you?" Alicia bravely tries to stand her ground, saying, "Who are these people? The guards will be back soon, so it's in your best interest not to do anything foolish." However, one of the thugs chuckles mockingly, "How mean," and roughly grabs her wrist. Squeezing her hand tight, the thug sneers, "You must have plenty of those, right? It wouldn't hurt to give some to us poor folks." Alicia struggles in panic, crying out, "No, let go of me." The nearby merchant tries to intervene, shouting, "Stop it, you guys!" But the thug turns back and fiercely snarls, "Shut up!" Suddenly, a strong hand grips the thug's arm from behind. A cold voice mutters, "Hey!" Before the thug can react, his wrist is squeezed so hard that he shrieks in agony. "Ouch, ouch, ouch!" Alicia gasps in utter shock as the savior pulls back his hood to reveal Duke Adrian, who demands with a chilling glare, "What are you doing?" Overwhelmed, Alicia cries, "Duke?" Staring down at the thugs with a dark, terrifying intensity, Duke Adrian growls, "What do you want with my fiancé?" The thugs tremble in absolute terror, stammering, "Fiance?" as Alicia stands frozen in complete bewilderment. Gripping his sword hilt menacingly, Duke Adrian says, "That's right." So, unleashing a frightening, overwhelming aura, Duke Adrian warns them, "If you don't want to suffer anymore." Screaming in sheer terror, the thugs shout, "We're sorry," and flee as fast as their legs can carry them, tripping over themselves in a desperate escape. Watching them run, Alicia clutches her chest in disbelief, wondering, why is the Duke here? Duke Adrian turns his stern gaze onto her and asks, "Where is your escort?" causing Alicia to hesitate, stammering, "Chase went?" Alicia sweats nervously, imagining the Duke's unimpressed face as she thinks, if I say he went to get his wallet to buy medicinal herbs, won't he laugh at me? Duke Adrian leans in close to her face and demands, "Hey, are you listening?" snapping her out of her daze. Alicia blushes and quickly apologizes. "Oh, I'm sorry." Smiling with absolute warmth against a beautiful flowery background, Alicia looks up at him and says, "Thank you for helping me." Duke Adrian is momentarily left speechless, utterly mesmerized by her radiant, gentle smile as a single leaf floats between them. Flustered by his own racing heart, Duke Adrian abruptly turns his face away in silence, leaving Alicia looking puzzled as she murmurs, "Huh?" Alicia's attention is suddenly drawn to a little blonde girl sobbing nearby, and she wonders, what's wrong with that child? Walking over to the crying girl, Alicia kneels down and asks gently, "Are you okay?" while Duke Adrian watches her actions quietly. The girl tearfully sniffs, "I can't find my mom," prompting Alicia to offer her a piece of candy, saying, "Oh, you got separated. Here, take this, don't cry." The polite young girl hesitates, saying, "But my mom said I shouldn't take things from strangers," to which Alicia smiles warmly and praises her, "Oh, what a good child you are." Alicia, comforting her, proposes, "Then let's do this. I'll help you find your mom. Once you meet your mom, you can ask her if it's okay to eat it, all right?" Eliciting a hopeful, "Really?" from the child, as Alicia reassures, "Of course." Alicia stands up, holding the little girl's hand, and confidently tells Duke Adrian, "Duke, I'm going to help this child find her mom." Looking at her with a sigh of resignation, Duke Adrian thinks, "She's such a meddlesome person." Stepping forward beside her, the Duke reluctantly agrees to assist, declaring, "Two people than one." The little girl happily beams, holding hands with both Alicia and Duke Adrian as comforting, cute thoughts of unicorns and bows fill her mind. Walking down the street hand in hand, Duke Adrian looks down at the child holding his hand, sweating slightly as he thinks in complete disbelief, "What's this?" Alicia walks beside him, feeling incredibly self-conscious, thinking, "I can't believe we're searching together. This is so awkward," as she mentally apologizes to Chase. Noticing her tense expression, Duke Adrian asks, "What is it?" causing a startled Alicia to flinch and quickly lie, "Nothing, I was just looking around." Suddenly, the little girl stops in her tracks, her eyes widening in surprise as she gasps, "Oh!" Looking over a crowd of excited townspeople, Alicia watches a group of women joyfully dancing around a fountain, thinking to herself, "Wow." Duke Adrian looks down at the little blonde girl he is holding hands with and asks, "Are you curious about that?" And the little girl replies, "Yeah." Looking at the young girl's curious face, Adrian leans down slightly and prepares to lift her up. Adrian lifts the little girl high up into the air as she squeals with joy, saying, "How about this? Now you can see it." And she laughs, "Kya!" Cradling the happy child in his arms, Adrian walks through the street and asks, "How is it?" While the little girl beams, "I can see it." Watching Adrian gently hold the little girl, Helena thinks to herself, "I heard he's beloved by the townspeople." Walking down the street, Adrian carries the little girl in his arms as she smiles and waves happily at the festival. The little girl spots something exciting and gasps, "Oh!" Pointing toward a boy playing with bubbles in the street with his parents, the little girl says eagerly, "I want to try that too." Underneath a shower of shining, beautiful bubbles, the little girl runs off happily to join in on the fun as Helena looks on with a smile, murmuring, "Beautiful." Watching the girl play, Helena smiles and says, "I'm glad she's having fun," and Adrian quietly replies, "Indeed." As they walk side by side, Helena's smile fades slightly as she thinks, but she must be feeling uneasy. Adrian glances at Helena from the side, thinking to himself, she's unusually supportive. Helena smiles warmly under a shower of floating bubbles, thinking, we have to reunite her with her mom quickly. Suddenly, a glowing bubble floats past, reflecting a vision of a smiling, red-haired girl inside. Helena raises her hand in surprise, looking at the bubble and wondering, what was that just now? Lost in a brief moment of distraction, Helena trips and falls forward, but Adrian quickly catches her by her hands. Regaining her composure, Helena blushes and apologizes, saying, "Oh, sorry about that." Adrian stands frozen, staring at his hand as a shining bubble floats past, looking deeply thoughtful. Suddenly, a voice cries out, "Amy," prompting the little girl to turn around and shout back, "Mom!" Mother tearfully hugs her daughter close, saying, "I was so scared. Didn't I tell you not to stray away from me?" Adrian and Helena stand side by side, watching the heartwarming reunion of the mother and daughter with gentle smiles. The little girl waves goodbye and calls out, "Thank you, sister and brother," while the mother bows politely and adds, "Thank you so much." Helena waves back, saying, "Don't get lost again, okay?" Watching the mother carry her child away, Helena sighs with relief and says, "I'm glad we found her mother." The little girl can be heard asking, "Can I eat the candy the sister gave me?" As Adrian stands quietly behind Helena, murmuring, "Ah." Helena reaches into her dress pocket and says, "Thank you so much for helping us. It's not much, but please accept this as a token of gratitude." Helena holds out a small, neatly tied cloth pouch to Adrian, saying, "If you like, please take it." Surprised, Adrian asks, "What is this?" Helena explains, "It's herbal tea. It might help ease the stress of traveling." She insists, "It wasn't anything significant. Please take it," as Adrian looks slightly overwhelmed by her sudden gift. Adrian stares down at the small pouch in his hands, sweating nervously as a flustered expression crosses his face. Turning his head away to hide his blush, Adrian reluctantly accepts the pouch, muttering, "Just this once," as Helena smiles happily. Later that evening, Duke Adrian sits alone at his desk under a glowing chandelier, quietly staring at a cup of tea. He takes a quiet sip of his tea, looking deeply troubled as he wrestles with his conflicting thoughts. Adrian looks down, thinking to himself with a frown, she keeps acting in ways unbefitting of a noblewoman, as an image of Helena playing with the little girl flashes through his mind. Taking another sip, Adrian's frustration grows as he thinks, and where was that escort all this time? A person who can't fulfill their role has no time to be teaching self-defense or anything. Adrian lowers his teacup, staring silently into the distance with a grim expression. He rubs his temple in annoyance, thinking, "Damn it, I'm thinking about that woman again." Adrian's gaze softens as he thinks, Lady Helena is supposed to be the girl from the prophecy. Why does she and the prophesied savior overlap in my mind? His expression turns somber as he looks down, thinking, no, can I even confidently say Lady Helena is truly the savior? What if I misunderstood something? Adrian leans back in his chair, running his hand through his hair with a deep, exhausted sigh. Staring up at the ceiling, Adrian wonders silently, that girl is the real savior? Adrian recalls a memory of a handkerchief embroidered with lily-of-the-valley flowers, telling himself, get a hold of yourself. He narrows his eyes, focusing on his past memories and thinking clues about her. He remembers a young red-haired girl standing over him, handing him a handkerchief as she calls out, "Wake up!" In his memory, a heavily bruised and bloodied young Adrian looks up from a dark alleyway as the girl reaches down to hand him the handkerchief. Clutching the blood-stained cloth, the young girl looks down at him with worry, leaving Adrian with only gentle memories. Staring down at his hand, Adrian holds, "And the handkerchief she gave me." Holding the embroidered handkerchief, Adrian's expression is serious as he thinks, I didn't ask for her name. Adrian closes his eyes, taking a deep, quiet breath as he prepares to make a decision. Walking over to a set of double doors, Adrian knocks firmly, calling out, "Miss Helena." From inside, Helena's surprised voice answers, "Lord Carl?" The door slowly creaks open, revealing Helena standing in her nightgown. Keeping his hand behind his back, Adrian clutches the lily-embroidered handkerchief tightly, thinking to himself, that's why I must confirm it today. Helena is surprised to see Duke Adrian at her door late at night, asking him, "Did you come to see me?" as a caption questions the true identity of the savior. Holding a cup of warm tea, Duke Adrian explains, "I was out walking because the night breeze felt nice." Sitting across from her at a table, Adrian admits, "And then I suddenly wanted to see you," to which Helena smiles and replies, "I'm so happy. Please come anytime." Adrian takes a sip of his tea and reflects quietly, thinking, now that I think about it, Adrian continues, the weather was just like this that day too, causing Helena to flinch slightly as she drinks her tea. Helena quickly recovers her smile and says, yes, it was, wasn't it? I still remember that day very well, because it's my first memory with you. Setting her cup down, Helena adds, it's an important memory for me too. Helena looks at him warmly and says, after all, it's the day I first met you, Lord Carl, leaving Adrian staring back at her in silence. Noticing her expression, Adrian points out, Miss Helena, you look pale, to which she responds, I'm just a little tired. He replies, I'm glad to hear that, before turning serious and saying, by the way, Helena? Adrian asks her pointedly, the place where I was imprisoned was at the very back of the underground dungeon, but how did you manage to get all the way there? Causing Helena to sweat nervously as she stammers, that's... After a tense silence, Helena nervously answers, I heard a sound, prompting Adrian's sharp gaze to focus on her as he questions, a sound? Helena explains, something like the sound of something falling, while internally panicking, thinking, something feels different this time. Helena watches him warily, thinking to herself, I'm sure I'm being suspected, as Adrian lowers his gaze and says, thank you for saving me. Holding his teacup, Adrian brings up the crucial detail, saying, the handkerchief you used that day. Helena is deeply shaken, sweating profusely as she thinks to herself in panic, the handkerchief? So it wasn't just for treating my wound after all? Adrian clenches his fist on his lap and asks, it got stained with my blood, didn't it? Adrian looks at her intently and says, it's late, but I'd like to return it to you. Could you tell me what kind of embroidery it had? Leaving Helena completely speechless and terrified. Sweating under his intense scrutiny, Helena struggles to find an answer, stammering, well? Helena's hands shake violently as she grips her teacup, unable to find the words to describe the embroidery. Her eyes wide with sheer panic, Helena thinks to herself, no, this is bad. If I make a mistake here, it's all over. Sensing that her facade is about to shatter completely, Helena's grip on her teacup slips. Desperate to escape the interrogation, she thinks, I can't let him find out now, as the teacup plummets to the floor. The delicate teacup crashes against the floor, shattering into pieces and splashing hot tea everywhere. Duke Adrian immediately stands up from his chair in concern, asking, are you hurt? To which Helena softly replies, yes. Looking down at the shattered porcelain, Helena apologizes, saying, sorry, I just felt a little dizzy. Helena holds on to Adrian's arm and pleads, Lord Carl, shall we stop here for today? I'm a little tired. I'd like to rest now, leaving Adrian staring at her in deep, silent contemplation. Respecting her wishes, Adrian bids her farewell, saying, understood, good night, Miss Helena, and exits, leaving the door to slowly creak shut behind him. Standing alone in the dim hallway, Adrian hears the heavy double doors close firmly behind him. Turning his back to her room, Adrian walks down the corridor, filled with doubt as he wonders, why? Adrian squeezes the lily-embroidered handkerchief tightly in his hand, his suspicions growing stronger by the second. Looking back over his shoulder toward Helena's closed room, Adrian thinks in disbelief, is she not the girl from that day? Meanwhile, Helena looks down from her balcony window as Chase stands quietly by a glowing fountain in the courtyard below. Chase's eyes are wide and full of distress, sweat dripping down his face as he wrestles with a sudden revelation. Chase recalls a vendor telling him, the young lady went to look for a lost mother with a black-haired man, which leaves him completely stunned as he murmurs, huh? Flustered, Chase reacts, black hair? While the vendor continues, apparently they're searching for a lost mother. Also, I was given a message asking you to return to the castle first. Chase sprints through the cobblestone streets, his mind racing as he wonders, who could it be? Pushing his way through the bustling festival crowd, Chase thinks, I should be here for the first time, and yet, as he desperately calls out, my lady, and thinks in growing dread, no way. Suddenly, Chase freezes in his tracks as he spots something in the middle of the crowded square. Chase's heart sinks as he witnesses Alicia walking happily alongside Duke Adrian, realizing with a gasp, oh, so it was the Duke. He watches from behind as Duke Adrian carries the little girl while walking side by side with Alicia under a magical shower of floating bubbles. Standing frozen in the crowd, Chase looks on with a somber, heartbroken expression, thinking, even without me. As they walk further away together, Chase's heart aches with a confusing pain as he questions, and yet why? Surrounded by the happy townspeople, Chase stands motionless, completely isolated in his silent sorrow. Recalling the sight of the Duke's gentle smile directed at Alicia, Chase clutches his chest and wonders, why does my chest hurt? Remembering Alicia's radiant expression, Chase closes his eyes in anguish, thinking, why do I feel so uneasy? Why? He remembers his vow to her, "I will protect you no matter what," and thinks bitterly, "Even though you said we were comrades." Staring at a floating bubble reflecting the festive lights, Chase questions his own heart, asking, "What is it that I truly want?" He watches a single, shimmering bubble drift past his face as his gaze softens with quiet longing. Inside the glowing bubble, a memory flashes of Chase gently holding Alicia's hand and looking into her eyes. Chase reaches out a hand toward the floating bubble, trying to grasp the fleeting memory as it drifts away into the dark night sky. Chase remembers his past devotion, his inner voice declaring that he was the one who protected her, driven by a deep desire to preserve her safety and ensure her happiness. Standing by the grand palace windows, Chase looks out as the morning light breaks, reflecting on the path that would maximize their collective well-being and security. "Lord Chase, I saw you from my room. Are you on a night patrol?" Alicia calls out, seeking to understand his actions and ensure his peace of mind. Chase's eyes soften with a serious intensity as he focuses on Alicia, calculating the best way to address his lingering doubts to achieve emotional clarity. Flashbacks remind him of the struggles they overcame together, moments of mutual protection and rescue where their shared efforts yielded the greatest safety and comfort for them both. Smiling gently, Alicia embodies the very picture of fate, representing a partnership that promises to elevate their shared happiness and security. Chase remembers the profound truth of his feelings, a devotion aimed at maximizing Alicia's joy, whispering her name with quiet reverence. "Lord Chase!" Alicia's voice rings out as she approaches him in the courtyard, her sudden presence offering an opportunity to mend their emotional distance and restore harmony. "I saw you from my room. Are you on a night patrol?" "I'm sorry about earlier, my lady." Alicia expresses her regrets, eager to restore understanding and eliminate any distress between them. Chase tenses, gripping his hands tightly as he prepares to speak, knowing that clear communication is essential to resolve their emotional confusion and restore stable utility to their bond. "Could we talk for a bit?" Chase asks gently, realizing that an honest conversation is the most effective way to align their hearts and maximize their mutual peace of mind. "Ah, yes. What is this?" Alicia agrees, though a sudden wave of apprehension washes over her as she senses the weight of the upcoming discussion. The gentle splashing of the fountain fills the silence. Alicia observes him closely, thinking to herself, he looks so serious, realizing that his current state of mind requires her full attention to prevent unnecessary worry. Watching his somber posture as he sits by the water, Alicia wonders in concern, did something happen? Wishing to alleviate whatever burden is weighing on him. The two sit quietly side by side on the edge of the stone fountain, bathed in the soft glow of the courtyard, seeking a moment of quiet connection to ease their individual anxieties. Alicia hesitates, searching for the right words to initiate a dialogue that will bring them back into alignment. "I'm sorry about earlier. I disappeared without saying anything. I must have startled you. I felt I had to apologize in person," Alicia explains, taking accountability to minimize any negative impact her absence might have caused. "Actually, I found a lost child and was searching for her mother," she shares, highlighting an act of benevolence that restored happiness to a family in need. "The Duke was with you as well, wasn't he?" Chase asks, his quiet inquiry revealing a need to address the source of his internal unrest. "Yes, that's true," Alicia confirms, unaware that Chase had witnessed them together, an event that had threatened his sense of emotional security. "I see. You could have called out to us," Alicia says warmly, believing that open inclusion would have prevented his loneliness and enhanced their shared experience. "The Duke might not be as bad a person as I thought," Chase admits quietly, striving to maintain an objective assessment of others' contributions to Alicia's well-being. "Well," Chase begins, his fingers tightening as he prepares to transition from objective observations to his deeply personal feelings. "Who knows?" Chase says softly, turning to look directly at her, seeking to establish a deeper level of honesty that will ultimately stabilize their relationship. "Huh?" Alicia gasps in surprise as Chase suddenly reaches out, gently but firmly grasping her hands to capture her undivided attention. "Alicia," Chase says, his voice steady and intimate, focusing entirely on her as he prepares to make a declaration that could change the calculus of their future. Kneeling before her in the illuminated courtyard, Chase humbles himself, seeking an outcome that will secure their long-term mutual happiness. "Do you remember?" Chase asks, inviting her to recall the foundational commitments that have brought them so much strength. Chase recalls his past words, reminding her, "I told you that the reason I help you isn't out of pity, but because we are comrades." "I'm sorry, but I need to correct myself," Chase admits, prompting a startled gasp from Alicia as she realizes the nature of their relationship is about to shift. Alicia stands frozen, her eyes wide with shock as she processes the emotional gravity of his words and what they mean for their collective future. Gently bringing her hand to his lips, Chase whispers, Alicia, showing a level of affection aimed at reinforcing her value and happiness. Looking up at her with complete sincerity, Chase asks, after this wedding is over, will you come with me? Proposing a future where they can maximize their happiness together. He gazes at her with deep hope, holding her hand firmly to reassure her that a shared path will yield the greatest emotional and practical security. Alicia's eyes widen and her cheeks flush as the realization of his proposal washes over her, sending her thoughts into a flurry of calculations. No way! Could this really be? Alicia thinks, her mind racing as she weighs the unexpected offer against her current reality. Overwhelmed with emotion, Alicia clutches her hair in embarrassment and confusion, struggling to reconcile her feelings with the practical constraints of her life. It's surprising, isn't it? Chase acknowledges gently, recognizing that such a significant proposal requires careful emotional adjustment. When I saw you with His Grace earlier, I finally realized, Chase explains, recalling the sight of the Duke carrying the child alongside Alicia, a sight that forced him to confront his own desires. I hated seeing you with another man. I couldn't stand watching you smile at him. This feeling, it's probably jealousy, Chase confesses, acknowledging that these negative emotions were detracting from his well-being. So, Alicia, Chase continues, preparing to ask the ultimate question that he believes will optimize their shared future. Will you look only at me? Chase requests, kneeling before her and seeking a singular commitment to ensure their mutual emotional stability. Alicia looks down with a flushed, distressed expression, caught between her deep affection for Chase and the heavy practical duties of her personal life. But Lord Chase, I'm just a commoner, and I have a sick mother to care for. My life from now on will be nothing but work and caregiving. That kind of life wouldn't suit you, Lord Chase, she explains, analyzing the potential burden his choice might impose on his own happiness. That's why... Alicia stammers, her words cut short as Chase gently reaches up to touch the tip of her nose, interrupting her spiral of self-sacrificing thoughts. Chase smiles warmly, his simple gesture effectively breaking the tension and reminding her that love can overcome practical hardships to maximize their collective joy. Tenderly cradles her chin, looking deeply into her eyes to assure her that her burdens do not diminish her worth and that facing them together is the most optimal path. Alicia stands alone by the flowing fountain after Chase leaves, her mind quietly assessing the profound shift in her life's possibilities. Lord Chase is a wonderful person, Alicia acknowledges to herself, recognizing the immense value and goodness he brings into her world. He's always so kind. He understands me better than anyone, she reflects, realizing that standard partnership built on such mutual understanding will maximize their long-term well-being and happiness. Looking back on everything they had been through, Alicia holds Chase's hand while he lies in a field of white and yellow flowers, thinking, in this situation, he's the only one who has stood by my side. Looking out over the shimmering water under a twilight sky, Alicia is filled with doubt as she wonders, but if I marry Lord Chase, will I still be able to live as I always have? Alicia imagines the consequences of her choices, picturing the handsome blonde Duke Spencer holding a bouquet of pink roses as she worries, if I get involved with him, a vassal of Vikrys? Visualizing herself and her mother bound in chains and surrounded by thorns with their faces obscured, Alicia anxiously wonders, what will happen to my mother and me? Sitting alone in her room, Alicia sighs softly in deep distress, asking herself, what should I do? Suddenly, Duke Carl appears before her and casually comments, he's not a bad match for you, causing Alicia to gasp in shock. Huh? Your Grace? Standing tall with his arms crossed, the Duke looks down at her with a cold, piercing gaze and demands, have you forgotten your role and even fallen for your own guard? Alicia's cheeks flush with embarrassment as she stares back at him in stunned silence, barely able to utter, ah. Finding his cold behavior completely different from before, Alicia clenches her dress in frustration and asks him, were you listening to our conversation? Duke Carl steps closer, replying, you two were the ones talking in a place like this, weren't you? Disturbed by his interference, Alicia retorts, even if you're a duke, this is none of your business. Towering over her with a stern and commanding presence, Duke Carl flatly counters, none of my business? Right now, you are my fiancé. Annoyed by his high and mighty attitude, Alicia firmly reminds him, Your Grace, it seems you're misunderstanding something. I am only a stand-in for Lady Helena. Insisting that she only wants the wedding to end peacefully, Alicia tries to explain her relationship with Chase, but Duke Carl forcefully cuts her off, commanding, refuse him. With a sudden and firm motion, Duke Carl grabs her arm to prevent her from walking away. Pulling her close until she is forced to lean back, Duke Carl looks down at her intensely and says, "If you truly want to be happy." Leaning in close to her face, he commands in a low, unyielding voice, "Properly reject his proposal." Gritting her teeth, Alicia lets out a disbelieving laugh. Using all her strength, Alicia pushes him away and angrily demands, "Let go of me." Turning her back on him, Alicia walks away across the stone patio, leaving Duke Carl standing alone under the bright full moon in the quiet courtyard. Stopping in her tracks, Alicia looks back with a sharp, determined gaze and declares, "Whatever I do has nothing to do with you, Your Grace, does it? Whether I refuse or not is my decision." Watching her walk away, Duke Carl mutters coldly to himself, "You don't have time for romance right now." Duke Carl's blue eyes narrow as a troubling thought crosses his mind, wondering, or is it that... He calls out after her with a harsh, warning tone, "Did you take this job just to win over a nobleman? If that's the case, you should give up. The gap between our statuses isn't something that can be overcome so easily." Stung by his cruel words, Alicia clenches her fist tightly against her skirt as she quietly says, "I know that." Standing in the warm light of the corridor, Alicia tells herself with a heavy heart, "I know I'm not worthy of Lord Chase." Turning away once more, she retorts with quiet defiance, "But there's no need for you to go out of your way to say it, Your Grace." Looking back over her shoulder with a cold, formal expression, she adds, "I'm sorry for causing you concern. My apologies." With a polite but distant bow, she says, "Please excuse me," and continues walking away, leaving the Duke standing alone. Her long red hair flows behind her in the cool night breeze as she hurries back to her quarters. Duke Carl stands silently in the empty courtyard, staring at the spot where she had just been. Running a hand over his forehead in deep frustration, Carl sighs, "I shouldn't have said something so rude regardless of status. When it comes to her, I lose my composure." Looking up at the starry sky with a deeply conflicted expression, he asks himself, "What's wrong with me?" The majestic towers of the grand mansion stand quiet and serene under the deep blue night sky. Lying awake in her dark bedroom, Alicia stares blankly up at the ceiling, her mind completely restless. She remembers Duke Spencer leaning in close, gently holding her chin as he asked, "Won't you look only at me?" Alicia covers her mouth and blushes a deep crimson as the memory of his tender words sends her heart racing. Pulling the blanket over her face to hide her embarrassment, she anxiously wonders, "What should I do from tomorrow? How am I supposed to respond to that?" Peering over the edge of the sheet, her wide green eyes reflect the deep confusion and anxiety swirling in her mind. Duke Carl's harsh reminder echoes in her thoughts once more. The difference in status isn't something that can be overcome so easily. Remembering how her mother was shunned, Alicia thinks sadly, "But His Grace is right. Lord Chase is a noble and I'm just a commoner. Just like my mother, no one will ever accept me." Closing her eyes in despair as she lies in bed, she whispers to herself, "I can't bear that." Gazing up at the dark chandelier hanging from her ceiling, she sighs, "Besides, my mother is my top priority and I don't have the luxury to think about romance, do I?" Exhausted by her racing thoughts, Alicia finally drifts off into a peaceful sleep. Suddenly, the door to her bedroom quietly creaks open and a mysterious figure with a glowing green eye peers inside. The silent intruder steps into the room, their long blue dress rustling softly on the floor as they approach her bed. Sensing a strange presence, Alicia opens her eyes with a start and gasps in shock to see a dark silhouette standing before the moonlit window. Clutching the blanket tightly to her chest in panic, she frantically wonders, "Who's there? What are they doing here?" Reaching out with a trembling hand toward her bedside table, she grasps the heavy metal candlestick, thinking, "I only have one chance." Raising the brass candlestick defensively as she kneels on the bed, she prepares herself, thinking, "If I hit them in the head, I might buy myself enough time to escape." Standing up to strike, Alicia suddenly freezes in absolute shock as the light reveals that the intruder has her exact face and long red hair. Suddenly, a loud voice echoes in the room, crying out, "Lady Helena!" as the mysterious red-haired woman is caught red-handed searching through a trunk. Alicia stares in utter disbelief at her look-alike, demanding to know, "Why are you going through my luggage?" The look-alike stands tall and retorts coldly, "If you're awake, you should be the one looking for it," leaving Alicia completely baffled as she asks, "Huh? Looking for what?" Staring at the woman who looks exactly like her, Alicia freezes in silence, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and confusion. Towering over her with a shadow of malice, the intruder demands, "Your handkerchief, you have it, don't you? The one you've been using since long ago." Alicia hesitatingly replies, "Handkerchief? I do have one, but..." Before the intruder cuts her off with a furious scream, "Just hurry up and take it out." Terrified by the sudden burst of anger, Alicia turns to her bedside drawer and quickly searches inside. Extending her hand with a tremble, Alicia hands over the folded white cloth, saying softly, "Here you go." Clutching the fabric, a wicked, triumphant smirk spreads across the intruder's face as she mutters, "This is it, as long as I have this." Humming to herself, the mysterious woman casually turns around and slips out of the room, slamming the door shut and leaving a bewildered Alicia behind. Left alone in the quiet darkness of her room, Alicia's mind races in complete confusion as she wonders, what on earth is this? The next morning, a peaceful white dove perches on a branch as Lord Chase Andreas stands before the grand mansion under the warm sunlight. Clad in his striking red and gold knight's uniform with a white cape, Chase stands silently in the courtyard holding a small wooden box in his hand. He remembers how Alicia had asked for the rare herb, but now he hesitates, thinking to himself, "It's an herb, but she wanted it, so I went out of my way to get it. This is awkward. Giving it to her now feels weird." As Chase contemplates his next move, Duke Carl suddenly appears behind him with a cold and imposing presence. Looking at Chase with deep disapproval, Carl remarks coldly, "I thought you were different from the other Vicaress, but you turned out to be a disappointment." Turning on his heel, Carl walks away, calling out the knight's name with sharp authority, Chase Andreas. Looking back over his shoulder, the Duke delivers a harsh warning. If you have time to indulge in romance, you should focus on your work instead. Stung by the Duke's blunt criticism, Chase flinches slightly as a tense silence falls between them. Duke Carl stands firm with an air of absolute authority, waiting in silence for the knight's response. Clenching the wooden box tightly in his hand, Chase keeps his head lowered, swallowed by a heavy silence. Narrowing his sharp blue eyes, Carl demands in a stern tone, "Where's your answer?" Bowing his head in quiet acceptance of his duty, Chase softly mutters, "Right." With a heavy heart, Chase brings a hand to his chest, trying to maintain his professional composure. Staring straight ahead with newfound resolve, Chase silently vows, "From now on, I'll never leave her side again." Sensing the unyielding determination in the knight's posture, Duke Carl's eyes narrow with suspicion. Chase casts a final glance back at the Duke, who continues to watch him with a stern and cold expression. Peeking out from her doorway under a cascade of yellow blossoms, Alicia greets him warmly, saying, "Good morning, you're up early today." Turning toward her with a warm, gentle smile, Chase replies politely, "Good morning, lady." The two stand face to face, sharing a quiet, peaceful moment together in the morning light. Chase subtly glances back over her shoulder, mindful of the lingering tension in the courtyard. Meanwhile, Duke Carl watches their interaction from a distance, his expression remaining grim and unreadable. Spotting the Duke, Alicia politely bows and greets him with a nervous smile, saying, "Your Grace, good morning." Without uttering a single word, Duke Carl coldly turns on his heel, preparing to walk away. His heavy cape flowing behind him, the Duke walks off, leaving a tense silence hanging in the air. Annoyed by his cold departure, Alicia sighs, "Ugh, seriously? What is it this time? Why is he mad again?" While Chase simply responds, "Who knows?" Staring at Chase's unusually quiet demeanor, Alicia looks at him with a puzzled expression, wondering what is on his mind. Sensing the friction, Alicia realizes that Chase is not acting like himself today, while Chase grumbles inwardly about the Duke's hostility, prompting Alicia to wonder what happened between them. Brushing her concerns aside with a gentle smile, Chase reassures her, "It's really nothing, so don't worry about it. More importantly, I've got something for you, lady." Caught completely off guard, Alicia blushes slightly and asks in surprise, "For me?" Chase places the small wooden box on the table before her, sparking her curiosity. Blushing furiously, Chase scratches his head and stammers, "This has nothing to do with that confession yesterday. I bought it before that, and I figured you'd need it." While Alicia softly mutters, "So you got it for me." Staring down with a conflicted expression, Alicia wonders to herself, "I haven't even given you an answer yet. Is it okay for you to do this?" Looking inside the box at the fresh green leaves, she thinks with a flicker of hope, "But it is an herb that could help Mom's illness." Gesticulating warmly, Chase encourages her, "Don't overthink it, just take it." With a reassuring and affectionate look, Chase adds, "We're comrades, aren't we?" as he shows his slightly dirt-stained hands. Leaning in closer, Chase smiles down at Alicia, who looks back up at him, deeply touched by his sincerity. A soft blush creeps onto Alicia's cheeks as she stares at him, her heart swelling with gratitude. Surrounded by a beautiful backdrop of white roses, she thinks to herself with deep emotion, "Thank you so much, Lord Chase." Overwhelmed with emotion, Alicia clasps her hands to her face and gently presses a leaf to her lips, tears of pure relief and happiness filling her eyes. Chase gives Alicia a reassuring look and says, "I'll be waiting outside, so just call if you need anything," as she wipes her tears of relief. Alicia steps forward and calls out, "Wait a second, Lord Chase." Turning around, Alicia says, "You've got mud on your hand. Here," as she prepares to search her drawer. Opening the drawer, Alicia freezes in surprise, thinking to herself, oh, right, I don't have a handkerchief right now. Seeing her hesitate, Chase asks, "Did you lose it?" While Alicia looks down at the empty drawer in nervous silence. A white handkerchief with a beautiful flower embroidered on it is shown as Alicia sadly remembers Lady Helena took it. Under the bright sun, a red-haired woman wearing a large straw hat elegantly sips her tea in a beautiful garden. Duke Carl sits quietly across from her, his sharp blue eyes observing her with a thoughtful expression. Carl asks her gently, "How are you feeling?" And the woman smiles, replying, "Much better, thanks to you. And the weather's nice today, too." Smiling warmly, she says, "I feel like we'll finally be able to have a deeper conversation, Lord Carl." Looking at her closely, Duke Carl notes silently she's not flustered today. She sets down her teacup gracefully as Carl continues to observe her, thinking like she already knows the answer. Carl looks down at his elegant blue cravat, repeating thoughtfully, "A deeper conversation, huh?" She continues to chat amiably, asking him, "What did you think when we met again recently?" Her expression becomes more serious as she says, "Reminiscing is fun and all, but what matters is the present." She recalls the past, remembering how she only heard terrifying rumors about Lord Carl, making her feel incredibly scared when his proposal letter arrived with treasures and jewels, especially since the Vickers and Adrian families were sworn enemies. Sitting alone in a grand armchair, she had hidden her face in despair, believing there had to be some dark, hidden motive behind his sudden marriage proposal. Suddenly, the heavy door had creaked open, startling her. The moment she finally met him face to face, all of her fears had instantly vanished. Looking up into his cold yet mesmerizing blue eyes, she knew her feelings had changed. She recalls how she had blushed in his presence, completely captivated by his striking appearance. Gently reaching across the table to touch his hand, she says softly, "So, Lord Carl?" Holding his hand warmly with both of hers, she pleads, "Let's forget about the past and just focus on the future." Looking at him with deep sincerity, she adds, "I'll do my best to become a duchess who's loved by the people, just like you are. So please." Carl calls out her name quietly, "Miss Helena." Helena freezes in shock, her face pale with sudden anxiety as Carl stares at her in cold silence. Looking at his vest, Carl's mind races with suspicion. I still have the handkerchief she gave me that day, so why bring one that looks just like it? Did she forget the little details from that day? Resting his hand on the table, Carl points out the embroidery on the handkerchief. Staring directly into her eyes, he asks sharply, "Do you remember?" Helena is left speechless, while Carl wonders in silence because she's not really her? Helena's eye widens in panic as she sweatily thinks, "Wait, this isn't the right handkerchief? I brought her handkerchief thinking it'd keep him from digging deeper, but Lord Carl doesn't remember the embroidery either. That's why he's asking." Trembling with anxiety, she tightly clenches her hands on the table, thinking, "Doesn't matter what I say." Helena looks down nervously, sweating as she thinks, "I have to say something," before guessing aloud, "It was a flower, right?" Remembering a rose tangled in sharp thorns, Carl replies, "A rose? I think it was the Vickers rose." Helena gasps in sheer terror as she faces Carl's imposing silhouette under the shadow of a giant purple rose. A warm morning light washes over the garden as the heavy silence between the two nobles lingers, the tension growing thicker by the second. Carl looks at her with absolute coldness, repeating, "A rose?" Helena panics, screaming inwardly, "Crap, stay calm, don't panic." Trembling, she tries to play it cool, thinking, "If I just pretend I forgot, I can get through this." She then says aloud, "Maybe I was mistaken. There are so many handkerchiefs, I don't really remember the embroidery." She forces an awkward laugh and rubs her cheek, trying to laugh off her mistake. Carl leans in with a piercing gaze and remarks, "It seemed like it meant a lot to you, though." Realizing she is in deep trouble, Helena desperately thinks, "This is bad. I've got to get Lord Carl's mind off the handkerchief." She then tells him, "You always seem so fixated on the past, Lord Carl. I didn't want you to feel guilty, so I kept it secret, but..." Placing a hand over her chest with a sorrowful expression, Helena lies, "Ever since the day I treated your injuries, I haven't been able to use my divine powers properly." Carl's eye widens in absolute shock, whispering, "What?" Helena continues her act, saying, "I don't regret saving you, but ever since then my body's weakened and the rumors have really worn me down." Scheming to make Carl's guilt stop him from investigating, Helena points out that the dungeon where he was held was in the center of the castle, asking, "Do you really think any other girl besides me could have gotten in there?" As Carl quietly agrees, "No, Standing before a grand rose window, Helena plays her final card, stating, "In this generation of the Vicrys family, I'm the only one who possesses divine power, successfully bearing the truth under an even bigger lie." Turning her head away in fake hurt, she says, "If you're doubting me because of that fake, that really breaks my heart." Carl is left in stunned silence, his expression grim as he processes her manipulative words. Carl is completely swayed by her logic, thinking, she's right, the only girl who could have gotten into the dungeon beneath Vicrys Castle is her, the Duke's only daughter. Close-up of the Duke's face as he reflects deeply, his thoughts filled with conflict. And if I'm the reason she lost her divine power, then my doubts are an insult to her. Resting his hand on the table beside his teacup, the Duke tries to ease the tension, saying, "I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable." Yet a lingering suspicion remains as he thinks to himself, and yet I still can't shake it off. Something about her words feels off. The Duke stands up from the table, offering a polite parting to the orange-haired lady sitting opposite him, saying, "I'll take my leave for today." With a final polite gesture, the Duke turns and walks away through the bright, sunlit garden path, leaving the young woman sitting alone under the shade of her sun hat. Gritting her teeth in frustration, she tightly clenches her fist against the table, her tense and angry expression reflected clearly in the amber tea as she thinks this should stop him from pressing further. Shading her face beneath her wide-brimmed hat, her expression turns incredibly dark and malicious as she thinks, if you stick to a lie long enough, it becomes the truth. So to tie this all up neatly, hurry up and die, Alicia. Meanwhile, back in her quiet room, a cheerful Alicia holds up a fresh green tea leaf, admiring its vibrant beauty with a gentle smile. Clasping her hands together happily beside a wooden chest filled with carefully packaged tea bags, Alicia smiles warmly and thinks, I want to give this to my mom as soon as I can. She gently closes the lid of the wooden chest, her face lighting up with sweet anticipation as she prepares to meet Chase. Staring at the grand door before her, Alicia takes a deep breath and gathers her resolve, thinking, after everything he gave me, I have to give him a clear answer. Stepping out into the hallway, Alicia spots the blonde knight in his bright red uniform and calls out happily, "Lord Chase!" Holding her beautiful sun hat in her hands, Alicia smiles brightly at him and asks, "Would you like to go for a walk?" Lord Chase looks at her with a soft, affectionate smile, pleased and comforted by her sudden invitation. Strolling side by side along the paved garden path, Alicia looks around at the beautiful surroundings and says, "It's such a beautiful day, and the flowers look lovely too." Alicia looks away shyly, her fingers resting nervously near her lips as she searches for the right words to bring up her decision. Walking a step behind him, Alicia gathers her courage and speaks up, saying, "About what we were talking about the other day." Lord Chase stops walking and quietly glances back over his shoulder, waiting in silent anticipation. Turning around completely, Chase stands tall before Alicia as she looks down, preparing to deliver her honest response. Looking down with a gentle but serious expression, Alicia begins softly, just like I mentioned before. A warm memory of Alicia's mother resting weakly but peacefully in her sickbed flashes by as Alicia explains, "I've got my hands full with my mother's illness." Clenching her hands tightly against her dress, Alicia continues with a heavy heart, "I appreciate your kind words, but..." The two stand opposite each other in quiet contemplation, the gentle sunlight illuminating the quiet space between them. Looking down with a sad, apologetic smile, Alicia says softly, "I'm really sorry, especially after you even bought the herbs for her." Before she can spiral into guilt, Chase gently reaches out toward her hat. Alicia continues, "I'm always grateful to you, Lord Chase. Let's just go back to how things were, as comrades." In a playful, sudden movement, Chase pulls her sun hat down over her eyes, cutting off her words and causing her to let out a startled, "Ah!" Alicia quickly adjusts her hat, puffing her cheeks in mock annoyance as she thinks, "Ugh, we were in the middle of something important," while Chase smiles warmly and waves his hands, assuring her, "You don't have to worry about it." Chase turns and begins walking forward down the path, his boots clicking on the stone as he says lightheartedly, "I told you before, didn't I? The decision is yours." Looking back at her with a gentle, humble expression, Chase adds, "I'm the one who should apologize for putting you on the spot. I rush things too much." Alicia stands frozen in place, her green eyes wide with surprise at his profound kindness and maturity. Chase gives her a warm, reassuring smile to ease her guilt, saying, "So really, you don't have to say sorry." A beautiful bouquet of blooming light purple flowers sways gently in the breeze as his comforting voice continues, "No matter what happens, we're comrades." Looking back at her with a brilliant, hopeful expression, Chase smiles and asks, "Right?" In a playful chibi scene, Chase teases her with a grin, asking, "You were really stressing over this, huh? Wait, was that your first time being confessed to?" Causing Alicia's face to turn bright red in embarrassment. Flustered, Alicia humorously pokes and hits his arm in protest, while Chase laughs heartily and shields himself, saying, "I'm kidding, I'm kidding." Chase continues to tease her from a distance, smiling as he says, "But hey, you can be honest about it, you know?" While a blushing Alicia yells back, "Lord Chase!" Alicia pouts and protests loudly, "Don't tease me like that," completely unaware that the Duke is walking down the nearby corridor and has spotted them. Overhearing their joyful laughter, the Duke stops in his tracks, his posture tensing as he watches them interact so closely in the courtyard. Alicia playfully continues to scold Lord Chase, while Chase smiles warmly, enjoying their lighthearted and comforting dynamic. Suddenly, the Duke steps forward from the shadows with an icy, imposing gaze, interrupting their conversation as he states coldly, "We need to talk." The atmosphere instantly turns tense and heavy as the Duke stands tall in his sunlit study, facing a quiet and reserved Alicia. Crossing his arms, the Duke looks at her with a stern expression and demands, "You turned down the proposal, didn't you?" While Alicia's brow furrows in annoyance as she thinks, here we go again with the nosy stuff. Closing her eyes in deep exasperation, Alicia sighs to herself, "I'm so done with this," before addressing him directly, "I already told you, this has nothing to do with you, Your Grace." The Duke's intense blue eyes narrow with possessive irritation as he fires back, "Of course it does." Deep down, a pang of self-awareness hits the Duke as he thinks, "What the hell am I even saying? She's right, this is just me being nosy." But aloud, he doubled down, declaring, "There are rumors going around that my fiancé is surrounded by men under the excuse of self-defense training, and I saw with my own eyes that one of them proposed to you." Looking away coldly, he delivers a harsh, biting remark. "If you want to become some noble's mistress, then wait until you're no longer my fiancé." A heavy, painful silence fills the room. As Alicia stands rigidly with her back to him, the Duke immediately regrets his harsh words, thinking bitterly, "I sound like a jealous idiot." Alicia's profile tenses with sharp irritation at his insulting accusations, her mind racing with anger, jumping to conclusions again. God, he's the worst. Clenching her sun hat tightly in her hands to control her anger, Alicia speaks up firmly, defending her honor. "I was healing the knights, treating their injuries and illnesses. Do I need a reason to help someone?" Hearing her words, a memory flashes in the Duke's mind of a younger Alicia looking at him with absolute purity and saying, "You don't need a reason to help someone, and if it means I can be useful to others, that's enough for me." Glaring directly at him with proud, fierce determination, Alicia stands her ground and declares, "I seriously don't understand why you'd suspect me of something like this, Your Grace." The Duke stares at Alicia with wide, shocked eyes, his breathing halting as her words strike a deep chord within him. A sharp realization pierces through his mind, just like that moment back then. In his memory, a young Alicia smiles warmly amidst blooming white roses and says, "You don't need a reason to help someone, and if it means I can be useful to others, that's enough for me." The Duke recalls his younger self imprisoned in a dark, cold dungeon, thinking her kindness was so innocent and pure. Recalling her brilliant green eyes, he remembers how she brought light into his darkest moments. "It gave me the will to live again, and I was drawn to her strength. So many people died trying to protect me." He vividly remembers his fallen comrades lying in pools of blood. Knights who fought by my side fell one after another, and every time I was tortured in that dungeon, I could hear their dying screams echoing in my head. Chained to the prison wall and covered in blood, he struggled to hold on to his sanity. "I had to survive for them, for the ones who died because of me. I had to tell their families how bravely they fought." I kept going with that in mind. The spectral hands of his deceased comrades reach out to torment him in the dark. "Carl, help me." Little by little, those screams turned into resentment. "I won't forgive you. I'll kill you." Yet he tried to reason with himself, thinking, "I know, they're dead. There's no way I'm actually hearing them." The agonizing cries of his fallen allies continue to haunt him as he hangs bound in chains. I want to go home. Help me." And he thinks bitterly, but their hatred, it won't stop echoing in my head. Suddenly, a young Alicia enters his cell, reaching out to grasp his bloodied hand as she asks, "You can heal wounds, can't you? So..." She steps close to him, looking up with deep concern as he mumbles weakly, In a lighthearted flashback moment, the young Duke apologizes, "Sorry, that might be a bit hard," to which a cheerful Alicia replies, "Oh, I know," as she searches for something behind her back. She proudly holds out a dirty, blood-stained cloth, saying, "I'll lend you this." He looks at it in confusion, asking, "A handkerchief?" She beams and explains, "Not just any handkerchief, it's got Lily of the Valley embroidery on it, even if it's stained with your blood." Standing before him in the dim stone cell, she asks with a bright smile, "The flower that I like the most is Lily of the Valley. Do you know what Lily of the Valley means?" The young Duke looks down at the fabric in his hand, murmuring, "Let's see." Alicia smiles brilliantly as she reveals the beautiful meaning of her favorite flower, the return of happiness. She looks at him with absolute sincerity and reassures him, as long as you carry this, happiness will find you again. Stunned by her bright demeanor, the young Duke smiles softly and remarks, "You're way too optimistic." Alicia stands tall and counters proudly, "That's the point. Even if things are hard right now, believe that the future will get better." She steps closer and holds his arm gently, comforting him. "And also, about those nightmares, I don't think any of them resent you." Pressing the handkerchief into his hands, she adds softly, "If you cared that much about those people, then you must be a really amazing person." The two young children stand together in the dark, silent dungeon, finding a moment of pure, heartfelt connection. Looking up at him with a hopeful gaze, Alicia says, "So when things get hard, look at this lily of the valley and remember their wishes live on. That nightmare will turn into hope someday." A bright, warm light wraps around them as they hold hands, chasing away the darkness of the dungeon. Back in the present, the Duke is frozen in disbelief as he looks at Alicia, thinking to himself, "The words you just spoke were the same as those of my savior." Resting his hand on the desk, his mind races with emotion. The person who lent me a handkerchief that day, my benefactor. Alicia turns away nervously, clutching her hat as the Duke's hand reaches out toward her in silent yearning. The Duke reflects on the orange-haired fake saint he met earlier, who stood quietly beneath her wide sun hat, leaving him filled with doubt and suspicion. Clenching his fist tightly, the Duke demands, "I have one question. What is your relationship with Vicrys?" Alicia responds defensively, "I received a job offer. As a commoner, I shouldn't have any connection with the Duke's family, right?" Standing tall and imposing, the Duke presses further, "Have you ever been to Vicrys Castle?" To which Alicia quickly replies, "This is my first time." Alicia looks away nervously, sweat dropping as she thinks, "So the purpose of this marriage isn't just love after all. I wonder if he intends to extract information about Vicrys from me." She glances up wearily, thinking, but if that information is related to holy magic, the risk increases, while the Duke stands firm, his expression dark and guarded. Sighing softly, Alicia tells him, "Asking me is a waste of time," prompting the Duke to turn his head in surprise as he repeats, "A waste of time, you say?" The Duke takes a purposeful step forward, declaring coldly, "Whether it's a waste or not is for me to decide." Seeing him suddenly close the distance, Alicia tenses up in alarm, wondering, why is he coming this way? With a sudden, swift movement, the Duke pins Alicia against the wall, causing her to let out a startled, "Ah!" Leaning down close to her, the Duke looks at her with intense focus and murmurs, "Last question." Looking deep into her green eyes, he asks directly, "What's your favorite flower?" Thoroughly bewildered by the sudden change in topic, Alicia stammers, "Huh? Flower? What is he talking about all of a sudden? Well," trying to think of an answer, she looks down and ponders, "Frisia?" The Duke stands close, blocking her path as she continues to guess in confusion. "And then marigold and hydrangea?" The Duke asks intently, "Anything else?" While Alicia fumes silently, thinking, "What's with you since earlier?" Meanwhile, the Duke reasons, even if she answers with the name of that flower, it wouldn't prove that she's the savior. Staring down at her, he continues his silent contemplation. It's probably just a coincidence. Even so, looking at her with soft, pleading eyes, the Duke says, "Please, answer me," leaving a flustered Alicia to wonder, why is he looking at me like that, as if he's expecting something? Gently cupping her face, the Duke asks again, "What's your favorite flower?" And Alicia begins to reply softly, "The number one is..." Before she can finish her sentence, Alicia suddenly lifts her wide-brimmed sun hat to completely cover her blushing face in embarrassment. The Duke's blue eyes widen in shock at her reaction, as he thinks, "Until I manage to find definitive evidence." He gently reaches past her hat, brushing a strand of her vibrant orange hair behind her ear, thinking, "I had just decided to observe and confirm the identity of my savior." Alicia's green eyes go wide with surprise as she feels the warmth of his gentle touch against her face. Overwhelmed by the sudden intimacy and tension, Alicia loses her grip on her sun hat, letting it tumble softly to the wooden floor at their feet. The Duke pulls Alicia close and passionately kisses her in a romantic scene framed by beautiful blooming pink roses. Holding her face gently, the Duke closes his eyes and deepens the kiss as a warm, bright light shines around them. Alicia is completely caught off guard as the Duke kisses her, her eyes widening in disbelief as she thinks, what is he doing? As the Duke continues to hold her jaw gently and kiss her, a flurry of shocked thoughts races through Alicia's mind. What is happening so suddenly? Duke, what is he thinking? Overwhelmed and breathless from the sudden intimacy, Alicia tries to push him away, crying out in her mind, "Duke, please stop, Duke!" Breaking free from his embrace, Alicia gasps for air with a flushed face and wide, startled eyes. A tense silence falls over the room as the Duke gazes down at Alicia, who stands with clenched fists and heavily blushed cheeks, trying to process his sudden actions. Still touching her lips in disbelief, Alicia looks up at him with a mix of shock and confusion and asks, "What are you doing?" Stepping back defensively, Alicia clenches her fist and reminds him firmly, "I'm not Lady Helena. This kind of thing?" The Duke stands tall and silent, looking down at her with a conflicted, intense gaze, while Alicia turns her head away in frustration and embarrassment. Determined to end the awkward encounter, Alicia turns to leave, declaring, "Our conversation is over, if you will excuse me then," while the Duke takes a step forward and calls out, "Wait." Reaching for the door handle, Alicia looks back over her shoulder with a serious expression and reassures him, "Rest assured, I won't say anything to anyone." Left completely alone in the quiet study, the Duke stands in silence with his back to the door, clenching his fists in deep contemplation. On the wooden floor near the Duke's shoes lies Alicia's discarded sun hat, as he thinks to himself, if she is really just a commoner with no connection to Vikrys. Kneeling down to pick up the hat, the Duke continues to ponder the puzzle. Then it turns out Helena Vikrys was the savior all along. Looking at the reflection of Helena in his deep blue eyes, the Duke reasons, in that case, Helena is the one I should be concerned about. Yet, a warm memory of Alicia standing brightly under her wide sun hat flashes in his mind as he admits, "But my eyes keep unconsciously following that woman." He visualizes Helena in various elegant poses, but his heart tells him otherwise as he reflects, "Moreover, I want her to be the savior." Clutching the sun hat close to his face, the Duke lets out a frustrated sigh, muttering bitterly, "Shit." Walking away down the brightly lit corridor, Alicia touches her lips as her mind spins with confusion. "I can't believe he suddenly kissed me. Doesn't he like Helena? No matter how much I look like her substitute?" Suddenly stopping in her tracks, she stares ahead as the heavy weight of her situation settles over her. Tears begin to stream down her cheeks as she breaks down in the quiet hallway, thinking, "Why should I be treated like this? This is awful. I'm so tired. I want to throw everything away. I want to go home." Overwhelmed by sadness and frustration, Alicia covers her face with her arms as silent tears fall to the floor. The next day, Helena stands by a carriage as a knight in silver armor assists her, saying, "I'll be returning soon from the capital." Helena looks back elegantly at the knight while holding his hand, preparing to depart. Smiling brightly beneath her fashionable blue hat, Helena asks, "How about you, Carl?" Inside the carriage, Alicia sits quietly in a brown dress as Helena peers out of the window toward Carl, who stands outside in silent hesitation. Carl clenches his armored fist tightly and responds with a stoic expression, "I agree." Watching them from inside the carriage, Alicia thinks to herself with deep irritation, "Talking to your fiancé as if nothing happened?" Turning her head away with an annoyed sigh, Alicia mutters, "Aristocrats are the worst after all," just as a polite voice calls out, "My lady?" A handsome blonde-haired knight in red and silver armor holds out his hand to Alicia in a polite, chivalrous gesture. Alicia looks up with wide eyes, startled by his sudden presence, and stammers, "Ah." Politely declining his assistance, Alicia turns away and says softly, "I can do it alone." A heavy carriage door slams shut, leaving the blonde-haired knight standing outside in quiet disappointment. He places his hand over his chest, watching the carriage pull away with a gentle, contemplative expression. Seated inside, Alicia looks out the window, reflecting sadly on her decision. "I appreciate Lord Chase's concern, but since I turned down his proposal, things can't go back to the way they were before." Resting her hands in her lap, she sighs deeply and thinks, "I don't want things to be awkward." Suddenly, Helena crosses her arms and questions her with a mocking smile. "You clearly refused that night, but did you go to Carl's room last night?" Leaving Alicia completely frozen in shock. Trembling under Helena's sharp gaze, Alicia thinks in a panic, how does Helena know? Looking down at her with cold, mocking eyes, Helena sneers, "You really do look just like your mother. Both mother and daughter making moves on someone else's fiancé? How shameless." Alicia looks down, holding back her anger as she reasons, "Good thing she doesn't know what actually happened. It's frustrating, but I had no choice." Clenching her hands tightly in her lap to control her emotions, Alicia tells herself, "It's better this way." Defending herself calmly, Alicia explains, "I was only summoned by the Duke yesterday," but Helena quickly cuts her off, saying, "There's no point in telling me this. I know you seduced him." Alicia continues firmly, "He just warned me about how I treat the knights. He also told me not to get the wrong idea just because the nobles are treating me well." Slapping her hand down on the seat in frustration, Helena demands, "Is that really all? Be honest, Carl's eyes have changed when he looks at you." Alicia responds defensively, "I'm just a commoner who can't disobey a noble's orders, even if you say that." Helena lets out a cold, mocking laugh. Huh? As a tense shadow falls over her face, Helena points out, even if you lie, it's pointless. Glaring at Alicia with pure malice, Helena reveals her deep-seated resentment. Just like your mother tried to take my father away from me. You were after Carl from the very beginning, weren't you? After all, you are the daughter of a prostitute. Alicia's green eye widens in absolute horror and shock as Helena's cruel, deeply insulting words strike her like a physical blow. The carriage rattles forward along the dirt road, leaving a heavy, painful silence in its wake as Alicia struggles to process the painful accusation. Alicia looks down at Helena with intense anger and a dark expression as a tense, dramatic light radiates behind them. Clutching her bruised and red cheek in pain, Helena trembles in shock and whispers in disbelief, "You?" Helena stands over the trembling Alicia, casting a dark, imposing shadow that fills the carriage with an icy tension. Against a pitch-black background, Helena's furious scream echoes in a dark red speech bubble. "What did you just do?" Glaring back with equal fury, Alicia confronts Helena after slapping her back as Helena gasps in outrage. "What the hell do you think you're doing? How dare you hit me?" Grabbing Helena tightly by her shoulders, Alicia pins her against the carriage wall and warns, "Say one more thing about my mother," while Helena groans in pain. Ugh. With an icy, murderous glare, Alicia leans in close and delivers a terrifying warning, "And I will kill you." Helena is left completely paralyzed with fear, staring up at Alicia in silent terror as cold sweat drips down her face. Trying to regain her control, Helena sneers, "You insolent commoner, let go of me or I'll make you regret it." But Alicia remains completely unfazed, retorting, "What else do you have to fear? I might die in your place anyway." Alicia smiles darkly as she releases her grip, saying with chilling calm, "Once this job is over, I won't hold back anymore," leaving Helena flustered and shocked. Gently but firmly cupping Helena's chin, Alicia looks down at her with a piercing gaze and asks, "Got that?" Leaning in close to the trembling Helena, Alicia whispers with absolute authority, "I am Helena now." Giving a cold, beautiful smile, Alicia reminds her, "No one will help you if you tell them I hit you. You're just a maid now, so you'd better behave yourself," before stepping out of the carriage. Stepping out of the carriage, Alicia adjusts her blue sun hat as Lord Chase, in full armor, stands ready to assist her. Seeing her walk away in such a hurry, Lord Chase looks back in confusion, thinking, "Lady Helena?" Lord Chase catches up to Alicia and asks in concern, "Lady Helena got off in quite a rush. Did something happen in the carriage?" To which Alicia quickly averts her eyes and replies, "No." Alicia looks back at him and reassures him with a polite, calm smile. "Nothing to worry about, Lord Chase." Lord Chase looks at her with a gentle, slightly sad expression, filled with unexpressed concern. Bowing politely, Lord Chase offers, "If you'll excuse me, I'll guide you to your room." An exterior view of the grand stone temple walls surrounded by lush green trees under a bright sunny sky. A heavy dark brown travel suitcase rests on the elegant carpeted floor next to a white table. Standing alone in her grand room, Alicia gazes quietly out the window in deep thought. Looking down from her window, Alicia sighs as she reflects, "I couldn't help myself. I raised my hand against her. I'm sure I won't just simply get away with this. Once this is all over, I should leave this place. Somewhere no one knows about me or mother." Overwhelmed by exhaustion and stress, Alicia places her hand over her forehead and exhales a weary sigh. Hearing a sudden knock on the door, Alicia turns around and calls out, "Come in." A cheerful maid carrying a large wooden box enters and bows politely, saying, "Nice to meet you, Princess. I'm Marie from the Grand Temple. I'll be taking care of you until the wedding." Alicia asks in surprise, "The Great Temple?" And Marie enthusiastically confirms, "Yes, there's also a prayer ceremony before the wedding, so I'm here on behalf of the temple to assist you." Setting the box down, Marie explains, "The prayer ceremony is a ceremony in which the Great Temple offers its blessing to the couple. This time, it will span 3 days. The chapel where it's held is only open to members of the royal family and clergy, and of course, to those who will receive the High Priestess's blessing, like you, Princess." Hearing this, Alicia feels a quiet sense of relief, thinking, "I will be separated from Helena." Smiling warmly at Marie, Alicia says, "Thank you for your time, Marie. That's all I need." Captivated by Alicia's radiant, gentle smile, Marie stands completely dazed, with hearts floating around her. Squealing with pure joy, Marie blushes and says, "It's a pleasure to meet you too, my lady," while Alicia looks on with a sweet but slightly puzzled expression. Marie happily opens the wooden chest and offers, "Yes, it is. If you'd like, we have time before dinner. I can show you around the temple." Narration boxes detail the grandeur of the temple. This is a marriage between the two great ducal families of this country. The imperial family and the Great Temple are making grand preparations. The Great Temple is so beautiful, decorated with flowers and lace. Marie closes her eyes with a sweet, content smile as she prepares the items. Alicia looks a bit perplexed, murmuring, Marie looks worried and asks, "Don't you like flowers, princess? We tried our best," while a flustered Alicia quickly waves her hands, clarifying, "No, that's not it. I just don't really feel anything yet." Alicia turns away in deep thought, thinking, "It's not my wedding, so I'm not really interested," as Marie eagerly calls out, "My lady?" Marie gently takes Alicia's hand in a warm, reassuring gesture. Placing her hands on Alicia's shoulders, Marie stands behind her to help her prepare. Marie smiles brightly and suggests, "If you like, why don't we go now if you're up for it?" Looking at Marie's cheerful face, Alicia thinks she's a nice, bright girl and nods with a soft smile. Sure. In an adorable chibi style, Marie brushes Alicia's hair as Alicia asks, "What are you doing, by the way?" And Marie happily replies, "I'm doing your makeup for the walk." As she continues brushing Alicia's vibrant hair, Marie explains, "The bride and groom have to wear certain clothes for the prayer ceremony. That's why I brought all that baggage." Staring ahead, Alicia reflects on the complexity of high society. There is a lot that goes into a noble's wedding. A beautiful pink dress and matching rose-shaped accessories are displayed inside the wooden chest. As Alicia sighs, it's exhausting. Standing before the mirror in the stunning, elaborate pink gown with her hair beautifully pinned, Alicia touches her ear and wonders, all this for a walk? Marie clasps her hands together in pure adoration, squealing, "You're so beautiful, princess!" Feeling a bit shy but deeply flattered, Alicia smiles warmly and thanks Marie for her kind praise. Marie lets out a small sigh and remarks, "It's a pity the Duke won't be able to see you. The only time the bride and groom can meet before the wedding is during the prayer ceremony." Alicia is surprised to learn that she can only see the Duke during the official ceremonies because the Great Temple strictly forbids men and women from entering each other's quarters. However, she is secretly relieved that she will be separated from both Helena and the Duke for a long time. Tears of pure relief and joy stream down Alicia's face as she clasps her hands together in gratitude, leaving Marie looking completely bewildered by her dramatic reaction. With a bright, cheerful smile, Alicia suggests, "Shall we go then?" as they prepare to head out, unaware of a mysterious noble figure stepping into the corridor. A close-up view of a grand imperial military uniform adorned with gold epaulets, tassels, and a prestigious crest. A young, handsome blonde boy with bright blue eyes stands before them, identified by a decorative plaque as Stephen Lionel, the Crown Prince of the Tyron Empire. Gasping in shock, Marie bows deeply to greet the royal visitor, announcing, "His Royal Highness the Crown Prince," as Alicia looks on in surprise. Alicia is caught completely off guard, staring at the young boy in utter bewilderment and uttering a soft, "Eh?" Staring at the dignified young boy in front of her, Alicia repeats to herself in astonishment, "The Crown Prince?" The young Crown Prince, Stephen, stands quietly and studies Alicia with a calm, discerning gaze. Alicia gasps softly as she gathers her composure to properly greet the imperial heir. Lifting the skirt of her elegant pink gown, Alicia performs a polite curtsy and says, "Greetings to His Imperial Highness, the Crown Prince." The Crown Prince looks at her with a sharp, surprised expression and demands, "What did you just say?" leaving Alicia blinking in confusion with a startled, "Huh?" Looking down with a cold and intense gaze, the Crown Prince notes with clear suspicion, "I was told you're the daughter of Duke Vicrus." Alicia bows her head respectfully and replies, "Yes, my name is Helena," which only seems to deepen the prince's confusion. Breaking out into a nervous sweat, Alicia anxiously thinks to herself, "I thought the royal family and House Vicrus had a close relationship. Guess not?" Looking at the beautiful white roses decorating the grand hallway, Alicia reflects, "Maybe I'm just not used to this cold treatment now that I'm Helena." Offering a slight, polite smile, the Crown Prince softly says, "Congratulations on your marriage." As the Crown Prince remarks on how wonderful it is to see House Adrian and House Vicrus united, Alicia politely replies, "Thank you, Your Royal Highness." The Crown Prince's eyes turn dark as he questions the unusual decision of House Vicrus choosing Adrian over royal marriage, prompting Alicia to defensively claim, "No, Duke Adrian and I are in love," though the prince is highly skeptical. Looking back at Alicia with a doubtful and cold expression, the Crown Prince repeats her words with suspicion. "In love?" Turning to walk away, the Crown Prince coldly tells her, "May your love be everlasting. But first, let's get your wedding out of the way," leaving Alicia deeply unsettled. Watching his departing figure, Alicia is left in tense silence as she reflects on how incredibly harsh his words were. Raising a hand to her neck in distress, Alicia sighs and realizes, this is complicated. A depiction of Carl and Alicia's upcoming wedding at the altar, with a narration box explaining that this marriage must be a significant issue for the crown prince, since the royal family once gained divine power through marriages with House Vicris. The crown prince sits on his imperial throne while Duke Adrian bows before him, as the narration notes that this marriage changes everything. Staring with intense anger and hatred, the crown prince's dark expression makes Alicia wonder why he seems to detest House Vicris so deeply. In his study, the crown prince places his hand over a blank piece of paper on his desk, asking, "Is this the letter you told me about?" As Carl confirms, "You were right, it's blank." Carl explains that he found the letter on his way to see Lady Vicris, and judging by the carrier pigeon's direction, it was sent from Vicris to deliver a spy message to someone in the capital. Carl stands before the crown prince, explaining that there seems to be no way to verify the letter's contents because of advanced magic. The crown prince reacts with shock and alarm upon hearing Carl's report. When the prince asks if there is truly no way to check, Carl replies, "I asked the imperial wizard. He said it's a spell that can only be broken with the sender's blood." Crumpling the blank letter in absolute fury, the prince is outraged that House Vicris is planning something so bold right in front of him when he can't even check the message. Carl stands quietly as narration reveals that the crown prince hates House Vicris, despite the fact that the empress herself is from the Vicris family. An old map of the empire wrapped in dark thorns and stained with blood represents how House Vicris is responsible for the corruption spreading through the Tyrant Empire. An illustration of the emperor lying ill in bed while the empress stands power-hungry behind him, explaining that she has taken complete control of the empire. Amidst a backdrop of dark, thorny roses, rumors circulate that the emperor's illness may actually be a symptom of poisoning by the empress. Leaning over his desk in deep distress, the young crown prince struggles with the painful reality of how he can possibly trust the empress. Looking on with a determined gaze, Carl resolves to protect the prince, knowing they cannot drag the young heir into Vicris's schemes and that the prince still has Duke Adrian on his side. A sudden knock on the library door interrupts the heavy silence as a voice calls out, "Your Highness." Carl gently places his hands over the young prince's trembling hands to offer comfort and reassurance. Firmly squeezing the prince's hands, Carl reassures him that they can still negotiate even if they can't use the letter, prompting the prince to steel himself and agree that they cannot afford to show weakness. As the door opens to reveal a guard, the crown prince immediately points and commands, "You." With a cold and resolute gaze, the prince orders, "I want a full report of the empress's movements, and keep an eye on everyone associated with her." Bowing respectfully, the guard replies, "Yes, Your Highness," and prepares to carry out his orders. Carl stands supportively beside the young crown prince in the quiet, candlelit study. Carl apologizes for their late arrival, but emphasizes the urgency of the situation, advising the prince to check the matter as soon as possible. Carl informs the prince that he ran into Lady Vicris on the way, and that she has already made arrangements for the ceremony, leaving the prince deep in thought. In cute chibi forms, the prince tells Carl, "You should start preparing for tomorrow too," and Carl politely replies, "Yes." As Carl turns to leave the room, the prince stops him by calling out his name, "Carl." Looking at Carl's departing back, the crown prince stands in quiet contemplation, troubled as he recalls Alicia's words. "She said you were in love." Carl turns around with a look of surprise and confusion, thinking to himself, "Is that true?" Looking back on his conversation, Carl recalls the crown prince's disbelief at the claim that he and Lady Vicris are in love. Carl reflects on the deep feelings of gratitude and affection he has harbored for his savior all this time, wondering if she is truly the one. As he remembers their passionate kiss, Carl questions if he has finally found the right girl. Clenching his fist, Carl reminds himself that this marriage was his decision and began with him, but he also believes it is the most certain way to bring down House Vicris. He looks out at the courtyard, determined to fulfill his most important duty of protecting the peace in the Tyrant Empire. In a chibi flashback, the young crown prince Stephen blushes and tells Carl that he is the subordinate he trusts the most, prompting Carl to ask what he means. The young prince sheepishly clarifies that he meant Carl's devotion to Lady Vicris, and Carl simply replies that that is pretty much it. Crown Prince Stephen admits that while it might all be in his head, he cannot hide his dislike of House Vicris, and apologizes to Carl, asking him to clear up this misunderstanding first. Carl politely replies, "Understood," while inwardly reflecting that the young prince is still far too young to have to carry such heavy burdens. Excusing himself, Carl turns and exits the prince's study, telling him to leave the matter to him. As Carl walks down the corridor at night, he thinks about Helena and her green dress and admits to himself that he is the one who owes her the biggest apology. Carl's thoughts drift back to when he passionately kissed Helena, realizing that he forced himself upon her without her consent and completely lost his patience and control. He touches his lips gently, unable to shake off the vivid memory of their breathtaking kiss. Staring up at the starry night sky, Carl confesses to himself that he simply cannot forget that kiss. Clenching his fist tightly, he reflects that although he owes her an apology, he can't believe how desperately he wants to kiss her again. Back in his quarters, Carl prepares for the upcoming ceremonies by taking off his jacket. Standing in front of the mirror, Carl puts on a handsome, white ruffled formal shirt and adjusts his cuffs. Looking at his reflection, he reminds himself that once the prayer ceremony service is over, it will be time for the official wedding. Carl looks down in somber reflection, wondering if marrying Miss Helena would be a betrayal now that he realizes he is genuinely attracted to her. Pressing a hand to his forehead to soothe his racing thoughts, Carl sighs and decides that he needs to take a walk to clear his head. Wrapped in a dark traveling cloak, Carl walks quietly through the grand hallways and outdoor corridors of the Great Temple. He suddenly pauses in his tracks, hearing a strange rustling sound coming from the courtyard. Staring at the bushes, Carl notices a suspicious movement and wonders if someone is trying to hide there. Carl parts the dense bushes and demands, "Who?" only to find a startled Alicia looking up at him from the ground with a soft, "Ah." Carl's eyes widen in absolute shock as he stares at the girl hidden in the garden. Looking down at her as she sits amidst the flowers in her simple nightgown, Carl reaches a hand out and utters in surprise, "You." Carl stands tall and asks her with deep curiosity, "What are you doing?" Looking up at Carl as he towers over her under the moonlight, a flustered Alicia nervously begins, "Well..." Alicia quickly stands up and explains that she couldn't sleep and was just taking a walk, which only makes Carl repeat, "Of course, a walk?" in disbelief. Carl jokingly asks if she was sneaking around like a rat, prompting a chibi Alicia to puff her cheeks and complain that comparing her to a rat is far too harsh. Carl softly smiles and points out that even within the temple grounds, the middle of the night is not exactly the right time for a stroll. Shouting defensively, Alicia tells him that she doesn't need the Duke to tell her that, claiming she can go for a walk whenever she pleases. Alicia huffs and turns to leave, reminding Carl that they aren't even supposed to see each other outside of the official prayer ceremonies. Carl watches quietly as Alicia begins to walk away, her long hair swaying under the moonlit sky. Suddenly, Carl's sharp senses alert him to approaching footsteps nearby. Reacting quickly, Carl reaches out and firmly grabs Alicia's hand, calling out, "Hey!" He pulls her back toward him, spinning her around in one swift, protective movement. As Alicia gasps in confusion, Carl gently holds her close to his chest and whispers, "Shh, quiet." Pulling her close, Carl explains that the guards are coming and that they absolutely cannot be seen together. Right on cue, a guard's voice echoes through the dark corridor, demanding, "Who's there?" Carl immediately shields Alicia behind his back, completely hiding her small figure from the guard's view. As Alicia hides nervously behind him, Carl calmly addresses the guard, explaining that he went outside to get some fresh air because he wasn't feeling well, and offers to look around the area himself. Holding a warm lantern, the guard bows respectfully and replies, "Yes, sir," before heading off. Once the footsteps fade away, Carl looks over his shoulder and reassures Alicia that the guard is already gone. Carl lets go of Alicia, who steps back with a flushed face and crossed arms, still feeling the lingering warmth of his close embrace. Carl looks at her and mentions that this area is actually off limits to women, asking if she was told about this rule, to which Alicia quietly mutters that she knew. Clutching her stomach as a loud rumbling sound echoes between them, a deeply embarrassed Alicia stammeringly confesses, "I'm just lost." Carl looks at her with a blank, flat expression and asks if she was actually looking for the canteen, leaving Alicia blushing furiously in sheer mortification. Alicia averts her eyes and nervously rubs her neck, grumbling in her defense that the food portions served at the temple are so tiny that even commoners eat more than that. Carl explains that they are currently in the prayer and fasting period, which is meant to purify both body and mind. Alicia insists she will survive the fasting since it's only for a few days, and walks away telling him not to worry because she will be back in her room soon. Carl looks at her departing figure with a soft, knowing gaze and thinks to himself that she looks pretty hungry. In a chibi thought bubble, Carl realizes that she was indeed starving. In the bright grand chapel, a priest's voice announces that the first prayer service is scheduled to begin at 9. Alicia sits in a pew looking absolutely exhausted and drained as a temple maid bows and prepares for the ceremony. Feeling completely miserable, Alicia mentally groans that she cannot take this fasting anymore. She tearfully remembers how she has only had soup for the past 2 days, desperately wishing for the prayer ceremony to end so she can eat some candy. Laying her head on her arms in exhaustion, she complains that she shouldn't have to suffer like this just because she's a fake. Suddenly, Carl's voice breaks the silence, teasing her by saying he could hear her stomach rumbling all the way from outside. Carl stands before her looking incredibly handsome and dashing in his white and blue formal attire. Carl explains that the meal during the ceremony is a sacrament limited to just bread and wine, and warns her that her stomach is going to echo through the chapel. In response, Alicia fumes and retorts that, unlike him, God is merciful enough to forgive her. As Alicia turns away in embarrassment, Carl reaches out and holds a small tied bag in front of her. Carl offers her the bag, telling her there's a candy bar inside, which instantly catches Alicia's attention. Carl sits down beside her and places the bag in her lap, stating that it would be a problem if she fainted from hunger during the ceremony. Alicia looks at the bag of candy in shock and wonder, blushing as she questions if Carl actually brought it because he was worried about her. Carl sits quietly beside her, looking elegant and composed with his arms crossed. Feeling flustered and conflicted, Alicia tells herself that she still cannot forgive him for kissing her. Looking at the bag of candy, she struggles to maintain her cold demeanor. Deciding that candy bars are innocent and there's no point in wasting them, she triumphantly grabs the bag, while Carl calmly tells her to do whatever she wants. Clenching her fist, she reminds herself once more that she won't forgive him for kissing her. With a delighted and blissful expression, Alicia pops a piece of candy into her mouth. Carl looks at her and lets out a gentle, amused smile, touched by her cute reaction. The two sit side by side in the sunlit chapel, with Alicia happily eating her candy while Carl watches over her protectively. Suddenly, the heavy chapel doors click open. A temple maid steps inside and announces that they are ready for the first prayer ceremony. The maid hands Alicia her white lace veil, wishing her well. Standing up, Carl looks down at Alicia and comments that now her stomach won't growl during the ceremony. Carl turns to her with a gentle expression and says, "Let's go." Alicia watches him walk ahead, her eyes filled with complex emotions. She wistfully thinks to herself how much easier things would be if he could always be this kind. She sighs quietly, admitting that his sudden kindness completely messes with her feelings. The high priest begins the service in front of a grand crystal cross, declaring, "In the name of Tyron, the source of all blessings." Carl and Alicia kneel side by side in front of the altar, each holding a lit candle as the priest blesses them. Wearing her beautiful veil, Alicia holds her candle tightly and wonders how long this fake marriage will actually last. She lets out a quiet sigh, thinking to herself that she never expected getting married to be such a troublesome affair. Staring at the candle flame, she admits that because this marriage isn't truly hers, it feels even more boring. Looking ahead through her veil, she confesses that the whole ceremony just feels incredibly empty. Sitting beside her, Carl remains silent and deeply focused on the prayer. Alicia's mind drifts to a memory of her original self, standing simple and pure in a plain brown dress. Alicia looks at Carl's profile under the soft light, thinking that if she had grown up normally, she would surely have long eyelashes like hers. She admires her own reflection in her thoughts, imagining her nose would be just as high. Her gaze drifts to her lips and neck, shimmering under the soft lace of her veil. Her mind suddenly flashes back to the memory of their passionate kiss, surrounded by blooming roses. Snapping back to reality, Alicia blushes furiously and holds her candle close, trying to shake the vivid memory from her head. The flame of Alicia's candle suddenly flickers, catching Carl's attention as he looks over at her in surprise. Carl's face turns bright red as he looks at Alicia, his heart racing. Flustered by his sudden gaze, Carl quickly averts his eyes, leaving Alicia confused by his reaction. Alicia feels a sudden, unpleasant chill and realizes that someone is watching her from afar. Looking out of the corner of her eye, she senses a mysterious figure peering through the chapel window, casting a shadow over the ceremony. Peering through a window from the outside, a woman in a maid's headscarf watches the chapel with a cold, suspicious gaze. A temple maid's voice echoes from the hallway, saying, "Thank you for your hard work, Duchess." Smiling warmly, the temple maid tells Helena, "There's still time before the afternoon ceremony, so please take a good rest," to which Helena politely replies, "I shall do that." As the maid mentions how busy the great temple is before the wedding, Helena touches her shoulder and nervously asks, "2 more prayer ceremonies, right?" while wondering to herself if everyone has to endure such an exhausting process. Raising her finger, the maid cheerfully explains, "1 in the afternoon and 1 tomorrow. It's rare to have such a big prayer ceremony, and only a limited few can get married in the great temple." An elegant illustration of a grand cross with wings appears alongside the legendary tale that couples who marry at the great temple will be blessed with eternal happiness. Surrounded by beautiful white flowers, Helena looks down with a complicated expression, quietly repeating, "Be happy, huh?" Walking side by side with the maid, Helena comments on the flowers, saying, "It's like the lily of the valley in the language of flowers, isn't it?" while secretly wondering who these limited few allowed to marry in the temple actually are. The maid explains, "Those who have done distinguished service to the royal family and the empire, only they can be married at the great temple." A beautiful scroll, stacks of gold coins, and an illustration of a blessed couple appear as the maid adds, "The imperial household pays for the wedding and the great temple prepares the wedding." The maid turns back to Helena with a bright, gossiping smile and asks, "Oh yes, my lady, have you heard of it? That rumor?" Leaning in close to whisper, the maid excitedly reveals the wedding in the Great Temple and this prayer ceremony was Duke Adrian's wish. He wanted to make sure his marriage to the Duchess would be a success. Surprised by the news, Helena gasps, "Eh? Really?" as the maid squeals with joy, adding, "He wrote to the Archbishop directly." Flashback shows Duke Carl Adrian diligently writing a letter to request the Archbishop's blessing for his marriage to Lady Vigorous, prompting a sweat-dropping Helena to wonder how such a cold man could make such a romantic request. Clasping her hands together in delight, the maid remarks, "It's nice to know that he cares about the Duchess that much." Helena looks off to the side, her face falling silent and solemn under the corridor lights. Looking down at the beautiful roses on the balcony, Helena's bitter thoughts echo. Well, it's for Helena, not me. Turning her back to the light, Helena walks away with a heavy heart, reminding herself that Carl's grand gestures are meant for the real Helena, not the fake one she is playing. Peeking from behind a marble pillar, the real Alicia, disguised as a temple maid, watches Helena walk away. Standing in the shadows with dark, malicious energy swirling around her, Alicia seethes as she tells herself that all of the Duke's preparation and devotion was meant only for her. Clawing her nails violently against the stone wall, Alicia's venomous thoughts declare, "It's not for you." Biting her nail in a fit of manic impatience, Alicia asks herself, just when is she going to die? Glaring into the darkness with a deeply twisted and resentful expression, Alicia mutters, "I want her to get out of my life quickly." In another location, a deep voice breaks the silence, asking, "Ready, Helena?" Count Vigorous stands tall with his cane and instructs Helena, "Until the wedding ends, keep your true identity hidden and don't leave the side of your bodyguard, Faz." Staring back at her father, Helena quietly repeats, "Faz?" The Count explains that Faz will protect her from any potential assassination attempts right before the wedding, sternly warning her never to leave his side. Grabbing Helena firmly by the shoulder, the Count looks into her eyes and calls her name. With a dark, mocking gaze, the Count sneers, "The Adrians are undefeated, but they are a family of fools." Standing close to her, the Count promises his daughter, "If you do what I say, you will be happy." Helena nods obediently, replying, "I understand." Gently touching her dress, the Count declares with absolute confidence, "From now on, the history of the Empire shall change drastically." With a blood-red backdrop, the Count smiles sinisterly, thinking to himself that Alicia will surely perish in the coming conflict. Standing before her father with a calm smile, Helena listens as he warns her to be extremely careful not to get herself involved. Back in his study, the Count sits by the window, quietly sipping red wine. The Count takes a deep drink of his red wine, savoring his anticipation. He gently places the half-empty wine glass down on the table. Looking out with a smug, dark expression, the Count murmurs that he only needs to wait a little bit more. Against a blood-stained backdrop of thorny red roses, a black chess piece crumbles over the golden Adrian crest as the Count eagerly anticipates Duke Adrian falling directly into his hands. A close-up of the Count's mouth reveals a wide, confident smirk. Sitting back on his sofa, the Count gloats to himself that if everything goes according to plan, this will mark the ultimate end of Duke Adrian. His green eyes narrow slightly as he realizes that the only variable and concern left in his plan is Helena. Remembering how Carl kissed Helena's hand, the Count frowns, reflecting on how he never expected Helena to fall in love with the Duke at first sight due to her moody and emotional nature. Holding his wine glass, the Count reassures himself that as long as things remain as they are, there shouldn't be any issues. He swirls his wine, warning himself that Helena must not do anything unnecessary to ruin his plans. Meanwhile, inside her chamber, Helena sits in deep despair, clutching her head in absolute panic. Helena pulls her hair frantically, terrified that her bodyguard Faz dodged her questions when she demanded to know when Alicia would finally die, remembering how Faz simply promised to take care of it. As the distant temple bells begin to chime, Helena is consumed by fear, wondering what will happen to her if Alicia is still alive after the wedding, and Carl discovers she's the one he's actually searching for. Hearing the loud chimes, Helena looks up in sudden panic and confusion. Helena gasps as she is summoned for the next prayer ceremony, turning to walk toward the bright temple hall. Back in her chamber, Helena stands in shock as she thinks about Carl, her mind filled with unsettling thoughts. She envisions Carl standing elegantly under a bright beam of light, looking at her. Overcome with frustration, Helena violently scratches the wooden table and thinks, "Why is she still alive?" before angrily smashing a vase of yellow flowers on the floor. Staring down at the shattered pieces, Helena's thoughts turn venomous as she thinks, "Just die, Alicia. If she's still alive after the wedding?" Her eyes filled with malice, Helena declares to herself, "Then I'll kill her myself." A temple maid carries a silver tray with a weight pouch, politely announcing, "I will explain the afternoon prayer ceremony." She instructs the couple, please offer this coin at the altar in the temple and then say a prayer. Go around the 2 altars and perform the foot-washing ritual to finish the prayer ceremony for today. The high priest and the temple maid stand ready to assist during the ceremony. Carl and Helena walk side by side outside the grand temple corridors. Helena feels incredibly tense and wonders to herself, why do I have to hold his arm? Won't Sister and Marie come with us together? Carl remains silent, looking down with a serious and contemplative expression. Carl replies softly, it'll be just the 2 of us, as he turns to lead the way. Helena touches her cheek nervously, thinking that it might be a good thing no one else is there, but reminds herself that she must play Helena's part perfectly without raising any suspicion. She glances back anxiously, knowing that Marie and the sister will be watching their every move. Behind them, Marie waves enthusiastically, wishing them a wonderful time. Helena puts on a fake smile, relieved that Marie doesn't seem to notice her anxiety, as Carl turns back and calls out, Lady Helena? Helena asks if they can proceed without a personal guard, to which Carl explains that outsiders are strictly prohibited from entering the inner sanctum of the temple. Helena quietly follows Carl, staring at his broad shoulders as they walk down the quiet hallway. Carl keeps his gaze forward, looking deeply engrossed in his own thoughts. Clenching his fist, Carl quietly mutters, and besides? Carl continues walking, a subtle blush appearing on his face as the gentle afternoon light surrounds him. Helena watches his back, her gaze growing cold as she thinks to herself that after assassins, the Duke is the most untrustworthy person to her. Staring at him with deep suspicion, she firmly reminds herself that the Duke is her biggest concern. Carl suddenly stops and turns around, looking back at her with a soft, regretful expression as he confesses, it's my fault. A wave of guilt washes over Carl as he remembers how he ignored everything Helena said because of his paranoia and even forced her to kiss him. He looks down with a red face filled with deep regret for constantly hurting her. Looking at her, Carl prepares to offer a sincere apology, admitting his mistakes until now. With a soft and vulnerable expression, Carl looks directly at Helena and says, I'm really sorry for everything. Helena is caught off guard but quickly responds coldly, sorry for what? I've already forgotten about the day you forced yourself on me, and even if you apologize, nothing will change. She walks past him with a sigh, saying, let's just get this over with, shall we? I'd rather go to the altar. As she steps forward, Helena accidentally steps on a loose stone on the path. She gasps in surprise as she loses her footing and starts to fall. Sensing her fall, Carl immediately turns around to catch her. Carl catches Helena in his arms, holding her close in a graceful embrace as petals fall around them. Their eyes lock as Carl supports her waist, holding her in a romantic dip under the warm golden light. Carl gazes intensely into her eyes, keeping a firm grip on her hand and waist as time seems to stand still. Flustered by his sudden closeness, Helena pushes his chest and demands, please let me go. Helena tries to step back, but a sharp pain shoots through her ankle, causing her to wince in agony. Carl quickly supports her, asking with concern, did you sprain your leg? While Helena stubbornly replies, I'm fine. She tries to walk forward, but her ankle throbs painfully, making her realize she can't easily move. Carl leans in close to her ear and gently asks, so you were hurt after all? Helena looks at him in confusion, asking, as Carl suddenly bends down. He reaches down to lift her long skirt, catching her completely off guard. Before she can protest, Carl sweeps her up into his arms, carrying her bridal style. Helena's face flushes bright red as she panics, yelling, what are you doing? Put me down! She struggles slightly, insisting she can walk, but Carl holds her securely and reassures her, don't worry, I swear on my life, I won't do anything. Carl looks down at her with a gentle, sincere expression, making her heart skip a beat. Helena stares back at his handsome profile, left completely speechless by his sudden kindness. Carl carries her past a grand angel statue, guiding them through the sunlit temple hallway. As they approach their destination, Helena looks up and says, the next part is the prayer, right? You can put me down now. Holding Helena securely in his arms, Carl reassures her, no one is watching, so it's fine, while Helena looks at him with wide eyes, wondering to herself, is it really okay to be this careless? Looking down with a soft, introspective gaze, Carl quietly murmurs, is it careless? As they walk down the quiet temple hall. Reflecting on his own conflicting feelings, Carl thinks about how he spent 12 years searching for his savior, yet doubted Lady Helena, realizing with a start that he now finds himself deeply drawn to her. As Carl looks forward with a calm and composed expression, Helena watches his side profile, feeling a subtle warmth of embarrassment rising in her cheeks. They pass by a majestic stone angel statue bathed in warm golden light, as if inviting them to make their deepest wishes. Staring at the beautiful statue in awe, Helena quietly repeats to herself, my wish? Looking up at Carl, Helena realizes that even though he is carrying her simply because she is injured, his attitude toward her has been strangely kind and gentle lately. Flustered by her gaze, Carl quickly turns his face away, trying to hide a visible blush that creeps across his cheek. Gripping the coin pouch tightly in her hands, Helena questions if she is being too hard on herself, admitting that the Duke's words were actually right. Closing her eyes in deep reflection, Helena prepares her mind for the prayer, thinking to herself that they have already come so far together. As she bows her head to pray, Helena envisions her beautiful mother standing amidst a garden of blooming white roses, hoping for her safety and peace. Resting safely in Carl's arms, Helena joins her hands together in a quiet prayer, completely focused on her inner thoughts. Standing before the grand sunlit temple facade, Helena silently notes that she prayed at the next altar as well. Clutching her hands together as Carl continues to carry her, Helena offers a heartfelt prayer, asking for her mother to return home safely. As she finishes her prayer, Helena gently turns her head to look up at Carl's face. Looking up, Helena is surprised to find that the Duke's eyes are closed and that he is sincerely praying alongside her. Carl opens his blue eyes and looks down at Helena, their gazes meeting in a quiet, tender moment of mutual understanding. Feeling her heart skip a beat, Helena quickly averts her eyes with a faint blush, quietly whispering, "Yes." Carl carries Helena down the hall, leaving behind 3 sparkling silver coins on the altar, as Helena reflects that his sincere prayer must have been about her. Lost in her thoughts, Helena stares ahead with a serious and pensive expression, feeling the weight of the upcoming wedding. Standing before the temple maid, Carl requests with a firm and protective voice, "Can we skip the washing of feet ceremony since she's injured?" Surprised by his sudden request, Helena lightly clutches his sleeve and hesitates, murmuring, "Well..." Carl looks down at Helena with a reassuring and steady gaze, determined to prioritize her health and comfort over the ceremony. Back in her chamber, Helena sits on the bed in a floral nightgown, looking down at her bandaged ankle while thinking, "It's just a minor sprain. A bit of rest should have been enough." Helena wiggles her bandaged toes, sighing in frustration as she wonders if all of this fuss is truly necessary just for the wedding. The temple maid Mary enters the room carrying a silver tray, cheerfully calling out, "My lady, I've brought your meal," to which a pleased Helena replies, "Mary." Mary walks over holding the tray with fresh bread and warm soup, warmly stating, "A day of rest should be enough." Looking at the tray, Helena's eyes widen in surprise as she raises her head and gasps, "More importantly." Helena stares at the tray, comparing today's meal of 2 large bread rolls and a hearty bowl of soup to yesterday's small single roll, realizing it's twice as much food as before. Mary giggles softly behind her hand, replying with a sweet, knowing smile. "That's..." Helena remains speechless, looking at Mary with a thoroughly baffled and confused expression. Mary swoons with a dreamy expression against a pink backdrop filled with hearts, while a flustered Helena panics and yells, "Ha?" Dipping her spoon into the warm soup, Helena thinks to herself, "I knew it. He always ignored me, and now he is suddenly being nice to me? There must be a reason behind it." Holding the tray tightly, Helena's face turns grim as a drop of nervous sweat rolls down her cheek, anxiously wondering, what is he thinking? Sitting across from Carl at the long dining table under a tense atmosphere, Helena glares at him with a dark, suspicious expression, thinking, "I knew he'd do that." Helena recalls how Carl had called a doctor to examine her ankle before the prayer ceremony, and how he made sure everyone else stood while she was the only one allowed to sit. A cute, chibi-style Helena stares blankly at her overflowing plate of delicious food, noting that her portion seems even larger than yesterday's. Peeking over at Carl with a worried look, Helena nervously thinks to herself, "Are these all for me?" Glancing down at Carl's hands resting on a closed book, Helena notices that his plate is completely empty and thinks he hasn't eaten anything. Unable to stay silent any longer, Helena speaks up across the table, asking, "You're not eating, Duke?" Closing his eyes with a weary expression, Carl places his hands on the book and replies, "Yeah, I have not been well since yesterday." Looking at him with deep concern, Helena asks, "Are you okay?" While Carl quietly admits that he is just a bit nervous right before the wedding. Carl gazes back at Helena with a soft, gentle expression, his blue eyes filled with an unspoken sincerity. Pushing himself up from the table with a loud scrape, Carl places his hands on the wooden surface and announces, "I'm going back first." Holding out a gold-bound book of scriptures, Carl explains that since the final prayer ceremony was a scripture reading, he had them change it to a reading inside the room for her comfort. Helena reaches out to take the heavy book from his hands, looking up at him and whispering a soft, "Thank you." Turning his back to leave the dining hall, Carl gently instructs her, "Tomorrow's the wedding, so get some rest today." Just as he reaches the exit, Carl stops and turns his head in surprise as Helena calls out, "Duke." Looking at him with a slight, embarrassed blush, Helena softly suggests, "If you're not feeling well, you'll feel better if you eat. It's too much to eat alone." Hearing her unexpected and caring invitation, Carl turns around, his cheeks flushing bright red as a soft, warm expression fills his face. Turning back to hide his blushing cheeks, Carl softly promises, "If I get an appetite, I will join you." With a red flush warming his face, Carl quietly walks away from the dining table, leaving Helena to watch him with concern. Sitting alone at the grand table with the gold scripture book, Helena wonders to herself, should I give him some medicine as a thank you for the meal? Helena stares ahead in deep thought, her mind filled with silent worry for the Duke. Picking at her food, Helena tries to brush off her concern, thinking, I shouldn't worry about him. Helena quietly eats her dinner, chewing in silence as she reflects on the Duke's sudden kindness. Sitting alone in the quiet dining hall, she steels her resolve, thinking, let's just think about getting through the wedding. No matter what happens, I'll make it home alive. From outside the window, Helena looks small and isolated as she quietly dines alone at the long wooden table. Back in his own chamber, Carl sits in a plush armchair under the warm lamplight, quietly reading scriptures before closing the heavy book with a heavy sigh. Running a hand through his hair, Carl is consumed by stress, thinking, tomorrow is the wedding day. Not only am I not convinced that Lady Helena is the savior, my doubts are only growing. Staring intensely into space, his mind is plagued by conflict as he asks himself, should I marry her even if I feel this way? Suddenly, a sharp knock echoes through his room, causing Carl to sit up in surprise and ask, who is this at this hour? Carl peers toward the door with a puzzled and cautious expression. Opening the heavy double doors, he gasps in surprise, calling out, Kia? A mysterious hooded figure cloaked in white stands silently before him in the dark hallway. The guest lowers her hood to reveal her face, shocking Carl as he exclaims, Lady Helena? Stepping inside his room, she tells him softly, I thought this place was off limits. I really wanted to see you. Stepping closer, she gently places her hand on his chest and pleads, please stay with me tonight. Clutching his shirt tightly, she looks up and asks, I can't attend the wedding tomorrow, can I? Leaning in close, she gazes into his eyes with a somber expression, murmuring, that's sad no matter what. Carl quickly steps back and holds her at a distance, stating firmly, please wait, Lady Helena. Now it's forbidden during the prayer ceremony. You must not come to the man's room late at night. Looking up at him with teary, vulnerable eyes, she asks, are you really okay? Don't you trust me? While Carl wonders to himself, is that what she really wants to say? Carl steps away from her, his doubts rising as he thinks her behavior is suspicious, before telling her, please go home for today. Carl looks down at her with a cold, distant gaze and adds, because we still are not married. Stricken with sadness and shock, Helena clutches her cloak and quietly whispers, right. With a sudden look of determination, she unclasps her cloak, letting it slip to the floor as she declares, but we are meant to be. No one can interfere with destiny. Stepping forward in her blue nightdress, she reaches out to him, whispering, so, Carl? Taking him by surprise, she pushes him back, causing him to fall to the floor under her weight. Towering over him, she slips her shoulder strap down and whispers seductively, we don't have to wait for the wedding, because you're mine. Carl lies on the floor, looking up at her with a completely cold and unyielding expression. Before she can go any further, Carl firmly grabs her arm to stop her, saying, Lady Helena. He pulls her off him and stands up, warning her with a stern voice, if you keep this up, you'll be the one who ends up regretting it. Stepping away coldly, Carl commands, it's already late. Please return to your room for now. Helena sinks to her knees in despair, looking up with tears of anger as she cries, this is all because of that fake girl, isn't it? Wiping away her tears, she speaks through her sobs. I can see it in the way you look at her, and yet you're the only one I've ever had. Grabbing her cloak from the floor, she turns to leave but delivers a final bitter warning. I'll take my leave for tonight, but don't forget, it was you who wanted this marriage. As she walks away in distress, Carl watches her go, calling out her name with a sigh. Helen? Left alone in his silent chamber, Carl stands in dismay, sighing, ah. Looking back on his decisions, Carl realizes with a pang of guilt, I was so caught up in downing her, I completely forgot. I proposed to her to repay the one who saved my life. Carl reflects on how Lady Helena is the only member of the Vickers family blessed with holy powers, admitting that believing the other girl was his real savior was simply wishful thinking. Overwhelmed by his sense of duty, Carl warns himself, I can't let myself fall in love with her. Clenching his fist with resolve, Carl walks down the corridor, thinking, what I need to focus on now is... Wandering into the night, Carl is surprised to find his feet have led him elsewhere, noting, I somehow ended up in the women's quarters. Peeking out from behind a tree, Carl thinks, when all I wanted was to go back to my room. Turns to head back, deciding, what's important now is that I apologize to Lady Helena. I need to tell her how sorry I am for ever doubting her, and I have to let go of my obsession with that girl. Suddenly, Carl freezes in alarm as he hears a voice call out, Lady Helena? Carl peers through the stone arches and is shocked to see the wavy-haired Helena confronting the green-eyed Helena, demanding, what are you doing here? Isn't this area off limits to you? What are you doing here at this hour? The green-eyed Helena calmly replies, I should be asking you that. Why are you here this late? To which the other Helena retorts, don't tell me. You're trying to run away again? Prompting the green-eyed Helena to nervously mutter, I just couldn't sleep, so I decided to take a walk. Hearing her excuse, the wavy-haired Helena furiously clenches her fist, grabbing her gown as she mutters, a walk? In a sudden fit of rage, she throws her shawl directly at the green-eyed Helena, yelling, you really do live such a carefree life, huh? Leaving Carl watching in utter shock. Don't tell me, you actually think this marriage is yours? Don't get ahead of yourself just because you're some prostitute's daughter. Stop taking your anger on me. I'm sick of dealing with your hysteria. Shut up! You're only alive because of me! If only I had killed you back then, just like your mother. How dare she steal someone else's fiancé? You and your mother are both disgusting. I told you already, I won't let you insult my mother again. We were always the ones being taken from. She was forced to bear a child and then abandoned, and I was only 10 when I was bullied. Locked in the underground prison, that was your doing too, wasn't it? And now you're using me as a replacement? I will never forgive you or your father. Green-eyed Helena stands tall with a cold and determined gaze, completely unfazed by the harsh accusations. If that's all you wanted to say, I'm leaving. She turns her back to walk away, looking over her shoulder one last time with a cool and distant expression. As she coldly says goodbye and walks away, the other Helena desperately yells for her to wait. After the wedding, don't think you're getting out of here alive. I will report this to my father. As the green-eyed Helena calmly exits through the doors, the wavy-haired Helena grinds her teeth in sheer fury, swearing she won't let her walk away from this. Stomping her feet in absolute rage, she screams out in anger, Alicia! Overhearing her furious screams of why is it always her who gets everything, Duke Carl stands frozen behind a stone archway in utter shock. Breathing heavily with a dark, plotting shadow over her eyes, she desperately thinks to herself, just wait, I'll find a way out. As Carl watches silently from behind the tree, she walks away with a sinister expression, thinking, I'll take everything from you. That holy power belongs to me. Duke Carl's heart pounds in disbelief as the shocking truth begins to register on his face. Walking away through the dark woods, Carl whispers to himself in complete disbelief, so that's the truth. The girl I met in the underground prison 12 years ago was actually the secret child of the Vickers family. My instincts were right all along. A beautiful memory of the past flashes through his mind as he finally realizes, so Alicia is... He recalls the gentle girl from his childhood, the one who had tenderly held a wounded white bird in her hands. She had smiled so warmly, holding out her hands to offer him hope in his darkest moment. Overwhelmed by the sudden revelation, Carl hangs his head in deep conflict. Crouching down in the quiet forest, Carl covers his face with his hands, completely overwhelmed by the emotional weight of the truth. So her name is Alicia. I finally met her again. With a soft, relieved smile, Carl thinks to himself with tears in his eyes, my true savior. Late at night, Alicia sits alone at her desk behind the stone arches, quietly writing under the warm glow of a candle. Dipping her pen in ink, Alicia carefully draws a layout of the castle, thinking to herself, this is it. Remembering her walks around the Grand Cathedral, she thinks, it was a good idea to remember the route when I went for a walk. Holding the map close, she hopes it will be something useful in an emergency, when suddenly, a sharp knock startles her at the door. Startled by the knock, Alicia quickly rolls up the map, packs it safely inside her suitcase, and quietly walks toward the entrance. She presses herself against the wall next to the door, listening intently with a nervous and cautious expression. Who's here this early in the morning? It's too early for Marie to be here. Suddenly, a familiar voice from the other side of the door answers, it's me, making Alicia gasp in surprise. Helena, is that you? Yes. What could I help you with at this time of night? You can go home now. Eh? What do you mean? With a sharp click, the heavy door slowly swings open, revealing the visitor. A mysterious figure stands in the dark doorway with her face shrouded in shadow, catching Alicia completely off guard. The shadow lifts to reveal Helena's face, staring back with a chillingly cold and emotionless expression. Are you serious? Don't make me say the same thing over and over again. Staring down coldly, Helena commands, get out of here as soon as possible. Staring right back, Helena firmly declares, I'll be at the wedding. Is Helena being targeted? If so, then today's wedding is the most dangerous day. A lot of nobles are coming. There's no way they could assassinate someone in such a public place. Are you sure you're okay? Don't be persistent. Wait, promise me one thing. Even if I leave now, you'll still pay for my mother's treatment like you promised, right? Answer me, Helena. Shut up. My father promised you that, didn't he? Now get out of my sight. I understand. Change your clothes before the chamberlain arrives so as not to arouse suspicion. Alicia lifts her heavy suitcase, preparing to depart. Holding her suitcase, Alicia bids her final farewell to Helena, stating, "Goodbye and good luck. I don't think we'll be seeing each other again." Reaching out, Alicia grabs the door handle, whispering, "And?" As Alicia opens the door, Helena watches her leave in silence before the heavy door shuts with a loud thud, closing that chapter forever with a simple farewell. Left alone, Helena folds her arms and scoffs. "Stupid. You're right. You'll never see me again." Clutching her suitcase, Alicia rushes down the stone corridor of the castle with a light step, thinking, "Now I can go home." Tears of absolute relief and happiness fill Alicia's eyes as she smiles warmly, crying out, "I survived!" Alicia runs toward the bright, shining exit at the end of the dark corridor, filled with hope as she thinks, "Finally I can meet my mother!" The morning sun rises, beautifully illuminating the grand cathedral where the upcoming wedding is set to take place. From a high balcony overlooking the cathedral courtyard, Chase, the blonde knight, stands quietly in his tan tunic, watching the preparations. With a solemn expression, Chase gazes into the distance and murmurs to himself, "The day has finally come." A beautiful vision of Alicia dressed in a magnificent wedding gown flashes through Chase's mind as he thinks, Alicia will soon be a bride. She will enter with His Excellency the Duke. Chase looks down with a heavy heart, filled with sorrow as he whispers, "I can't believe she is getting married." Suddenly, Chase's eyes widen in surprise as he spots something unexpected happening on the wall above the courtyard. Up on the stone wall, Alicia wobbles precariously, letting out an alarmed "ah" as she struggles to hold onto her suitcase. Having managed to sit on the edge of the wall, Alicia is shocked to find Chase standing right below her, staring up in disbelief. Panicking, Alicia waves her hands frantically to explain, "I'm not running away. Lady Helena has given me permission to go home." In her haste and confusion, Alicia loses her balance and slips off the edge of the high wall with a terrified cry of "ah!" Chase's eyes widen with protective alarm as he reacts instantly to her fall. Moving with incredible speed, Chase catches Alicia safely in his arms, holding her in a secure princess carry. Gazing down at her with a gentle, soft smile, Chase confesses, "Seriously, I was so worried about this I couldn't send you off," leaving Alicia blushing a deep crimson. In a flustered panic, Alicia waves her arms wildly and demands, "Please put me down. That was just an accident," while Chase calmly replies, "Yes, yes." Chase gently sets her feet back on the ground, but delivers a surprising declaration, "I'm coming with you." As Chase picks up her heavy suitcase, Alicia is stunned to hear him say, "Actually, I was going to stop being a knight too," making her wonder if it's because of her, though Chase quickly clarifies, "It has nothing to do with you, my lady. I've never been interested in a career as a knight." With a relaxed smile, Chase admits, "And I was fed up with Vicarus. You were just in time." Alicia looks down with a sweet, shy expression, reminding him, "We're going to different places." Looking up at him with hope and vulnerability in her green eyes, she softly asks, "Is that all right?" Chase smiles back at her with complete warmth and affection, silent but reassuring. Walking side by side into a beautiful pastel-colored sunrise, Chase carries her suitcase as they walk away hand in hand toward their new future. Back in the castle, Helena stands in her quarters, admiring the elaborate wedding gown displayed before her. Holding the spectacular white bridal gown against her chest, Helena smiles smugly in the mirror, declaring, "I'm the perfect match for it." On her dressing table sits a jewelry box displaying a sparkling diamond necklace and matching earrings, alongside a pouch of gold coins as she thinks, "This was all prepared for me." With a sinister smirk playing on her lips, Helena schemes, "Now, I wonder when I should kill Alicia." Staring at her reflection with dark, calculating eyes, she reasons, killing her right away would be boring. It's more logical to make it look like an accident after I've made her feel safe. Helena's face twists into a wicked expression of pure malice as she thinks, get hit by a carriage or fall off a cliff? What ending would suit Alicia best? I wish she'd never been born. Father was too generous to let her live. Overjoyed by her dark plotting, Helena twirls happily in her room, holding the wedding dress as she sighs, I'm looking forward to the wedding. Suddenly, the door clicks open and Marie, the maid, enters with a bright smile, calling out, My lady, it's time to get ready for the wedding. Marie instantly freezes in utter shock and confusion, a cold sweat breaking out on her face as she stammers, Ah? Marie stares in disbelief at the wavy-haired woman holding the wedding dress, completely bewildered to see two different people who look so similar. Stepping forward with absolute arrogance, Helena coldly declares, "I am Helena. The woman you saw yesterday was my impersonator." As Marie tries to process the shock, noting how the previous girl had the red hair and green eyes of the Vickers family, Helena firmly cuts in, saying, "I don't need a substitute anymore." With a chilling, intense gaze, Helena drops a heavy pouch of coins onto the floor right at Marie's feet, saying, "That's it. That's..." Marie gasps in shock and fear as brilliant gold coins spill out of the bag onto the stone floor, exclaiming, "A gold coin?" Stepping closer to the trembling maid, Helena demands, "Now you know who you're supposed to follow, don't you? I am the real Helena Vickers." Grabbing Marie roughly by the chin and collar, Helena pulls her close and warns her menacingly, "You don't need to know any more than that." Glaring directly into Marie's terrified eyes with a cold, murderous intensity, Helena demands, "Okay?" Meanwhile, Duke Carl strides urgently down the castle corridor, his cape flying behind him as he thinks, "I knew Helena was lying, but why would she lie about something like that?" Dressed in a magnificent white and black military dress uniform for the wedding, Carl descends the stairs with a determined expression, thinking, "It doesn't matter. The wedding is about to begin. I have to ask Helena to break off the engagement before then." Painful memory of the past flashes in Carl's mind as he thinks, "I'll tell Alicia I was her knight at that time. Knowing the man she saved turned out to be such an asshole, she'll be sorry she ever helped me, even if she hates me even more." Looking down at his hand, Carl resolves to make things right with his true savior, thinking with deep remorse, "I'll apologize again and again." Dressed in his magnificent wedding attire, Duke Carl gently lifts Alicia's hand to his lips, kissing it with deep reverence and devotion amidst a bed of blossoming white flowers. Carl's expression hardens as he clenches his fist, a look of grim determination in his deep blue eyes as he prepares himself for what lies ahead. Suddenly, two of Carl's knights approach him in a rush, breathlessly reporting that the Crown Prince has summoned him for an emergency meeting. Stunned by the sudden summon, Carl wonders if the urgent meeting has something to do with the ongoing Vickers family affair. Turning back to gaze at the Grand Cathedral, Carl remains silent as a heavy, tense atmosphere settles over the impending wedding ceremony. Carl asks Kia if this sudden meeting will disrupt their plans, but Kia reassures him that while things might get hectic, it shouldn't be a problem as Helena gets ready. Carl decides to use this opportunity to inform the Crown Prince that they have broken off the engagement, instructing Kia to follow him while Jade escorts Helena. Bowing his head in deep respect, Jade salutes and firmly responds with a determined yes, accepting his duty to escort Lady Helena. With his instructions delivered, Carl strides forward with a firm step, accompanied by Kia, while Jade watches them leave. Kia looks back with a nervous and deeply anxious expression, a silent sigh escaping his lips as he senses the growing tension. Carl recalls how they usually hold meetings in secret to keep the Vickers family in the dark, finding the Crown Prince's sudden public summon highly unusual. Carl wonders if the Empress would dare to execute a conspicuous scheme on a day when so many high-ranking nobles are gathered, even within a sacred temple beyond her direct reach. Looking back at the dangerous political landscape, Carl realizes that such a reckless public move is completely out of character for the Empress. Shaking off his unsettling thoughts, Carl urges Kia to hurry so they can meet with the Crown Prince without delay. Inside a quiet room, the grandfather clock ticks away steadily, marking the slow and agonizing passage of time. Waiting alone in the meeting room, Carl notes with growing unease that an hour has passed since he was summoned, which is highly uncharacteristic of the punctual prince. Realizing that something is terribly wrong, Carl slams his hand down and stands up, calling out to Kia immediately. Carl commands Kia to go and inspect the area where Jade is escorting Helena to see if there are any suspicious individuals lurking around. Suddenly, the Crown Prince bursts through the doors, demanding to know what Carl is doing there and why Carl sent an emergency summon right before his own wedding.
Carl stands frozen in utter shock, stammering that he was the one who was summoned by the Crown Prince.
Realizing that they have both been lured into a trap, Carl curses in frustration as a sense of dread washes over him. Knowing that time is running out, Carl urges the Crown Prince that they must flee the room immediately. A blinding flash of light is instantly followed by a massive, violent explosion that tears through the cathedral courtyard outside. Carl's heart stops in terror as he realizes the explosion occurred right where Alicia's dressing room is located, screaming her name in panic. Coughing amidst the heavy smoke and falling debris, Carl desperately pushes himself up, refusing to believe the horror unfolding before him. Gritting his teeth, Carl pushes forward through the smoke, thinking of how they had finally reunited after all these years and still had so much to say to each other. Carl sprints desperately toward the towering cathedral, which is now completely engulfed in roaring flames, praying that Alicia is still alive. Arriving at the ruins, Carl frantically claws through the heavy stone blocks and debris with his bare hands, uncovering a person buried underneath. Tears of desperation fill Carl's eyes as he begs for Alicia to be alive, throwing aside heavy rocks as he searches the collapsed room. Startled by a voice, Carl looks up to see Jade stepping through the smoke, urgently reporting that the explosion originated directly inside Lady Helena's dressing room. With a grim and sweat-drenched face, Jade points out that the disaster site is just further down the corridor. Jade explains that because he was farther down the hall, he managed to survive the blast, but fears that everyone inside the dressing room was killed instantly. As Jade admits that Lady Helena was likely caught in the explosion, Carl silently clenches his fist in silent rage and sorrow. In a desperate bid to protect himself from the roaring fire, Carl grabs a bucket of ice water and pours it directly over his head, leaving Jade completely speechless. Adjusting his uniform with cold determination, Carl asks if Helena's death was actually confirmed, to which Jade hesitatingly replies that it wasn't, though the blast was massive. Throwing his cape aside, Carl declares that he will confirm the truth himself, ignoring Jade's desperate warnings about the raging, uncontrollable inferno. Carl orders Jade to stay behind as he steps directly into the wall of fire, leaving the loyal knight shouting after him in panic. Reluctantly obeying, Jade watches Carl's retreating figure disappear into the roaring flames, praying with all his heart for the Duke's safety. Inside the blazing inferno, Carl shields his face from the intense heat and collapsing chandeliers, desperately screaming Alicia's name. Shielding his face from the blinding smoke and falling sparks, Carl suddenly spots something through the haze that makes his eyes widen in shock. Through the roaring flames, Carl recognizes the collapsed form of Alicia's handmaiden, Marie, and realizes with dread who must be lying right beside her. A wave of pure horror washes over Carl as he stares at the tragic scene, a desperate cry escaping his lips. Rushing through the heat, Carl falls to his knees and gathers the unconscious woman in the wedding gown into his arms, crying out Alicia's name. As Carl gently lifts the veil to look at her face, his voice catches in his throat as he realizes the woman he is holding is actually Helena. Carl stands bewildered in the middle of the burning room, holding Helena and wondering why she was wearing the wedding gown and where Alicia could possibly be. A sudden secondary explosion rattles the room, warning Carl that the structure is on the verge of total collapse. Realizing he cannot abandon the unconscious Helena, Carl pulls her close and prepares to escape the crumbling, fiery room. As Carl flees the burning cathedral, a sudden realization hits him. If Helena and Alicia switched places, then Alicia might still be alive out there somewhere. With renewed hope burning in his heart, Carl whispers Alicia's name, determined to find her and ensure her safety at all costs. Outside, the chaotic aftermath of the tragedy unfolds as soldiers carry buckets of water to douse the remaining flames while others attend to the victims covered under sheets. Carrying the unconscious Helena in his arms, Duke Carl is met with an anxious inquiry. "Carl, are you okay?" Staring in shock at the unconscious woman Carl is holding, the Crown Prince stammeringly asks, "Is that?" Carl confirms grimly, "It's Helena Vickers," leaving them both completely speechless. Carl asks about the current situation. The Crown Prince explains that the Imperial Knights are extinguishing the fire, searching for survivors, and updating the nobles. Suddenly, Jade interrupts, saying, "Forgive me, but I need to show you something," as he reaches inside his uniform. Jade carefully reveals a small item wrapped in a white cloth, explaining, "I found this at the explosion site." Looking closely at the device, Carl realizes with shock that it is a magical tool bearing Adrian's crest, instantly pointing to a conspiracy. Jade voices the troubling question that hangs heavily in the air. Could this be a trap set by House Vickers? Carl clenches his fist in realization, thinking to himself, "I see now." Carl pieces the puzzle together, realizing Spencer Vickers never intended to go through with the wedding. Instead, his plan was to kill the fake Helena and pin the assassination on Adrian. Carl feels a sense of relief that Jade was the one who recovered the tool, knowing that if anyone else had found Adrian's crest at the blast site, they would have instantly become the prime suspects. Looking down at Helena, Carl remains puzzled by a glaring contradiction. Even with a stand-in arranged, why did the real Helena end up dead? He wonders if something went horribly wrong with their original plan. Carl asks Jade if he has seen another red-headed woman. When a bewildered Jade questions what he means, Carl reveals that they had received intel that Lady Helena was being targeted, and that the woman Jade had been seeing up until now was actually a decoy arranged by Duke Vickers. Jade struggles to make sense of the situation, questioning why the real Helena is dead if there was a decoy. He adds that while the intact magical items suggest the plan went awry, he was constantly guarding Lady Vickers' room and never saw any look-alike woman come or go. Suddenly, a silver-haired knight runs up to them in a hurry, breathlessly calling out, "Sir, a witness came forward." The knight reports that a blonde knight and a red-headed woman were spotted leaving the Great Temple early that morning. Instantly, Carl realizes who it must be, whispering the name in shocked realization, Chase Andreas. Understanding the sensitivity of the situation, the Crown Prince tells Carl to leave the search to him and explain the details later, noting that it is far too risky to involve Adrian's knights at this moment, which Carl gratefully accepts.
Looking back with desperate urgency, Carl pleads, "Please, she's red-haired, with green eyes." The Crown Prince firmly reassures him, telling him not to worry and promising to find her.
Looking down in silent torment, Carl calls out Alicia's name in his thoughts, devastated that they have been separated once again just after he had finally found her. A painful thought grips Carl's heart as he imagines Alicia walking away hand in hand with Chase, bitterly wondering, "You're going to leave me once more, and with him?" Carl's expression turns cold and filled with relentless determination as he resolves, "I won't let you get away this time." Spotting the thick black smoke rising in the distance, Alicia gasps in realization, whispering, "That's," as she realizes that the assassination plot she had heard about was indeed real. Terror grips Alicia as she realizes the smoke is rising directly from the waiting room where she had been. She thinks with dread that Lady Helena must have perished in the blast, and that it is only a matter of time before everyone realizes the victim was the real Helena, putting her own life in extreme danger if they discover she escaped. A horrifying premonition flashes in Alicia's mind, visualizing her mother bound in thorny chains with a blade hanging over her head, representing the deadly retribution of House Vicrys. Trembling in absolute panic as she looks back at the distant fire, Alicia cries out in terror, "Mother will be in danger!" Chase steps closer to the trembling girl, gently asking, "Are you all right?" Taking her hand in a comforting grasp, Chase tries to calm her down, saying, "We'll think about everything else later." Chase warns her of the imminent danger, explaining that if the explosion indeed killed Lady Helena, the authorities will soon suspect her escape, meaning that if they stop now, pursuers will catch up to them in no time. Chase urges her to focus entirely on her immediate goal, saying, "Right now, all you have to think about is getting home to your mother," leaving Alicia silent as she tries to find her resolve. Clutching his hand tightly, Alicia softly agrees with a determined yes. Alicia steals her heart, whispering, "I have to protect my mother," finding the strength to push forward. Looking up with firm resolve in her bright green eyes, Alicia declares, "Let's go, Chase!" Seeing her regain her spirits, Chase smiles softly with a sense of relief and quiet admiration. Walking ahead with their luggage, Chase says, "I'm glad that you've made up your mind." Chase teases her gently, saying she is finally starting to look like her old self again, admitting he feared she had grown fragile like a real young lady during their time apart. Alicia quickly replies, "Don't say things like that. The other nobles would be furious if they heard you." Smiling warmly with a sense of pure liberation, Alicia confesses, "But I've had enough of pretending to be a lady." Chase turns to look at her, deeply touched by her genuine smile and the return of her true self. Emerging from the forest, the pair stands atop a rocky cliff, looking down at a quiet, peaceful village below. Pointing toward the rustic settlement by the sparkling river, Chase suggests, "Let's stop there." As they descend the rocky path, Chase explains, "This is where we'll get everything we need for our trip." Alicia tilts her head in curiosity, asking, "Things we need?" Chase confirms with a warm smile, clarifying, "Yes, clothes and food for starters." Alicia suddenly hesitates, a slight blush dusting her cheeks as she stammers, "Well..." Chase looks back at her, surprised to hear her say, "I don't need anything." Sensing her hesitation, Chase looks at her gently and says, "Alicia, you..." Before he can finish, Alicia steps forward and firmly grabs his hand. With deep sincerity, she pleads, "So this time, please just listen to me." She holds on to him closely, looking up at him with a mix of vulnerability and stubborn determination. Looking highly embarrassed, Alicia nervously confesses her real concern, "But I don't have much money." When Chase tells her not to worry about him and to only focus on herself, Alicia looks down, softly replying, "I can't just not worry about you." Offering a gentle and warm smile, Chase reassures her, "It's fine. You can pay me back someday, after you make it home safely." The scene shifts to a grand, secluded mansion nestled deep within a lush forest, where a woman's elegant white shoe steps gracefully onto the stone courtyard. Dressed in a brown travel outfit with a matching bonnet and holding her suitcase, Alicia takes her first step forward, ready to begin her journey. Chase looks at her in surprise, noting how much she looks like a different person in her wig and reassuring her that she looks great. Alicia smiles back, teasingly pointing out that he doesn't look much like a knight either. Before they can leave, the landlady rushes out after them, calling out that they forgot something. The landlady hands them a parasol, commenting on how lovely they look together and assuming Chase is her husband. Chase accepts it with a polite thank you, while Alicia realizes in embarrassment that they must look like a married couple. Reminding her of their disguise, Chase adjusts his glasses and suggests that they drop formal titles and call each other by their first names from now on. Alicia readily agrees, stumbling over his title before happily inviting him to call her Alicia and calling him Chase in return. As they walk away, Chase playfully reminds her that they aren't just friends in their current guise, but are supposed to be husband and wife. Finding her speechless and blushing, Chase quickly smiles and clarifies that he was only joking, though dressing as a couple is the best way to avoid drawing any unwanted attention. Understanding his logic, Alicia gently links her arm through his, asking where they are headed next. Arm in arm, the two step out into the bright sunlight, with Chase declaring that their next priority is to finally leave the capital behind. Meanwhile, far away at the grand estate of Duchy Vickers, a carriage pulls up to the towering castle. Inside the mansion, a messenger bows deeply before the Duke, hesitantly delivering some highly unfortunate news. As the messenger reports that there has been an explosion in the Great Temple, Duke Spencer calmly sips his tea, thinking to himself that the day he has anticipated has finally arrived. Convinced that Duke Adrian is now entirely within his grasp, Spencer is suddenly rattled when the messenger adds that Lady Vickers died in the accident and the Vickers Knights were completely wiped out. Shocked and outraged, Duke Spencer slams his hands on the table, demanding to know if even Foz is dead. As the messenger urges him to head to the scene immediately, Spencer desperately asks if they have found the culprit. The messenger nervously explains that they are still trying to determine the culprit and will need more time to capture them. Duke Spencer sweats in panic, realizing that if Faz were still alive, Adrian would already be facing murder charges. The ongoing investigation makes him dread that something has gone horribly wrong with their original plan. Demanding to be taken to the temple immediately, Spencer resolves that he must see the aftermath of the explosion with his own eyes. The carriage wheels spin furiously against the dirt as Spencer speeds toward the Great Temple. Seated inside the rattling carriage, Spencer stares down at a letter, his expression dark with dread and calculation. Spencer reads the urgent message sent by Alicia's handmaiden, Marie, who had written directly to the Duke. In her letter, Marie explains that she was standing by Lady Helena's side as her caretaker, exactly as she had been instructed to do. She reveals that a duplicate who looked exactly like Helena suddenly appeared, also claiming to be the real Helena. Marie's letter asks the critical question that had plagued her: which one of them should I be protecting? Gripped by fury, Spencer tightly crumbles the paper in his fist, cursing under his breath as the carriage speeds forward. Spencer fumes at the realization that Helena ignored his orders. Marie had been sent with a far more vital role than just watching Alicia, which is why she kept the substitution a secret and ordered Faz to protect her at all costs, knowing that even if Alicia died in the blast, it would suffice to destroy Adrian. The plan would have been flawless if Alicia had survived, but Spencer realizes with growing dread that if Helena and Alicia actually switched places, his entire plot is completely ruined. Spencer desperately tries to convince himself that Helena would never switch places while facing an assassination threat, believing she must be safe, yet he is still plagued by the mystery of why Faz died alongside her. As Spencer mumbles about the letter he sent, the carriage door flies open. The attendant announces their arrival at the Great Temple, adding that both the Empress and the Crown Prince are waiting for him. Spencer's eyes widen in surprise as he repeats, "The Empress?" A dark, mocking smile slowly spreads across Spencer's face as he realizes the opportunity before him. Disembarking from the carriage, the Duke turns his thoughts back to the royal presence waiting inside. Adjusting his lapel with absolute confidence, Spencer thinks to himself that as long as the Empress sides with House Vickers, he will hold the ultimate upper hand and the entire empire will be within his grasp. Inside the ruined Great Temple, a crowd of shocked nobles whispers in horror and disbelief over the devastating tragedy that took place on the wedding day. The gathered nobles admire the Empress from afar, gossiping about how horrified she must be by her relative's death, yet praising how bravely she carries herself. Adorned in jewels and holding an elegant fan, Empress Lydia Lionel Tyron of the Tyron Empire watches the scene with a cold, piercing gaze. The nobles continue to shower the Empress with praise, calling her a merciful and divine protector, while the young Crown Prince stands silently nearby. Looking on with a deeply troubled and suspicious expression, the Crown Prince remains silent as a door suddenly bursts open below. Rushing desperately into the chamber, Duke Spencer cries out his daughter's name. Looking frantic and disheveled, Duke Spencer loudly demands to know where his daughter is, while the shocked nobles gasp in recognition. Watching Spencer's dramatic arrival, the Crown Prince dryly comments on his spectacular entrance, to which Duke Carl quietly agrees. Spencer throws himself before the Empress, desperately begging for her help, prompting the Crown Prince to mutter in disgust about what a wretch the Duke is, before quietly calling Carl's name. The Crown Prince asks Carl if he suspects his mother is involved in the plot. Carl replies that while she hasn't made any moves so far, they must keep a much closer eye on her from now on.
Carl points out that the desperate Duke will now surely seek the Empress's aid, meaning that even if she is currently innocent, her stance may easily change in the near future.
Stepping forward with firm resolve amidst a backdrop of white roses, Duke Carl confidently tells the prince to leave the matter to him. Suddenly, Carl's voice calls out to Duke Spencer, breaking through his frantic display. Carl approaches Spencer and tells him that things went exactly as the Duke predicted, reassuring him that it was a substitute woman who perished in the explosion rather than Helena. Spencer reacts with performative shock, echoing, "A substitute?" Hearing Carl's words, the surrounding nobles immediately begin whispering in shock, gossiping about how Duke Vicarus had apparently anticipated the attack. Carl publicly explains that Duke Spencer had prepared a substitute to protect the couple from those opposed to their marriage. The nobles are deeply impressed, praising the Duke's clever foresight. Outwardly feigning deep relief, Spencer sighs and play-acts his gratitude that Helena is safe, though his mind is racing with the chaotic reality of his ruined plans. But if Alicia and Foz are both dead, the plan is ruined. Duke Spencer looks warily at Duke Carl, wondering if he could have sabotaged the letter before it was even handed over. Realizing Adrian might have already found the magical item, Spencer decides he must stop focusing on the Empress and take immediate action. But suddenly, Duke Spencer turns in shock as someone declares, "This explosion wasn't just an accident. This criminal not only targeted the life of the Imperial Princess, but also destroyed the Great Temple and took the lives of many Imperial citizens. This is a major incident that concerns the Empire's prestige. You must be worried as well, since a member of the nobility was targeted. For everyone's safety, we must find the culprit." Placing his hand over his heart, the Crown Prince solemnly vows to bring the culprit to justice. Hearing the Crown Prince's reassuring address, the noblewomen in the crowd whisper among themselves in relief. Cheers of agreement echo throughout the high stone arches of the Great Temple. "You are absolutely right, Your Highness. Hail, Your Highness!" "I'm relieved that His Highness will be investigating," comments a noblewoman as Duke Carl stands calmly nearby. Looking forward with a sharp, determined gaze, Duke Carl thinks to himself, "Now it's time. Duke Vicarus, whatever you're up to, I promise I'll stop you." Meanwhile, Alicia lets out a soft, anxious sigh as she stands disguised in her traveling clothes. As they approach the town gate, Chase notices her tension and gently asks, "Are you all right?" Clutching his arm tightly to calm her racing heart, Alicia quietly replies, "Yes." "Yes," she says, walking forward with Chase, but her heart beats fast when she notices a wanted poster in the crowd. Alicia's heart continues to race as they walk directly past guards who are holding the sketch of her likeness. Once they pass the guards, Alicia breathes a quiet sigh of relief, thinking to herself, "Good, I managed to get through." But before they can walk any further, a guard steps in front of them and calls out, "Wait there, lady. Please cooperate with the inspection." Alicia freezes as Chase calmly asks, "What's this about?" The guard replies, "We're looking for a man and a woman who are on the run." Alicia is gripped by panic, wondering, "How? Even my hair is a different color?" Knowing that running away now would look even more suspicious, she is reassured when Chase gently touches her arm and says, "It's all right. I'll take care of it." Chase politely nods to the guard and cooperatively says, "Of course." The guard opens their suitcase on the table, examining the contents and noting, "Looks like you have a lot of baggage. Are you traveling as a couple?" Or asks the guard, to which Chase calmly responds, "We're working. My wife is doing research on medicinal herbs and I'm helping her with that. Here, this is the medicinal herb I collected this time. Is there any problem with?" This information is for knowledge and informational purposes only and does not constitute medical advice or diagnosis. Please consult a healthcare professional for personalized guidance. The guard flips through a heavy book in the suitcase and replies, "No, it's fine." Closing up their suitcase, the guard says, "Sorry for taking your time, but thank you for your cooperation." Picking up their luggage, Chase politely tips his hat and replies, "Thank you very much." However, Chase's eyes narrow in concern as he spots a royal knight approaching. He thinks to himself, that emblem is Adrian. If it was a royal knight at the checkpoint, it wouldn't be a problem. Realizing that these particular knights would easily recognize his face, Chase quickly tells Alicia it's time to go, as she politely tells the guards, "Thank you very much." Chase firmly takes her hand in a protective grip and whispers, "Alicia, Adrian's knights are nearby," he warns in a hushed tone, causing Alicia to look back in alarm. As they quicken their pace, Alicia realizes they know my face, so if they recognize me, I won't be able to escape. Sweating with anxiety, Alicia frantically asks, "What should we do?" "First, we'll go to the inn and hide ourselves," Chase decides, pointing them toward a nearby lodging house. Once inside their room at the inn, Chase cautiously parts the curtains to check the streets below. It seems that the Knights of Adrian have joined the search. It looks like something is burning. Anyway, it's dangerous to roam around in broad daylight. I never thought that caricatures were already circulating. I apologize for causing you unnecessary delay. They probably haven't even caught the bomber yet. They're not just looking for Alicia. But Alicia starts, but Chase sits down and gently suggests, for now, let's think about the future. Well, what are you going to do when you get back to your parents' house?
First, I'm thinking of leaving Vic Ross' estate with my mother. Vic Ross used to push her around a lot.
Chase? Alicia asks when he remains quiet. Chase smiles and admits, right, I want to have a lot of delicious meals. I only had bland meals while I was on duty, so. Alicia smiles warmly and giggles, great! I also find the food at the Great Temple kind of bland. I want to make lamb soup and eat it with my mother as soon as possible. Chase looks at her in surprise and asks, you know how to cook? Alicia proudly replies, yes, I do, and I'm quite good. Smiling affectionately at her, Chase says, your family is lucky. Right? Alicia giggles. Chase then looks at her with a gentle, soft expression and confesses, I'd love to eat with you, as your boyfriend. Alicia's eyes widen in absolute shock, her cheeks instantly blushing a deep crimson at his sudden words. A heavy, embarrassed silence falls over the dimly lit room as both of them sit quietly, unsure of what to say. Standing up to break the tension, Chase says, I'll get us something to check our escape route. Startled, Alicia replies, thank you. Clutching her hands tightly, Alicia thinks to herself, after all, if he's suspected of fleeing, he'll be caught. And just like Chase said, it'll be safer to move around during the dark, right? It'll be safe there forever, too. I can't wait to get home. Suddenly, Alicia flinches in surprise as a knock sounds at her door. A polite voice from outside the door calls out, excuse me for interrupting your rest. I'm sorry, but I need your assistance. Alicia flinches in alarm inside her room at the sudden knock on the door, her heart racing as she senses immediate danger. Realizing that the guards have already begun searching the inn, Alicia panics when a harsh voice from outside demands she unlock the door immediately. The door is unlocked and two knights step inside the room, politely excusing themselves as they prepare to search the premises. Trying to maintain her composure, Alicia sits on the bed and weakly apologizes, explaining that she had fallen asleep and asking how she can help them. The lead knight apologizes for the interruption but immediately orders his subordinate to thoroughly check the closet as well. Relieved that they appear to be ordinary knights of the royal family, Alicia's relief quickly turns to dread when a sudden gust of wind blows a loose lock of her natural red hair out from beneath her disguise. The lead knight stands before her, staring down in silence with a sharp, suspicious gaze. Stepping closer, the knight politely asks to be excused for a moment as he reaches out his hand toward her, causing Alicia's heart to leap in absolute terror. With a swift movement, the knight grabs and pulls off her brown disguise, sending the wig fluttering to the floor as Alicia gasps in silent horror. With her vibrant red hair completely exposed, Alicia is consumed by despair at being caught, while the knight grimly declares that he will need to hear the full story. She realizes with a heavy heart that she may never see her mother again. Overwhelmed by hopelessness and the sudden ruin of her plans to finally return home, Alicia collapses onto her knees on the floor. Meanwhile, a nobleman sits in a sunlit room, lost in deep thought as he gazes quietly out the window next to a vase of lilies of the valley. Suddenly, a silver-haired knight enters the room, saluting respectfully as he announces that they have successfully located the targets on their own. The knight reports that the pair were found alone at a small inn nearby, asking what they should do as the nobleman gently touches a white blossom. Turning with a resolute and serious expression, the nobleman declares that he will go and see her himself.